And we are live for week 6, Sunday morning. It is London time once again, the second consecutive week we are on London time. We're on London time next week as well. Starting this live stream an extra hour early for everybody who's on London time with me this morning. We got a great game kicking off in just 1 hour between the Chicago Bears and the Jacksonville Jaguars, just like we did last week. I'm going to do my best to talk through this game first and to prioritize the start sits in this game first. We're going to be live for at least the next 3.5 hours. It is going to be a fantastic Sunday. We're going to break down every single player in every single game on this live stream. We are going to get to hundreds of start sit questions. I got the rankings ready to rock and roll for everyone. Let me start with the QB rankings here. I'll pull up the QB rankings on the TikTok live here as well. I'm excited to get after it. And we got a fun one here between the Bears and the Jaguars. I'm actually pretty surprised that the Jaguars are favored in this game. The Jacksonville Jaguars, who rank dead last in almost every single defensive metric. This has been one of the worst defenses, if not the worst defense in the NFL. Caleb Williams, who's coming off his best game of his career against the Carolina Panthers. He now gets a Jags defense kicking off in just an hour on London time that is allowed to back top 7 quarterback performances in fantasy football. They've allowed a total of 9 passing touchdowns to quarterbacks in their last 3 games, averaging 3 passing touchdowns allowed in the last 3. They've played Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, and last week, Joe Flacco threw for 359 in 3 TDs. Caleb Williams is a very good start in this game. I got Caleb Williams ranked as QB6. And as we did last week, I'm locked into this game, guys. I got a free player prop for this game specifically. We went 2 for 2 in the last London time game with Garrett Wilson's receptions and yards. I got one this morning for us as well. We're going to get to that here momentarily once we talk through this London time game. Again, we're going to get to every single game, every single player with a little bit of a focus on this London time game before this game kicks off. And we can't, make any different start sit decisions, once these guys are locked in. So on the Bears side of the ball, guys, start Caleb Williams. The only QBs I want to be starting over Caleb Williams this week, Dak, Kyler, Hurts, Lamar, Jaden Daniels, end of list. I'm easily starting Caleb Williams over Josh Allen. It feels a little gross to bench Josh Allen. You might have been the person in your league who drafted a quarterback first if you have Josh Allen on your team, and it still makes sense to me to bench Josh Allen in a lot of spots. I think Josh Allen versus Daniel Jones, that's actually really close this week. I didn't have it in me to rank Daniel Jones ahead of Josh Allen, but I think that's actually a reasonable thing to be doing this week. Kirk Cousins versus Josh Allen, really close. I would lean Josh Allen there, but it's close. But yeah, you're starting Caleb Williams over Jordan Love, over Joe Burrow, over Josh Allen, over Daniel Jones, over CJ Stroud, over Kirk Cousins. Caleb Williams really should be a good start this week versus the Jags, who again ranked dead last versus quarterbacks. They've allowed 3 straight top 7 QB finishes, including 350 and 4 TDs to Joe Flacco last week. DJ Moore needs to be started. DeAndre Swift needs to be started. So the Jags ranked dead last versus quarterbacks. Unsurprisingly, they also ranked dead last versus wide receivers. DJ Moore is a fantastic start. Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen, they're pretty good starts this week too. Let me switch over to the wide receiver rankings here for a second. I think you could do much worse than Odunze and Keenan. We got bye weeks this week, guys. We got a bunch of them. And that makes this a tougher start-sit week than usual. We got the Chiefs on bye, the Dolphins on bye, the Vikings are on bye, and the Rams are on bye. And Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen are ranking as top 30 wide receivers for that reason. I actually prefer Odunze over Keenan Allen with how they've played this season. I do think Rome Odunze enters this game as one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL. I don't think the general NFL audience quite understands what Rome Odunze is yet, because we really haven't seen it all but one game. And this could be a coming out party for Rome Odunze against a really bad Jags secondary in this game. The Jags secondary has been torched week after week after week. Last week, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce all went over 14 points. Diggs, Nico both went over 18 points. Khalil Shakir had 19 points. Judy had his best game of the season. Him and Elijah Moore both went over 10. And then Waddle and Tyreek in their one full game with Tua in week 1 both went over 16 points. Probably two of these 3 receivers is going to go over 15 fantasy points. DJ Moore is the safest bet, but Odunze has an interesting ceiling. I think Keenan does in this game as well. Cole Kmet also a pretty good start at tight end. I would start Cole Kmet over Evan Ingram. I would start Cole Kmet over David Njoku. I don't feel good about starting Evan Ingram this week. I don't feel good about starting David Njoku this week. And there's some really, really tough tight end start-sit decisions, as there has been every single week. If you got Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews on your team, if you got Njoku, Evan Ingram, these have been some of the biggest headaches in fantasy. I mean, Evan Ingram, really not much of a headache, but I think he's a headache this week in terms of start-sit decision. So yeah, we're starting Caleb Williams, we're starting DJ Moore, we're starting DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift's a top 10 running back this week, guys. DeAndre Swift's been a top 3 running back in fantasy in back-to-back games. And this could be a third straight week where DeAndre Swift ranks as a top 3 running back in fantasy. In this matchup, the Jags have been bad against the running backs as well. They've been bad against everyone. This is why I'm surprised. I know that they tend to play well in London historically. This is technically a home game for the Jags. They actually have back-to-back games. They're playing in London next week too. So they got two weeks in a row with London games. I don't think we've seen that before, at least not to my recollection. Last week, though, Trey Sermon, he ranked as running back 6. He had a bunch of catches, 6 catches, 3 catches to Tyler Goodson, 9 catches to the running backs last week against the Jags. That bodes pretty well for Swift, who's been used a ton out of the backfield. Aguma Wale had 4 catches the week before that, 7 catches between James Cook and Ty Johnson. I'd be looking at the DeAndre Swift receiving props if you're thinking about taking any of those in the early window. So yeah, we're starting Swift, Adunze Keenan. Adunze and Keenan, both interesting starts that I expect to see some start decisions there. All right, let's get to the other side of the ball. Then I got the free player prop for this game. Then we're going to get to some early start sits, especially the ones with players in this early window game. We're on London time this morning. Once again, man, I'm pumped. It's going to be a great week 6. This is when it starts to really count. This is when, guys, we have some legitimate sample size. We have enough information to make really good decisions. And there's also enough information to make some difficult decisions, like benching Josh Allen for Caleb Williams, for example. All right, so on the other side of the ball, we got the Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence is coming off his best game of the season against a bad Colts defense. The reason I am surprised the Jags are favored in this game, though, it feels like the Bears defense is not getting enough respect. This is the second toughest matchup of the season for Trevor Lawrence, who only just had his first game over 15 fantasy points last week. I do not think you can start Trevor Lawrence in this game. Coming off his 2 best games, really, of the season. Week 4, nothing to write home about, though. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence really not startable. Brian Thomas Jr., he is startable. Brian Thomas Jr. might just be matchup proof already this early in his rookie season. He's had 4 games over 10 points. He has not had under 9.5 PPR points. Has kind of a sneaky high floor, but he really is a high ceiling option. The Bears have been a tough matchup for receivers, but of all the receivers on the Jags, you got to feel most confident about starting Brian Thomas Jr. We've really only seen one big game versus this Bears secondary, though, and that was Nico Collins, who's arguably a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL already. They haven't played the best receivers. Michael Pittman only had 7 points. They played the Rams without any of their receivers. They played the Titans in week 1 without DeAndre Hopkins really at full health. So they haven't played very good receivers. David Moore. Deontay Johnson did nothing last week, only 6 points. I think there's a scary floor here for Brian Thomas Jr. I would still start him over Rome Odunze, I think. But it's close. It's definitely especially close this week given the matchups. Travis Etienne is not a guy I feel great starting right now. I think Etienne and Bigsby are a lot closer than you would have liked when you drafted Travis Etienne. And I actually think Tank Bigsby will outcarry and outrush Travis Etienne in this game. I know there's a lot of speculation going on about that. I think that Bigsby just has clearly been the better runner. And we have Etienne dealing with some type of a shoulder injury as well. He's going to be playing. I don't think Etienne's going away, though. This feels very similar to the Rachaad White, Bucky Irving situation. If Rachaad White was going to be playing this week, Rachaad White's not playing this week. Bucky Irving, an absolute smash this week. Guys, you got to start Bucky Irving. All right, let's get to the rest of this team. So Christian Kirk, I think he's got somewhat of a floor, but I don't really want to start Christian Kirk with Evan Ingram back. Evan Ingram is back this week for the first time, really, since week 1. In week 1, he did nothing. We've seen nothing. Guys, Evan Ingram has 1.5 points this season. He had 1 catch, 5 yards in week 1, and then he didn't play again until this week, about to be kicking off in an hour. I don't know how you could possibly start Evan Ingram, given what we've seen this season. He just has to be on the bench. I'd much rather Cole Kmet, Dallas Goedert, Cade Otton. I'd even play Schultz, Freiermuth, Zach Ertz, Theo Johnson. I think I'd play ahead of Evan Ingram. I think you got to hold Evan Ingram on the bench for now. You can't drop him, but you got to hold him. Tank Bigsby, I still think deserves to be after Travis Etienne in terms of projection. But again, I think Bigsby has a better rushing potential in this game. Etienne's got the better receiving potential. That's why I think it's very similar to the Rachaad White, Bucky Irving situation. Bucky Irving and Tank Bigsby, they're clearly the more efficient running backs on their respective teams, but they're also clearly not just going to usurp the starters without injury, without guys missing actual time. And that's what we're seeing for Bucky Irving this week, who's an absolute smash start. Guys, if you're with me in London time this morning, smash the like button. If you're watching live on YouTube, hit the follow button. If you're watching live on TikTok, we are live on TikTok and YouTube. And I say this every week, YouTube, it is a better viewing experience. I appreciate everyone in both lives a ton. If you want to watch on the YouTube and you watch live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. Bigsby or Moss? Yeah, so I want nothing to do. I want nothing to do with Zach Moss. I really don't. Let me go to the must starts and must benches here, because I got Zach Moss on the must benches. I got Bigsby not on the must starts, but I do like Bigsby this week. And I think Moss might even project a bit ahead of Bigsby. Let's see here. Let's do this comparison quick in the YouTube live. Again, part of the reason I think the YouTube live is just a better viewing experience. You get all the same info, but I can share screen to the players we're talking about. And yeah, Zach Moss projects a bit better than Tank Bigsby. I really don't think you can start Zach Moss this week, though. I think he's got an extremely, extremely low floor. He was dealing with injuries this week, missed a couple practices. He also got outplayed by Chase Brown last week. These two running backs are just going in opposite directions. I personally would prefer Tank Bigsby, playing Tank Bigsby over Zach Moss, even though Zach Moss's projection is a little bit better. Brian Thomas Jr. over Mike Evans. Yeah, so Mike Evans is in a historically difficult matchup for him against Marshawn Lattimore and the Saints. I think Lattimore is actually questionable for this game. I do think he's going to play. I think I would, man, that's a really tough call. Brian Thomas Jr. versus Mike Evans. My gut, everything in my body says you got to start Mike Evans over Brian Thomas Jr. He certainly has been better this season. Wide receiver 15 in points per game versus wide receiver 14. Brian Thomas Jr. has actually been better this season. It's Brian Thomas Jr., man. You got to go Brian Thomas Jr. over Mike Evans. Definitely a tough London time start sit decision there. You got to go Brian Thomas Jr. with how he's played. I think that makes sense. Tyler Algier, Tank Bigsby. Yeah, these are the London time Sunday morning questions I wake up for, man. Tyler Algier gets the Carolina Panthers today. And another running back that's banged up, Bijan Robinson. He's going to play. He was off the injury report, but he's dealing with a hamstring injury now. He's dealt with multiple different small injuries. These guys are really comparable, both in really decent matchups. The Bears defense, they have been good, guys. The Bears defense has been good. They are a top 10 defense in the NFL. But their clear weakness is on the ground. They clearly are worse at stopping the run compared to stopping the pass. We just looked at the matchups for the receivers against the Bears. It doesn't look great. Part of the reason I'm a little bit nervous about Brian Thomas Jr. this week is the only receiver that smashed against the Bears was Nico Collins. They haven't played very good receivers. But then you look at the running backs and how they performed against the Bears, and it's actually much, much, much more encouraging. Tony Pollard went over 18 points. JT went over 25 points. Kyron Williams went over 20 points. And Chuba Hubbard went over 17 points. We've seen 4 different running backs ranked top 12 in fantasy against the Bears in 5 weeks. The only team that didn't have a top 12 running back versus the Bears was the Texans. And that game is the game where Joe Mixon got hurt. And Agumba, Wally, and Akers, suddenly were thrust into a surprisingly big role in that game. Every other team's had a top 12 running back. So yeah, Bigsby versus Algier, it's close. I think Algier gets a slight edge, though, over Bigsby. A better matchup still for Algier than Bigsby, even though I think this is an underrated matchup for the running backs. I would lean Tyler Algier over Tank Bigsby. The Panthers are just so bad against the run. Falcons are big favorites in that game, too. We're going to get to that game, and we're going to get to every single game on this live stream, so don't go anywhere if you're just tuning in. Hit the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Smash the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. ETN or Tracy? Yeah, so you got to go Tracy. You kind of have to play Tracy over ETN. I wouldn't play Tracy over. Let's go to the running back ranks here on the TikTok live. I got them up on the YouTube live. Tyrone Tracy, running back 15. ETN, running back 18. I feel much better about Tracy. So there's a lot of injuries this week. Guys, you got to be on top of the injuries. As the season goes on, being on top of who is out, who is in, and what it means for the rest of the players playing in that game, it's honestly maybe the biggest thing in fantasy football as the season goes on. And we got Devin Singletary out again this week. Singletary's out. And we just saw Tyrone Tracy smash with Singletary out last week. I don't think he ended up scoring a touchdown, but he had 129 yards. He had a massive role last week. 129 rushing yards. Wow, I knew that just off the top of my head. Look at that. We're dialed in here heading into week 6. He played 62% of the snaps. Eric Gray looks great, especially in the receiving game, but Eric Gray fumbled last week, and then he barely saw the field after that. Tyrone Tracy's like locked into a workhorse role in a good matchup versus the Bengals. This is a better matchup for him than even last week versus the Seahawks. The Bengals have not been very good defensively, guys. They're one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Chuba Hubbard had 22 points. They've allowed at least 20 points to running backs in basically every single game of the season. And there's no Malik Neighbors again. I mean, this offense, Tyrone Tracy is one of the best weapons in this offense for the Giants. It's Tyrone Tracy, it's Darius Slayton, and it's Wan'Dale Robinson. I mean, these 3 guys are going to combine for over half of the total production of this offense today for the Giants in a good matchup versus a bad Bengals defense. This is the night game tonight. We got Tyrone Tracy on primetime tonight, and I'm easily starting him over Travis Etienne. I would start Swift over Tyrone Tracy, though. Pickens versus Tyrone Tracy. That one's pretty close. Let's hop to that one. It's not a London time question, but I know that one's going to end up projecting close. And yeah, that one's Tyrone Tracy as well. And I mean, Pickens definitely still has an intriguing ceiling, still clearly the best receiver on his team, but weird stuff going on with George Pickens. Definitely a lot of volatility there. Oddly only playing, what was his snap percentage last week? He played 59% of the snaps, a season low. I do kind of expect that to bounce back this week. But yeah, Pickens at this point, he's a boom bust flex option. Despite being by far the most talented receiver on his team. It's just the environment he's in. Bigsby or Etienne? Yeah, so I think you have to play Etienne over Bigsby. I like Bigsby's rushing potential more than Etienne. I think Bigsby has a better chance to score a rushing touchdown than even Etienne does. But the reason you kind of have to start Etienne over Bigsby, assuming it's a PPR league, and your scoring settings matter a ton with a start-sit decision like this. Because again, I think Bigsby out-carries Etienne in this game. But I think Etienne out-receives Bigsby. And so in PPR, you kind of have to go Etienne over Bigsby. And in non-PPR, half PPR, I think there's a really good case to go Bigsby over Etienne. Etienne good to go for week 6 versus the Bears in London. He only had 17 rushing yards last week, but guys, he had 6 catches. He had a 26% rush share, but a 20% target share. And again, you look at Bigsby's numbers, and it's like the opposite. Right, Bigsby had 40% snap share, almost 60% of the carries, but only a 3% target share for Bigsby. These guys are really locked into just 2 very different roles. You guys, Tank Bigsby, he was the running back 1 last week. 101 yards, 2 TDs, no running back had more fantasy points than him. So yeah, I think it's actually it's a fair question, super close. But I lean Etienne and PPR still. I think over Bigsby. It's definitely a fair and really close question though. Are K-Dot or Pitts in PPR? Yeah, it's odd. I think you kind of have to bench Pitts. All right, we got a Roschon Johnson question here. I did not touch on Roschon when we talked about the Bears, so I appreciate this question. I think this one is Braylon Allen. Let's do this comparison quick on the YouTube live. Again, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, smash the follow button. We're on London time the second straight week. We're going to be on London time next week as well. I'm here for you guys. I'm dialed in to everything going on in the NFL, especially when it comes to fantasy. All right, let's go Braylon Allen versus Roschon Johnson. I think I would play Bigsby over Braylon Allen. I think I would do that. I think I would play Etienne over Braylon Allen as well. I'm excited about the matchup for the Jets this week, especially the running backs. The Bills have been just destroyed by running backs this season. I mean, they have been annihilated by running backs, guys. I think they are dead last in running back points allowed. Last week, they allowed almost 30 points to Agumba Wale and Cam Akers. The week before that, they allowed almost 60 points to Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. We're talking about the Bills defense here versus Braylon Allen and Breece Hall. This is part of the reason I've been telling people all week, you got to be buying Breece Hall. So many people are panicking about Breece Hall. I think he's the most panicked on player across fantasy. I can just see it in the comments of the videos I'm posting, of the lives. People are panicked on Breece Hall, and I don't think they should be as panicked as they are. But Braylon Allen has something to do with that. A lot of situations across the league are very comparable right now in the backfields. We got Breece Hall, Braylon Allen. We got Bijan and Tyler Algier. We got Rashad White, Bucky Irving. We got Etienne and Bigsby. I mean, all of these are pretty comparable situations. I think all of them, though, they're split backfields that are still leading towards the initial starter. Like that initial starter is still the preferred guy in fantasy until he misses time. Then the backup is going to absolutely smash even more than the starter would. And we're going to see that this week with Bucky Irving. But yeah, Braylon Allen, I'm gladly starting over Roschon Johnson. Roschon scored 2 TDs last week, 2 touchdowns. He is a part of the goal line role for the Bears. He scored 2 touchdowns, though still didn't even crack 15 fantasy points. He has not been that efficient on the ground. Had a season high 10 carries last week, 2.5 yards per carry. He does not have a game over 4 yards per carry. He has not looked great. He's in an interesting goal line role, but he's a touchdown-dependent running back. And he's not the number one running back on his own team. I'd much prefer Brandon Allen, who I think has just a higher ceiling and arguably a better floor than Roschon. I think there's a chance Brandon Allen just has the goal line role too. So, yeah, I think it's definitely close. A reasonable question. All right, we got London time questions. I'm going to be prioritizing the London time questions. We're going to be live over the next 3 hours. We're going to be live throughout the whole London time game. And I got you guys with the London time questions. Aaron, how are we doing in the YouTube live? Good morning. Good morning to everybody here. Amari Cooper, Rome, Christian Kirk. Yeah, so we got 2 London time players in this game. And this is some tough start-sit decisions with the receivers and with the running backs, honestly, this week with some of the bye weeks, some of the matchups, and some of just the trends going on with some of these players, some really tough start-sit decisions. I think all 3 of these guys, fall into that category. Amari Cooper is all the Browns players. I mean, almost impossible to trust right now. Rome Odunze, he's only had 1 good game. Christian Kirk coming off a couple good games, but Evan Ingram is back now. And yes, the answer here is Amari Cooper over Odunze, over Christian Kirk. I think at least 2 of the 3 Bears receivers end up doing well in this game against the Jags. I think Odunze is more likely to be that guy over Keenan Allen. I still think Odunze is pretty underrated. He had his second best game of the season last week, 5 catches, 40 yards, a 21% target share, now over 20% target share in 2 of his last 3. Amari is just so tough from a fantasy perspective because his underlying usage for Amari Cooper, it really ranks near the best in the NFL, guys. Amari Cooper ranks 8th best in targets per game. He ranks 12th best in target share, 28% target share, 9 targets a game. He has the 2nd most air yards in the NFL, and he has over 50% of the Browns' air yards. That ranks 3rd best in the NFL. You put Amari Cooper in this usage on any other team, and he's projecting as a top 12 wide receiver every single week. Some weeks he's going to project top 5. But you put him with Deshaun and the Browns, and all of a sudden he's just this boom-bust option because Deshaun's playing like the worst quarterback in the NFL, and he's behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. This is a double bad situation for the Browns' passing attack. And I don't think the offensive line is getting enough heat because of how bad Deshaun's looked, but Deshaun's also been bad. I'm not making excuses here for Deshaun. And this is another game environment here. This should be a good game environment. Another one. I mean, every week it feels like this has been the case for the Browns, though, where this week they get the Philadelphia Eagles, who again are pass funnel defense this year. The Eagles are 7.5-point favorites, 8.5-point favorites in this game at home. The Browns are going to be behind. And we've seen all of these receivers smash against the Eagles. Jaden Reed, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Chris Olave, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer. All these guys went over 10 points. Christian Watson went over 10 points. So, yeah, I think you got to go Amari Cooper with the matchup. I get that it's tough, but I don't think Kirk or Odunze are like locks in this game, especially Kirk with Evan Ingram coming back. Christian Kirk's been over 12.5 points for 3 straight games. He only played 53% of the snaps last week, which was a bit odd. And now Evan Ingram's back. Gabe Davis is going to be playing in this game too. He only had 4 targets last week. He's now had 3 of his 5 games under 5 targets for Christian Kirk. I would prefer Amari Cooper. Kmet or Ingram? Yes, he's got to be Kmet. Let me switch to the tight end rankings here. Kmet's a good start, guys, at tight end. He's really playing almost every single snap. I feel like Kmet is like a slightly better version of Cade Otton. That's what Kmet is in my mind. And I got him projected 1 tier above Cade Otton this week. Kmet and Cade Otton, they're basically playing every single snap. The difference for Kmet is the matchup is even better for Kmet this week. And I think Kmet's also just a better, more talented tight end than Cade Otton. The one game where Cole Kmet scored a touchdown, he was tight end 2. He had over 25 fantasy points. He's had 3 great matchups. He's been over 6 points in 4 straight games, which I know doesn't sound like a lot of points, but at tight end, that's actually pretty decent consistency. Cole Kmet ranks 9th best in snaps this season. He's got the 8th most air yards at the position. He's got at least 3 targets in 4 straight games, over a 13% target share in 4 straight games. I mean, just a decent floor for tight ends for Cole Kmet. So yeah, I'd gladly play him over Evan Ingram. We got to see what Evan Ingram's role really is coming off the injury. We haven't seen him since week 1, where he only had 1.5 points in week 1. All right, we got a Matthew Friedman question here in the YouTube live. Guys, shout out to every single person in the live stream. If you're watching live on TikTok, let me know what position you want to see next. What position rankings you want to see next. If you're watching live on YouTube, let me know what position rankings you want to see next. I do have multiple free player props for us today, and one of them is in the London time game, so we're about to get to that in 5 minutes. This is an interesting question here, though, in the YouTube live, not a London time question, so I'll get through it quick. But Bowers versus Ferguson. I mean, these are the 2 top tight ends this week. Both Brock Bowers and Jake Ferguson are the top 2 tight ends of the week, and I think you kind of have to go Bowers over Ferg. Right? I'm seeing some request for the receiver rankings. Let me go to that on both live streams here. But yeah, I'm going Brett Bowers over Ferg, just slightly. The Lions have actually been pretty good against tight ends, but Ferguson still has a really good floor. Guys, there's no Devontae Adams this week again. There's no Jacoby Myers this week either. Bowers is just so clearly the wide receiver one on his team. I mean, part of the reason we were drafting Brock Bowers is because we expected him to be used as a receiver. And that's really what we've seen so far this season. And there's no reason to expect that to change today against the Steelers. Bowers could easily get 10 targets in this game. And the Steelers, they've been okay, but not great against tight ends. I mean, just last week, we saw Ferg go 6 for 70 against the Steelers. Bowers scored his first touchdown of his career last week, 23 points. Bowers is ranking as third best in points per game this season. Ferguson still doesn't have a touchdown this year. That should change soon, but he's fourth in points per game without a touchdown. I mean, super impressive. Both these guys are really good starts. Etienne or Tank Dell? Yeah, I'm going Tank over Etienne for sure. I don't feel great about Tank. I don't feel great about Etienne though either. And Tank Dell with Nico Collins out, does have a little bit better of a floor. So yeah, I think I would go Tank over Etienne. All right, we're gonna get back to some of these London time questions. Then I do got a free player prop for this game in London as well coming up. I'm starting Caleb Williams over Baker, seeing that one in the YouTube live. London time. Hey Sam, pick 2: Rome, Sermon, Tank Dell, Amari, Dontavian Wicks, Javonte Williams. Okay, so we just looked at Amari versus Rome, and it was Amari. You got to start Amari over Rome. You got to start Amari over Christian Kirk as well. I would not start Amari, obviously, over DJ Moore. I think Brian Thomas Jr. versus Amari, like that one gets pretty spicy. That one's really close. I would start Amari over Keenan. Amari versus Rome Odunze, I think that one, versus Brian Thomas Jr. I think that one's a really tough call. Brian Thomas Jr. projects a bit better. Brian Thomas Jr. has been better this season. The game environment and the matchup are better for Amari. The offense is better for Brian Thomas Jr. though. I think I'm fine going Brian Thomas Jr. in that one. All right, so let's talk through this one though. So we got Amari, we got Tank, and Sermon as well. We're picking 2 here. Sermon is not a horrible option versus the Titans. He had a bunch of catches last week. He's going to be the running back 1 for the Colts this week. But also Anthony Richardson is back. And Anthony Richardson being back, guys, is bad for fantasy for basically every single other player in that offense. It's bad for Trey Sermon. It's definitely bad for Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. It's bad for Trey Sermon because Anthony Richardson throws to the running backs way less. There was 9 catches by the Colts running backs last week. Season high for the Colts running backs. I would be shocked if they even had 5 catches in the backfield today with Anthony Richardson start. And then Dontavian Wicks, I mean, just not a great start this week either. So let's add Javonte Williams to this one. And we'll see who wins. Yeah, so it's Amari for sure. You got to start Amari. Let's take Amari out. Let's put a Dunze in here. I would definitely start a Dunze over Wicks for sure. I actually am doing that, I think, in one of my leagues already. So let's do Rome Odunze, Javonte Williams, and Trey Sermon. So yeah, we're going Odunze over Trey Sermon. Javonte Williams over Odunze, I do think makes sense, especially if you're in a half PPR and non-PPR league. Javonte Williams coming off his best game of the season, 16 points. He's still, Javonte Williams, another one of these guys. He does not have a touchdown this season, but he did have 5 catches last week, plus 61 rushing yards. He had over 100 total yards last week. Saw a season, second best season of the season, 64% snap share. It is notable that Audric Estime is back in this game. Audric Estime is back. So I'm a little nervous about what that does to Javonte. Maybe he gets some of the goal line work and some of the base down work from Javonte. Not the best matchup for Javonte in this game, but the other encouraging thing for Javonte and all these Broncos running backs is the targets started to funnel to the running backs like we expected the start of the season. Just started last week for the first time, and I do kind of think that's going to continue. I have that noted in one of the free player props today as well. All right, let's get to Caleb Williams versus Dak, and then let's talk through the free player prop. For the free player props of the week, because I do have one in this London time game. We were locked into the London time game last week. We're locked in again on London time. So Caleb versus Dak. Yeah, so Dak is one of the few quarterbacks I'm going to play over Caleb. He's one of the few QBs. Let me switch over to the QB ranks here again on the both live streams here. The only quarterbacks I'm starting over Caleb Williams this week are Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Lamar, and Jaden Daniels. By the way, the 2 top quarterbacks of the week, they're playing each other this week in that game. Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson. I mean, got to be the game of the week. That one's going to be a ton of fun. And we got Jaden Daniels projected ahead of Lamar Jackson in the Walter Picks app. By the way, guys, if you haven't downloaded the Walter Picks app yet, I really do not know what you're waiting for. It is a free app. I've spent the last 4 years of my life helping build this app for all of you. I built this for you guys. I'm using it on the YouTube live right now. If you're watching live on YouTube, there's some premium subscriptions in the app as well. Not everything is free, but a lot of the app really is free. I appreciate everyone that tests out those premium subscriptions as well. They come with a 7-day free trial. You can literally sync your league for personalized insights throughout the whole fantasy season. Plus, it's going to help you crush props as well. Link is in the YouTube description for that and in the TikTok bio if you want to check out the Walter Picks app as well. If I don't get to your start sit, I'm going to get to hundreds of start sits on this live. The best place to go is the Walter Picks app, just like I'm doing on the YouTube live right now to help me answer some of these start sits. Pittman or Jameson Williams. Yeah, so I don't know how we can trust Michael Pittman this week. I mean, super weird stuff with the Colts this week. They say Pittman's a candidate for IR, and then suddenly he's playing this week. I mean, a full 180 with Michael Pittman. He's dealing with a back injury that he's trying to play through. And then on top of that, Anthony Richardson is back. And on top of that, they get the Titans. And guys, the Titans have been a really, really bad matchup for receivers. They rank as the best defense versus receivers this season. I mean, this is a whole different Titans defense than we saw last season. Last season, they were a bad secondary. We have not seen any receiver this whole season go over 11 fantasy points versus the Tennessee Titans. And guys, they've played some good receivers. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, none of those guys went over 11 points in week 1. Garrett Wilson didn't do it in week 2. Jaden Reed didn't do it in week 3. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle didn't do it in week 4, albeit without Tua. All 4 games for the Titans, no receivers have done well. So, yeah, I really don't think you can start Pittman this week at all. I would gladly start Jameson Williams over Michael Pittman. Gladly. And I would start Williams over Downs, too. And I actually think Downs over Michael Pittman's reasonable this week also. Should I start? Defense list. Yeah, I got you with the defense list. There's some clear good defenses this week. I think the Bucs defense, pretty underrated. You know, it seems like Spencer Rattler is like getting all the steam all of a sudden. Like all these people in on Spencer Rattler. I'm not in on Spencer Rattler, to be very clear. I expect Spencer Rattler to really struggle in his first game. I would be very surprised to see a big Spencer Rattler game here. And I think it really makes all of these ancillary fantasy pieces kind of murky. I feel best about Olave because there's already been some stuff from Rattler himself about how much he loves Chris Olave. I'm very, very nervous about Rashid Shaheed this week. I do not think you can start Rashid Shaheed. Kendre Miller is going to be back this week too. I still think, Alvin Kamara is a start, obviously. But I think if Rattler struggles like he might in this game, Kamara might take a hit too. So yeah, I do like the Bucs defense as a good one. The Colts defense, the Eagles defense, the Texans defense, the Steelers defense, the Bengals defense, and the Bucs defense. Those are my favorite defenses of the week. I'll pull up the defenses here on YouTube as well. Kraft or McBride? Yeah, it's McBride. It's McBride. I'll go to the tight ends here in a second because I know there's some tight end questions in this London time game too. We got Kmet, Evan Ingram, both definitely on the radar here for tight ends in week 6. It is London time today. This game kicks off in 25, so I want to get to the free player prop of the day. Tank Bigsby. Guys, take the rushing prop for Tank Bigsby in this game. Tank Bigsby is going to get the most carries, I think, for the Jags in this game. And we've only seen the Bears allow good performances to running backs really this season. Let me read you the running backs that have gone over 40 yards against the Bears this season. We saw Tony Pollard do it. Jonathan Taylor did it. Kyron Williams did it. Chuba Hubbard did it. 4 players in 5 games. And when they played the Texans, Mixon and Cam Akers did combine over 40 yards. And then you look at the numbers for Bigsby this season. Bigsby's coming off a career-high, season-high 13 carries. Last week, what did he do with those 13 carries? He went over 100 yards. Every single game where Tank Bigsby has at least 5 carries. We've only seen 3 games this season with Bigsby having at least 5 carries. And guys, he's getting at least 5 carries in this game. All 3 of those games, he went over 70 rushing yards. He's been incredibly efficient this season, guys. He has 8 yards per carry. And he doesn't need 8 yards per carry to get over 40 yards if he's going to get 10-plus carries in this game. The Jags are also, surprisingly to me, favored in this game. I think that bodes well for the rushing prop for Bigsby. I think the floor really for Bigsby in this game is 30-plus rushing yards. And they got the line at 40. And the ceiling is over 100 rushing yards. He just did that last week in a comparable matchup on the ground, at least. So, yeah, I like Bigsby's rushing prop a lot in this game. My favorite prop of this London time game. We went 2 for 2 in the London props last week. So take this Bigsby prop over 40.5. The other 2 props, we're going to talk about these more later on the live once the London game starts. But I like the CeeDee Lamb line a lot. I've seen this one as high as 90, but a lot of places have it at 83.5. I think that's a great value. I think CeeDee Lamb's going over 100 yards today. He's the wide receiver 1 this week in my mind, like really clearly. And then Bo Nix over 18.5 completions is also a really sneaky one. Bo Nix threw, let me pull this up. He threw 9 targets, I think, to the running backs. Javonte Williams last week versus the Raiders. Let's go to the matchups here and look at the running back targets for the Broncos. This is the main reason I'm in on the Bo Nix completion prop today. Last week, Javonte Williams and McLaughlin had 8 combined catches, 10 total targets to the running backs. If he gets another 10 targets to the running backs, 8 completions, he's easily going over 18.5 completions, Bo Nix. And he's beat this line in almost every game this season. Bo Nix has beat this line in all but one game. He's had at least 19 completions in 4 to 5 games. And now he gets the Chargers in a game where the Broncos are underdogs. 3-point underdogs at home. So yeah, I like the over 18.5 completions for Bo Nix as well. But yeah, the prop for London time, get this one in before the game starts in about 20 minutes. Tank Bigsby over 40 rushing yards. ETN or Bigsby. Yeah, so I do in fantasy, I do lean ETN over Tank Bigsby. Let's run over to the running back rankings here again. I do lean ETN over Bigsby for fantasy because of the receiving. But I do think Bigsby has a better rushing game. And I think it's a really close, and it's a very fair question. I would honestly argue that the floor for Bigsby's maybe a little bit better. I think he's more likely to score the touchdown on the ground. The ceiling for ETN may be a little bit higher because he's going to have more of the receiving work. There's definitely an outcome here where Bigsby just takes the job. Like I think more likely, here in this team, in this situation, where Bigsby just ends up being the lead back for this team all of a sudden because if he's played much better and ETN's dealing with an injury, I think it's much more likely here for the Jags than it is, for the Falcons and Algier and Bijan, and for the Jets with Braylon Allen and Breece Hall. But I still think ETN needs to be started over Bigsby this week in fantasy. And again, I like the Bigsby prop. What's up, Sam? Hope all is well. Happy London Part 2. What's going on, Kyle, man? Hope all is well with you as well. Hope everyone's doing great this Sunday morning. Sending good vibes to everyone. We're going to talk through every game. A lot of exciting games. Pumped to have this London time game kick off in just 15 minutes. So I'm going to get through as many London time starts as I can. I've already talked about every single player and what my thoughts on them in this game, but let's get to this. All right, D-Hop, Irving, Mooney, and Spears, thank you. Yeah, so DeAndre Hopkins, super intriguing fantasy option to me this week. I don't think you can start him in this one, though. This one has to be Irving. You got to start Bucky Irving this week. You have to. With no Rachaad White, like he's going to be a top 15 running back this week and has a massive ceiling to be top 5. So, and then Mooney also just can't be benched. So, yeah, it's bench D-Hop and Spears, the 2 Titans players here, in what might be a little bit of a gross game. It's Irving and Mooney for sure on this one. London time, half PPR. Ford, Bigsby, Madison, or Kirk. All right, let's get to this. Half PPR. Bigsby's better in half PPR, again, because of the rushing stuff. So the rankings I always have up on the live streams, these are PPR rankings. And in guys, scoring mode, it matters a ton. This is part of the reason the Walter Picks app is just truly incredible for fantasies because it's going to account for all of your custom league settings, unlike I can always do on these lives. So let's just look at these running backs first. And Ford, he projects a bit better. Madison projects a bit better. Zamir White is looking unlikely to play this week, though he is questionable. That's obviously good for Madison. Jerome Ford's usage has been really spiky. I mean, he's been over 10 points twice and under 9 points 3 times this season. And last week, it was a down spike for Jerome Ford, 58% snap percentage for Ford all of a sudden. Very comparable to week 2, it felt like. Worst matchup for Ford. You look at the matchups here, and it's Tank Bigsby that has the best matchup versus Jerome Ford versus Alexander Madison. Madison last week, 9 points in the role without Zamir White. He had only 38 rushing yards. He played 57% of the snaps. Amir Abdullah really played better than him. He did see 60% of the rushes, though. All 3 of these backs, these guys are heading in different directions. Bigsby's heading up. Ford really feels like he's trending down a bit. Madison is also, I think, trending down a bit after last week. I mean, Zamir White's out again. The matchup's best for Bigsby. Bigsby projects the worst. This is not an easy one. Bigsby's averaging the most points. Bigsby was running back 1 last week. I'm going to Tank Bigsby here, man. The projections, the rankings aren't going to agree with me with this start-sit decision of Bigsby, Madison, Ford. I do think Bigsby has a pretty good rushing floor in this game. That's why I'm on the 40 rushing yard prop for him. I'm okay going Bigsby over Madison and over Ford, especially in half PPR. I feel better about it in half PPR than full PPR because I don't see a huge receiving role for Bigsby. Good morning, Sam. It's Sunday. Kincaid or Kmet and Moss or Brown since Ramondre is out. Yeah, there's a ton of injuries to be aware of this week, but Ramondre is definitely one of them. Let's talk about the tight ends for a second. Let's jump over to the tight ends here. I think the tight ends every week, some really brutal tight end start sits. And Kmet is a good option. Kmet versus Kincaid, I actually have them back-to-back. I have them in the same tier. I actually would go Kincaid over Kmet. Kincaid's been a disappointment this season. I think they're a little bit higher ceiling, though, for Kincaid than Kmet. Again, I like Kmet. Kincaid, Laporta, Kraft, McBride, Ferguson, Bowers, only tight ends I'm starting over Kmet. Then it's Kmet. I'm starting Kmet over Goddard, over Otten, over Njoku, over Schultz, over Freiermuth, over Zach Ertz, over Theo Johnson, over Kyle Pitts, over Isaiah Likely, over Evan Ingram, over Mark Andrews. I'm starting Kmet over all those guys. Let's go to the actives, inactives here because we did just get some of these coming in. Let me pull this up. Evan Ingram is officially active for the first time in London. Gabe Davis also going to be playing. I think that's the only news out of the London game. All right, Zach Moss. Yeah, so it's Chase Brown over Zach Moss easily this week. Easily. He played better last week, and Moss is dealing with an injury. It's got to be Zach Moss. London time. Pick 2, Brian Thomas Jr., Jalen Tolbert, or Tyrone Tracy. This is not an easy one. Trade Achane for Godwin for the playoffs. Yeah, I saw that earlier before I hopped on the live. I do want to look at that one quickly. It depends on your team and how much you needed a running back versus receiver. But Godwin versus Achane for a trade is very fair. Just at a high level, very fair trade. Let's look at this one. All three of these guys definitely startable this week. I'm at half PPR. Let me switch this to PPR. It's going to bode better for the receivers. Man, you got to start Jalen Tolbert this week, guys. It's Jalen Tolbert week. I'm not starting Kmet. Oh, man, Kmet over Evans or Bucky. Yeah, I'm starting Bucky over Evans and Kmet, Wayne. I'm starting Bucky over Evans and Kmet. We are 15 minutes from kickoff here in London time. It is London time. I know all you guys in this live, you guys know that we're on London time. Shout out to everyone on London time with me this morning. I'll be on London time next week. I was on London time last week as well. It's always, one of the funniest things to me all season, every year. I absolutely love it because we're up here, we're up grinding, on London time. We're going, I promise you, especially this week with some of the tough starts in this game. We are in like an hour from now, 2 hours from now, we're going to see start sit questions for this game. As people wake up, they have no idea we're on London time this morning. And this is why this is how you get an advantage in your league. You're up, you're grinding, you're making the right start sits. This is the weeks we really got to start to churn out W's in fantasy with the information that we have from this season so far. And Jalen Tolbert, guys, I don't know how you could possibly bench him in this game. He really was in a featured role last week. He played a season high, career high, 90% of the snaps. He had a 24% target share. He had 40% of the air yards for the Cowboys. Now he gets a matchup in a shootout versus the Lions in a dome. He's going to be out there every single snap. CeeDee Lamb's going to attract a ton of attention. I like CeeDee Lamb a lot this week too. But yeah, you got to start Jalen Tolbert in this spot over Brian Thomas Jr. And then Tyrone Tracy versus Brian Thomas Jr., extremely close. I personally lean towards Tyrone Tracy, though, over Brian Thomas Jr. I think the floor is better for Tracy without Devin Singletary, and I think the ceiling's honestly pretty comparable. Tough matchup for Brian Thomas Jr. here. I would start him over Mike Evans. I've seen that start sit a couple of times. Pitts versus Evan Ingram. Yeah, so I have those guys both in tier 6. Don't feel great about either of them. Honestly, I think I lean Kyle Pitts over Evan Ingram. I don't think you can start Evan Ingram over Pat Freiermuth. I don't feel good about starting Evan Ingram until we see him play a full game and see how healthy he truly is. We've seen one game from Evan Ingram this season. He had 1 point. He had 1.5 points. He had a catch for 5 yards. That was it. What's up, Sam? Hope everyone's on time for the London games this week. Yeah, me as well. I've got a full PPR starts at Dobbs, Judy, or Lazard. Yeah, this is a deep league question here. I don't want to start Lazard. I really don't want to start Lazard. I think this one's Dobbs versus Judy. And I think both these guys are, worth thinking about this week. Dobbs back this week after the weird situation last week. I do expect him to immediately lead this receiver room and routes run and snaps like he was doing before. Interesting matchup versus the Cardinals. Weatherman Sam does have a report about this game, but the TLDRs, I'm not that worried about any weather this week. We'll get to that in a second. Judy, you could tell a story about him, but yeah, it's Dobbs, man. Go Dobbs on a team like he's on at least a real offense. The Browns are just collapsing before our eyes. And Njoku versus Ertz. man. I got Njoku ahead of Ertz. I don't feel good about Njoku, Ingram, Andrews, Pitts, all these guys. You can consider starting them. I got Njoku ahead of everyone there, though. Sam, I have Brees and ETN. Should I do Godwin for HN trade? I lost Rice. Yeah, if you have Brees and ETN, I don't hate this. Let's compare HN playoff schedule really quick. Oh, HN's on bye. Let's look at Godwin super fast, too. I guess you get Godwin this week, which is pretty big. The playoff schedule is not amazing, not awful for Godwin. Let's just look up HN's playoff schedule again really quick. I don't love selling the Dolphins players. The playoff schedule is not the best for HN. It's a fine trade to make. Godwin's had a really, really good floor in PPR, especially. Handcuffs are saving me full PPR. Bucky Irving, Tracy, Deontay Johnson. Yeah, I'm not benching Bucky Irving this week. Guys, you can't bench Bucky Irving. He's looked fantastic. This is the whole reason we had Bucky Irving on our teams. It's the whole reason we have Braylon Allen on our teams. It's the whole reason we have Tyler Algier on our teams. And honestly, it's the whole reason that we've had Tank Bigsby on our teams too. It's if these starters miss time, these guys are absolutely going to smash. They're going to be very elite fantasy options. Let's go to the running back ranks here again really quick. Bucky Irving ranks running back 11 for me this week. I think arguably you could put him in the top 10. He's played fantastic this season, and he's just locked in for by far his biggest workload of the year against Spencer Rattler and the Saints. And again, I'm not expecting a good game from Spencer Rattler. I'm honestly surprised how many people are expecting a good game from Spencer Rattler. It would be cool to see a fifth-round rookie quarterback, do something. But the Buccaneers are getting healthy on defense. Their two starting safeties are back for the first time in a few weeks. The Saints offense has been struggling with Derek Carr the last several weeks as well. They're banged up a little bit on the offensive line. This is the best matchup of the season since week 1 for Bucky Irving. Not that the Saints are an amazing matchup, but we got Bucky Irving, guys, projected for 14 carries and 4 targets, 18 total opportunities, and he could easily go over that with no Rachaad White. So yeah, you got to start Bucky Irving this week for sure. Let me pull up the running back ranks again here on the YouTube live as well. All right, we're almost in London time game. I'm for the next 10 minutes, since we got just about 10 minutes till kickoff, I'm going to only go to the London time start sits. We're going to get to all the start sits after that. We got tons of time to get to hundreds of start sits. All right, London time question here. Should I play Bigsby, Kirk, or Roma Dunze at the flex? Yeah, so I do think that if this is a PPR question, which I assume it is, I do think you got to strongly consider the receivers here. And honestly, I feel most optimistic about a Dunze out of all of these options. Yeah, I think it is Roma Dunze here. We've seen a ceiling game from a Dunze. We haven't seen a real ceiling game from Kirk. The one game he scored a touchdown, still didn't even clear 20 points. The one game Dunze scored a touchdown, he had 24 points, was a top 10 wide receiver. I do think Dunze's got a higher ceiling than Kirk in this game. Dunze's got the better matchup than Christian Kirk. Again, the Bears have been really good versus receivers. There's only one receiver with a good game versus the Bears this season, and it was Nico Collins. And the Jags don't have a Nico Collins on their team. And if they do, it's Brian Thomas Jr. It's not Christian Kirk. None of the number 2 receivers have done well. None of them over 12.5 points. There's only 4 receivers over 10 points. One of them was, what's this guy's first name? Jalen. I was going to say Jalen, but I wasn't confident. Jalen Coker. He went over 10 points last week. Tutu Atwell, Whittington went over 10, and then Nico went over 10. Everyone else under 10 against this Bears defense. They haven't played the best receivers, but still. I would go with Dunze. Again, I like Bigsby. Bigsby's actually the free player prop for me in this game. Over 40 rushing yards, guys. Lock that one in. He's going to go over at least 30 rushing yards. He's getting at least 10 carries in this game. I think he could get 15. Wide receiver rankings. I got you in the YouTube and TikTok live with the wide receiver rankings. We're going to get to some more London time start hits. I'm fired up, man. It's going to be a fantastic week 6. We got a fun London time game on coming up here momentarily as well. Let me know in the beginning of the start sit. ETN versus Drake, versus Tolbert or Slayton. Yeah, it's Tolbert or Slayton over ETN. Bench ETN for Tolbert and for Slayton. I think I'd go Tolbert over Slayton. I think. Let's actually just do that comparison super quick here. Slayton was in the Malik Neighbors role last week, guys. Darius Slayton was featured in the Malik Neighbors role last week. Notable, obviously, in that role. But yeah, it's Tolbert. It's Tolbert over Darius Slayton for me this week. And then Mark Andrews versus Evan Ingram. Oh man, I mean, I don't know how you start Mark Andrews right now. I really don't. The Commanders have weirdly been decent against tight ends. There's a ceiling here for Andrews. I'm going Evan Ingram over Andrews. I really don't want to start Andrews. Ingram, Pitts, or Muth. Yeah, so this one's Muth, then Pitts, then Ingram. It's Muth, then Pitts, then Ingram. I don't want to start Evan Ingram. If I have Mark Andrews, fine. I'll start Evan Ingram. There's at least an interesting ceiling and kind of an unknown with Evan Ingram. Guys, Evan Ingram led tight ends in receptions last season. Evan Ingram almost broke the all-time record for tight end receptions last season. In week 1, though, he had 1 catch, 5 yards, and he's hurt his hamstring. Haven't seen him since. So there's just a huge floor and big unknown for Ingram that I'd much prefer to just keep him on my bench one more week if I can. And in this spot, I think you can. I think it's okay to go Muth or Pitts over Evan Ingram. I'd prefer to bench Ingram, and I like Cole Kmet much more than Ingram. We got Muth ahead of Pitts. I'd argue, maybe the ceiling for Pitts is a little bit higher. Brian Thomas Jr., DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Higgins, pick 2 full PPR. Yeah, so start DJ Moore. Guys, you've got to start DJ Moore. This is the first DJ Moore start sit I've seen. DJ Moore's a smash start versus the Jags. He ranks as a top 10 wide receiver. He's by far the best receiver in this game to play for fantasy. He doesn't have a game under 10 points. This is his best matchup of the season. The Jags rank dead last against receivers and against quarterbacks in fantasy. So you've got to start DJ Moore, and that's part of the reason I'm kind of in on a Dunze too, over Christian Kirk, for example. So this one's really Brian Thomas Jr., Deontay Johnson versus T. Higgins. It's T. Higgins. I think it has to be T. Higgins. I wonder if Deontay projects better than T. Higgins. I imagine he doesn't. He doesn't. Yeah, you got to start T. Higgins. T. Higgins, guys, T. Higgins has more targets than Jamar Chase over the last couple of games. He has to be started. T. Higgins is a top 10 wide receiver option this week versus the Giants. Has to be started. ETN or Tolbert, happy PR. Yeah, it's Tolbert. Guys, start Tolbert over ETN. Let me go to the high level. Rico or Madison, Jets D or Bears D. I think Bears D over Jets D. Let's go to the high level takes here before this London time game kicks off. So yeah, I'm starting. Let's pull up the Bears receiver here on the Bears receivers here on the YouTube live before I go off here on some high level takes. But yeah, DJ Moore, much better option than these other 2 receivers. I think 2 of these 3 receivers will do well in this game. So the QB must starts this week. You got to start Jaden Daniels. You got to start Dak Prescott. Caleb Williams is a good start in this game. There's only 5 QBs I'm really starting over Caleb Williams. That's it. Dak Prescott's one of them. Kyler Murray's one of them. Jalen Hurts is one of them. Lamar and Jaden Daniels. End of list. Then it's Caleb Williams versus the Jags, who ranked dead last for quarterbacks this season. Caleb Williams has shown like he's really gotten better every week, and part of that's he's getting better and better matchups. He crushed the Panthers last week. He's going to crush the Jags in this one for fantasy purposes. Again, I'm surprised the Jags are favored in this game, by the way. I really think the Bears win this game versus the Jags. Jags are 1.5-point favorites in this game. The Bears defense is much better than the Jags defense. And there's not much compelling to say the Jags offense is that much better than the Bears offense. So again, surprised about the spread in that one. I think they just treat this as a home game for the Jags because they've historically played a lot of games in London, big fan base in London. And they historically have played pretty well in London. But yeah, I think the Bears are just clearly a better team. I think in this game, I want to bench Evan Ingram. I really want to bench Evan Ingram in this game if I can. I also think Adunze is a better option than Christian Kirk. I like Brian Thomas Jr. more than Christian Kirk. I would start Tolbert over Christian Kirk and Adunze and Keenan. I would start Tolbert over Travis Etienne. I would start Darnell Mooney over Travis Etienne. Darnell Mooney is a great PPR start. I'm starting Reed for sure. Jaden Reed, I'm going to tell every single Jaden Reed question to start Jaden Reed today. Bucky over Cook, yeah, I think you got to start Bucky in almost all spots this week. He ranks as running back 11 for me this week. Shout out to everyone that's live right now, guys. Smash the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Hit the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, I'm telling you, hit the follow button. Come to the YouTube live. It's a better viewing experience. I can share screen on YouTube, which I can't do on TikTok. All right, let's hop over to the defense ranks quick. I'll keep these up. Let me know in the comments, guys, what position rank do you want to see next? I'll go receivers or running backs. You guys want to see receivers or running backs? I'll pull up the running backs here on the YouTube live. London time question here. ETN or Sermon? Gibson or Tracy? Yeah, so I go Tracy over ETN. I would start Tracy over ETN. Tracy's in a workhorse role. ETN's not. ETN is probably not going to get more carries than Bigsby in this game. I do think he'll still have a good receiving role. I still think ETN's a better start in fantasy than Bigsby, who I actually like Bigsby's rushing prop today. Over 40 rushing yards. That's the free player prop of the London time game here. Got a couple more free player props to talk through later in the live as well. We already touched on them briefly. But yeah, I think I'd rank these guys Tracy, then ETN, then Gibson. Let's pull up the running back ranks here. We'll hop over to the running back rankings. Yeah, it's Tracy, then Etienne, then Gibson, then Sermon. And I think Sermon's a trap this week. I really think Sermon is a trap. With Anthony Richardson back, Sermon like honestly kind of lucked into a good game last week. He ended up scoring a rushing touchdown, but he was horribly inefficient on the ground, only 38 rushing yards. He scored a rushing touchdown and had 6 catches. He barely cracked 50 yards, but finishes running back 6 because he had 6 catches and a touchdown. But now Anthony Richardson is back, and he throws to the running backs way less than Flacco did. There's no way Sermon gets 6 catches with Anthony Richardson starting, and there's also a lower chance of him scoring a rushing touchdown with Anthony Richardson starting, and it's not a good matchup for him versus the Titans. He got the Jags last week, who we're about to see get crushed in this game. I haven't seen any DeAndre Swift questions, which I think is good, guys. You got to start DeAndre Swift in this game that kicks off in 4 minutes. We are on London time this morning. We got Keenan, Sermon, Downs, Javonte, D-Hop, half PPR. Yeah, so I'm not starting Downs. I would start Keenan over Downs. Downs also was on the injury report this week. So this one's Keenan. The half PPR makes this even tougher, I think. Sermon, I think the answer is going to be Javonte plus one of these other guys. Let's just compare real quick. We'll switch this to half PPR. I think Javonte versus Keenan is a close one. Keenan has not had a good game yet this season, and I do expect his best game of the season in this game, which is not saying much. He hasn't had more than 5 half PPR points yet this year. But again, the Jags have been crushed. This is arguably the healthiest Keenan's been all season too. But yeah, half PPR, just go with the running backs. Go Javonte, go Sermon. I think that's reasonable. Let's swap Keenan out here for D-Hop. I think D-Hop is a good sleeper this week. Very interesting sleeper this week is DeAndre Hopkins. I was in on DeAndre Hopkins before the season. I think I underrated, what the role was going to be for him. Or overrated what the role was going to be for him to start the season. I mean, clearly the injury was more significant than I realized. He's not had a game over 50% of the snaps yet this season, but we've seen the role grow a little bit from the start of the season with DeAndre Hopkins. He's over 20% target share in his last 2 games, and then he just had a bye week to get a bit more healthy. Now he gets a good matchup versus the Colts, the best matchup of the season for DeAndre Hopkins and for Will Levis. I think Hopkins is an interesting sleeper this week for sure. Honestly, I think Hopkins over Sermon's pretty reasonable. I think I would probably go Hopkins. Hopkins versus Keenan is also, we have them back-to-back here in the wide receiver ranks. Super, super close. I think I lean towards Keenan over Hopkins. Really close call between Keenan and Hopkins. But yeah, I think honestly, the more I think about it, I'd start them both over Trey Sermon, even with JT out. I would argue Hopkins is a little bit more sketchy though, just given his role so far this season. So yeah, I think I'd go Keenan there. Caleb or Stroud? Yeah, it's Caleb. It's Caleb Williams over Stroud. The only quarterbacks. Let me hop to the quarterback ranks here again. The only quarterbacks I'm starting over Caleb is Dak, Kyler Hurts, Lamar, Jane Daniels. That's it. End of list. Evans, Devontae, Scary Terry, or Bucky. Yeah, so it's got to be Bucky for sure. And then Evans and Devontae. I think Devontae over Evans. This is a bad matchup for Evans this week. Very bad matchup for Evans. He's not done well versus the Saints. And then Terry McLaurin. Yeah, it's Terry. Go Terry. This is half PPR still, but I'm going Terry McLaurin over Devontae Smith and over Mike Evans this week. Definitely the first week where I would answer it that way. I do think that makes sense given the matchups and circumstances for each of these players. Can you pull up the wide receiver ranks? Yep, I got you. I got you with the wide receiver ranks. I got you guys all morning long with everything that you could possibly need to know for all of these games. We're going to get to every single player in every game. Let's get to the receivers here. A lot of receivers to think through. Let me pull up the wide receiver ranks again here on the YouTube Live as well. But yeah, I do have Terry McLaurin ahead of Mike Evans and ahead of Devontae Smith. Cook or Jacobs. Yeah, so I don't want to start James Cook at all. Josh Jacobs is a smash, too, against the Cardinals. The Cardinals have been one of the worst defenses versus running backs this season. All right, London time, guys. The game's kicking off very, very soon. Let me pull up. I think the start sits are locked in at this point. Shout out to everyone who was on London time with me. This is usually when we start the live stream. All right, let's go. We got a couple more London ones to get in here. Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. is a tough call. I'm starting Mooney over BTJ for sure. JMO versus BTJ is close. But yeah, I think it's BTJ over JMO. Oh, man. I mean, just different matchups here for Jameson Williams versus BTJ. Super close one. I'm definitely playing Mooney though. Let's compare this one super quick. Brian Thomas Jr. versus Jameson Williams. Waymo Jamo's definitely cooled off a little bit from his start to the season. Yeah, it's Brian Thomas Jr. over Jameson Williams. Hey, Walter, BTJ or Bucky? Classic mistake here. My name is not Walter. My name is Sam. Walter is the AI model that powers the Walter Picks app, which I personally have helped build over the last 4 years. Don't worry about it. It's a classic mistake. But yeah, we're going Bucky Irving over Brian Thomas Jr. You better get this one in very, very quick because there's like maybe no more seconds left to make these start-sit decisions. Swift, Roschon, or Pierce? Yeah, it's Swift. Guys, start DeAndre Swift. Start DeAndre Swift. Tolbert or McLeod? Definitely Tolbert. Tolbert's a smash start. Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Bucky. Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Mooney. Yeah, these are close ones. All right, with this game starting, let me do these comparisons quick with Marv. Marv projects as wide receiver 15. I do think Marvin Harrison Jr. being a little bit underrated. Mooney's wide receiver 16. Super close. I have them both in the same tier, both tier 4. And then Bucky Irving also, like, I really want to start Bucky Irving. Yeah, so it's Bucky Irving over Marvin Harrison Jr. and over Mooney. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. and Mooney are super, super close. It's super close. Too late to start a Doomsday. It's too late. It's too late to start a Doomsday. Yeah. The game is kicking off right now. You got to be on London time. I think I would have said Pickens over a Doomsday, but that one's probably pretty close. Morning, Samster. Let's go. Let's go, Adrian. It's week 6. We got a game, a fun one kicking off. I hope you guys keep tuned into the live stream as you're watching this London time game at the same time. We got, because I appreciate in the comments too. Like, let me know what's going on in the London time game because I'm going to be dialed into the live because I'm locked in. We're about to talk through every single game coming up here in the early window games, the late window games, the Sunday night, the Monday night game. We're going to get to all of it. Every single relevant player. We're going to talk through all of the tough start sit decisions. We're going to give a couple more free player props. Hopefully you guys were on London time just a few minutes ago with us, and you took the Tank Bigsby rushing prop because that one's going to smash in this game. But yeah, let me know what's going on in the game as I stay locked in to the live. All right, we got a flex question here. Moss, McConkey, or Braylon Allen? I don't want to start Zach Moss this week. Or do I go pick up Slayton? Yeah, so Slayton should be picked up. And I honestly think Gibson. So yeah, we got Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton was in the Malik Neighbors role last week, and he's again out. Malik Neighbors is once again out. Let's go to the high level takes here on the TikTok live. Slayton versus McConkey, I think, is Slayton. But I actually think the answer might be Antonio Gibson here. Yeah, it's Slayton. Go Slayton, especially if there's a PPR league. Go Slayton. All right, let's go to, we're going to now lock into the game by game previews here. We're going to go every single game. I'm going to give my high level thoughts on every single game, every single player in those games. And then we will get back to the start sits as this London time game kicks off. Happy week 6 to everybody in this live. Yeah, Joe Burrow versus Fields, I do think is Burrow this week. Let's switch back to the running back ranks here on the TikTok live. Switch back to the running back ranks on the YouTube live as well. No, a lot of tough running back and receiver decisions this week. All right, so let's start with this Commanders-Ravens game. Both of our top 2 quarterbacks this week projected are in this game. We got Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson, the 2 best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL in the same game. Both of them have defenses that have really struggled at times this season. The Ravens are favored in this game by 6.5 points. I'm a huge favorite in this game. I think it actually opened at 7.5. Very intriguing spread there. I do think the Commanders are pretty good with those points. And the Bears go 3 and out to start. Jaden Daniels needs to be started over everybody. He's the QB1 this week. You got to start Jaden Daniels. We've seen plenty of quarterbacks do well versus the Ravens, especially the very good quarterbacks. Joe Burrow was QB2. Dak Prescott was QB2. Josh Allen and Mahomes have struggled. Those are 2 a little bit scary data points versus the Ravens. But yeah, Jaden Daniels with how he's been playing. Jaden Daniels ranks number 2 in fantasy points per game. He has not finished worse than QB 15 on any given week. He has over 20 points in all but one game this season. Needs to be started. The other commanders that need to be started in this game, Terry McLaurin has been absolutely cooking recently. There's no Brian Robinson Jr. Guys, there's a lot of injuries this week. Again, you got to be on top of the injuries. One of the biggest things in fantasy as the season goes on is understanding, not only just being aware of who's out, but understanding what that means for the rest of the offense. And today that means Austin Eckler is like a decent fantasy start. Both him and McNichols are decent starts. McNichols is available in almost every league, so if you're really desperate at running back, I think you could do much worse than Jeremy McNichols, who's actually had back-to-back good fantasy games, over 10 points in back-to-back games. He's got 30 points in the last 2 games, 3 touchdowns. This game's projected to be the highest scoring game of the slate, only after the Cowboys and the Lions. Eckler's played really well this season. He's been over 10 points in every game he's played, and he's been actually really efficient. One of the more efficient running backs in the NFL this season, 7.9 yards per carry, 13.7 yards per reception. He has not dropped a single target. Brian Thomas Jr. off to a good start on the first drive. So yeah, we're starting Jayden Daniels. We're starting Terry McLaurin. Eckler's a good start, top 20 running back start this week. Ertz is okay. Ravens have struggled versus tight ends. They've also played Brock Bowers, Jake Ferguson, and Kincaid and Kelsey. So I don't know how much we can read into them struggling versus tight ends. They've just played really good tight ends. Zach Ertz is really a desperation start. Eckler, okay, but Ravens defense. Yeah, Ravens defense has been good versus running backs. But yeah, Eckler's got a pretty decent floor because he's going to have the pass catching. They have actually thrown to the running backs a decent amount. No running back has really done amazing, though, versus the Ravens. Pacheco and Chase Brown, that's it, over 15 points. They played the Raiders, though, in the Cowboys. Those backfields obviously aren't good. The Bills' backfield struggled. So yeah, Eckler's more of a floor play than a ceiling play this week. And then on the Ravens side of the ball, Derrick Henry, smash option. He ranks as running back 2 this week. Zay Flowers also in a good spot this week. He's coming off his best game, I think, of the season. Second best game, 19 fantasy points. Most receiving yards of the season, though. Got wide receiver rankings. I got wide receiver rankings. You know it. Switch over to the wide receiver rankings here on the YouTube Live as well. All right, let me pull this comment off. We're going game by game here. Get to the free player props here in a second. Guys, shout out to everybody in this live stream tuned in during the London time game. I appreciate you guys all so much. Seriously, this is my favorite thing of the week. I've been grinding all morning, getting ready for this live. I've really been grinding all week, making sure I got the best possible advice for you guys on this live stream. Smash the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Hit the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. Breece Hall in tier 1. Yeah, we're going to get to that. I really think Breece Hall deserves to be in tier 1 this week against the Bills. The Bills have allowed the most fantasy points per game to running backs this season. So yeah, Zay Flowers is a good start. Derrick Henry's a smash start. Lamar's must start. None of the other Ravens are really must starts, though. And Andrews really can't be started. He's behind Isaiah Likely. Justice Hill is really just a desperation PPR running back play. It's really Lamar, Henry, Zay. Those are the guys you can really start. And Rashad Bateman, interesting sleeper this week. Versus the Commanders, Bateman's coming off his best game of the season with 15 points. He scored a touchdown last week, 4 catches, 58 yards, 19% target share. Decent sleeper, but that's all he is. He's a sleeper. He's not a lock or anything. Why is Devontae Smith so low? Yeah, the Browns secondary has been decent this season. AJ Brown's back as well. I do think Devontae deserves to be a little bit higher in these rankings, but we haven't seen 2 receivers really smash against the Browns yet. And part of the issue is the Browns offense is so bad that the Eagles are projected to be pretty run heavy in this game. The Eagles are 8.5 point favorites in this game versus the Browns. So they just might not need to throw that much versus the Browns. CeeDee Lamb only had 13 points versus the Browns. We haven't seen 2 receivers over 15 points versus the Browns this whole season. And part of the reason is the Browns defense is good and the Browns offense is so bad that teams just don't end up throwing that much versus the Browns. So yeah, Devontae Smith is a bit of a worse option than usual this week. Cook or Wandale? Yeah, it's Wandale. I want nothing to do with James Cook with the foot injury. No thank you to James Cook. All right, let's jump over actually to this Eagles-Browns game here because the Eagles have a lot of good fantasy options, as always. Jalen Hurts is still a decent start. Eckler or Sermon? Yeah, I'm going Eckler over Sermon. Let's jump over to the tight end ranks here. We're seeing some tight end questions. Tank Dell or Tracy? I'm going Tracy over Tank. I want to start Tracy. I want to start Bucky Irving. These are starting running backs and workhorse roles today. A nice catch by Evan Ingram. Thanks for that in the YouTube live. Appreciate you guys keeping me in the know on the London time game because I'm locked into the live. And it's good to hear that Evan Ingram's at least out there. It seems like Brian Thomas Jr. is doing okay as well. Yeah, so A.J. Brown's a must start. Saquon's obviously must start. Saquon ranks as running back 1. Again, part of the reason I'm a little out on Devontae Smith this week is I do think the Eagles will lean pretty run heavy in against a bad Browns overall team. The defense isn't that bad, but the overall team is awful because the offense is bottom 5 in the NFL right now. Maybe the worst offense in the NFL right now is the Cleveland Browns. Bro, are you slow? Where's Travis Kelce? These are rankings for this week, the rest of the games this week. So you won't see anyone on bye. And you won't see anyone that played on Thursday night either. Pickens or Waymo? JMO, yeah, it's got to be Pickens, I think, over Jameson Williams. How do you feel about Joe Mixon? Yeah, so let's go to the running back ranks here again on the TikTok live. Joe Mixon ranks as running back 13. Mixon's a really interesting projection this week because it's really not a bad matchup versus the Pats. We've really only seen one game for Joe Mixon this season. And in that game, he smashed. He had arguably the best role of any running back in like any game this season. He had a total of 30 carries and 3 targets in week 1 versus the Colts. Finished as running back 2 in that game, had 159 rushing yards and 19 receiving yards, over 170 total yards. So yeah, Joe Mixon's a must start, really. Like the only running backs I would be starting over, I'd start Bucky Irving over him. I'd start James Conner over him. I'd start Pollard in a good matchup over him. Chuba Hubbard, I think, deserves to be started over him. Montgomery, Brees. But I'm starting Joe Mixon over, man, I don't know if I'd start him over Josh Jacobs. Honestly, that one's pretty close. I would start him over Tracy. I would start him over Najee very easily. Dobbins, ETN, all these other guys. Eckler, ETN, obviously, no more start-sit decisions with ETN. Morning, boss. I have to head into work. If you got a second, fighting for 4 and 2. I got you, Levy. I understand working on Sunday mornings. I can relate to that, even though I absolutely love working on Sunday mornings. This doesn't feel like work to me, but it is. All right, we got Hurts versus Fields. Yeah, it's Hurts. It's Hurts over Fields. And Fields is like a high floor option, but he doesn't have the same ceiling as Hurts. And they have similar floors. Wide receiver 2 in a flex needed Olave, Tolbert, Hopkins, Javonte, Chase Brown, Dowdle, or Eckler. Yeah, so I think Tolbert and Olave are probably the options here. Assuming this is a PPR league, which I think it is. Tolbert versus Javonte is close. I do think DeAndre Hopkins is an intriguing sleeper this week. I don't think you can go any of these running backs at the end over Tolbert. And Olave, like I'm nervous about the Saints offense. I am. I feel the best about Olave out of the group, though. We've already heard Spencer Rattler like rave about Olave. And I am willing to be positive about that, even though it's pretty speculative. Let's actually compare Javonte instead of Hopkins here. I think Javonte projects a bit better. Yeah, it's Olave and Tolbert. Go Olave and Tolbert here. Enjoy work today, man. Got to appreciate the grind. Eckler or Devontae Smith? Yeah, this is a really close one, I think, Nick. Again, I'm kind of out on Devontae Smith this week. I am a little bit out on Devontae. And I'm a little scared to be out on Devontae. He still ranks as a top 20 receiver. It just feels like he's lower than usual, again, with the games get projected. But yeah, in PPR, it's Devontae Smith over Eckler. Jacobs or Connor? Yeah, so I really don't want to bench Jacobs. I honestly, my rankings don't have this, but I honestly think I would go Jacobs over Mixon and over Connor. This matchup for Jacobs is really good, and I think Jacobs is getting a bit underrated because he hasn't scored many touchdowns this season. Let's compare these guys, Jacobs, Connor, and then I'll go back to the game-by-game analysis here in a second too. We've got through just one, really just 2 games here. Well, I actually didn't get to the Brown side of that game, so I'll hop back to that in a second. But all these guys project between 14 and 14.1 points. I mean, all these guys are in tier 3 for me at running back. I actually prefer Josh Jacobs because Josh Jacobs has the best matchup here. Josh Jacobs feels like the safest option and honestly the highest ceiling option among all of these players. Jacobs scored his first touchdown of the season, first game over 15 points. The Cardinals have been crushed by running backs in almost every game. They're averaging over almost 30 points to running backs over the past couple of games. Last week, Jordan Mason went down. He didn't go down. He ended with 89 rushing yards, but didn't score a touchdown. But the couple weeks before that, we saw Gibbs, Montgomery, Brian Robinson, and Jeremy McNichols all rank as top 14 running backs versus the Cardinals. This game also has some weather to be aware of that honestly might funnel even more touches towards Josh Jacobs. So yeah, I'm going Jacobs over Mixon. I'm going Jacobs over James Conner. All of them project so close together. I mean, it's extremely, extremely close. I'm going Bucky Irving over all of them. Yeah, it's Bucky. It's got to be Bucky over these guys in a workhorse role with Rachaad White out. Tyrone Tracy or Amari Cooper. Yeah, it's Tracy. I think it's Tracy over Amari. Good morning, Sam. Pick 3 PPR. Devontae, Cooper, Deontay, Monty, Bucky. Yeah, so you're starting Bucky Irving. You're starting David Montgomery. So let's do the receivers here. You got to start David Montgomery and Bucky Irving this week. Must starts. QBs. Yeah, let me go to the QBs, seeing some QB questions. We'll do Devontae versus Cooper versus Deontay. I think the answer here is going to be Deontay. Yeah, it's Deontay. Deontay over Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith over Amari Cooper. Kyle Pitts versus Zach Ertz. Yeah, it's Ertz. I think it's Ertz. Higgins over Deontay and Puka. Puka's out in on bye. I think I would keep Deontay and Higgins over Puka too if you were just like choosing who to keep on your team. I am playing Chase Brown over Eckler. I think this week. Dobbins or Bucky, got to be Bucky. Guys, start Bucky Irving this week. Start Bucky Irving. All right, let's get to the Brown side of the ball real quick here. So I talked about the Eagles side already. And Gabe Davis drops an end zone target there. Oh, let's go to the Browns here. All right, so Deshaun can't be started. Amari is it's just an absolute headache for fantasy. And it sounds like there's a decent chance he gets traded, which would be great for him, I think, for fantasy. The role, we already talked about it earlier in the live. The role for Amari Cooper, guys, it's the top 12 role in the NFL. He ranks 8th in targets, 12th in target share, 2nd in air yards, and 3rd in air yard percentage. He has over 50% of the Browns' air yards this season, does Amari Cooper. And still isn't even a must start because of how bad the offense is playing, and how bad Deshaun's playing, and how bad the offensive line is playing, despite being in kind of a good matchup versus the Eagles' pass funnel defense. So yeah, I think that Amari's a risky start. He's a back-end wide receiver too this week. I am playing, AJ Brown versus Jaden Reed. We are just talking about the Eagles here. I think Reed projects a bit better. I'm not benching AJ Brown though. I'm not going to bench AJ Brown in his first game back. Kirk or Allen? Yeah, so I'm benching Josh Allen this week. Yep, I'm fine benching Josh Allen this week. All right, let's get to the next game here. Let's talk through this Packers-Cardinals game. Another fun game here, and this is maybe a good time for Weatherman Sam to touch base with everyone. There is some weather to just be aware of. I'll hop over to the wide receiver ranks, seeing people request that in the TikTok live. I'll switch over to running back ranks here in the YouTube live. So Jordan Love, decent start this week. The only quarterbacks I had Caleb Williams ahead of him. He didn't have a good start in his first drive, but I think that made sense. I would start Dak. I start Hurts over him. I start Kyler and Lamar and Daniels. That's it. Then it's Jordan Love in a good matchup versus the Cardinals. Jordan Love with some of his receivers back to the Romeo Doubs is back. Christian Watson's questionable. It seems like he's got a real chance to play. It seems like the injury for Christian Watson is not going to be as bad as we thought it might be. That could be pretty big for this offense as well. Jaden Reed projects amazing, though, with Christian Watson currently projected out. Josh Jacobs is really in must-start territory. Kraft or Wicks, I actually think that's close. Kraft versus Wicks, seeing that one in the TikTok live. We're going game by game right now, guys. We're live on TikTok and YouTube, by the way. I'm telling you guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, the YouTube live is a better viewing experience. I can share my screen. Like I got Kraft and Wicks up on the screen compared against each other on the YouTube live in the Walter Picks app, which, by the way, if you don't have the Walter Picks app yet, do not know what you're waiting for. Link is in the TikTok bio in the YouTube description. It's the best fantasy insights app you could possibly find. And it has insights on player props too. There's absolutely no reason not to have the Walter Picks app. Best way you could possibly support me as well. Spent the last 4 years of my life helping build that app. Yeah, it's Kraft over Wicks, man. It's Kraft over Wicks. I think Wicks arguably has a better ceiling, but Kraft is the better play. So we're starting Jordan Love. We're starting Jaden Reed in almost all situations. Again, I just answered one. Reed projects better than AJ Brown. I'm not benching AJ Brown. I'm not benching my first round pick, who's finally back. I'm not benching AJ Brown this week in pretty much any situation. Josh Jacobs, needs to be started this week versus the Cardinals. They've been absolutely crushed at times this season by running backs. Jacobs has actually been really good this season. He only has one touchdown. That came last week. It was only game over 15 points. I think we see more touchdowns this week. Bucky versus Monty. Yeah, I will get to that one in a second. I think the answer there is David Montgomery over Bucky Irving, but that one's definitely closer. Romeo Doubs over Dontavian Wicks for me this week. Doubs has led this team in routes and snaps in all the games that he's played. Last time he played, he had an 86% snap percentage, 8 targets. With how Wicks played last week, disappointing production, not bad volume for Wicks, but disappointing production. I do think that Doubs deserves to be started over Dontavian Wicks. And then on the other side of the ball here in this Cardinals game, let me pull up the spread of this game too. The Packers are 5.5 point favorites at home. Pretty good game environment here for Kyler. The Packers have been middle of the pack as a defense. Kyler's been pretty up and down this season too. I mean, his down games aren't very down. He's going over 10 points every single game, but he only had 10 versus the Commanders. He's had 3 games now under 16 points, but he's had 2 games over 25 points. So a bit of a boom bust guy for fantasy. I think the boom is more likely than the bust this week versus the Packers as 5.5 point underdogs. Kyler had a really good rushing games, season high 7 carries last week. He had over 80 rushing yards last week. He's at over now 40 rushing yards in 4 of his 5 games. One of the best rushing roles in the NFL. He's 3rd in rushing yards per game, only behind Lamar and Jaden Daniels. So he's a start for sure. James Conner, a good start. He's really in a workhorse role. He had a season-high 79% snap share last week, season-high 73% rush share as well. Trey McBride must be started. The only tight ends that are projecting better than McBride are Ferguson and Bowers. And honestly, McBride's in that same tier as them. Do I do Trey McBride, Drake London, and Jalen Waddle for Kylan, Marvin, Godwin? I mean, it depends who your other tight end is. I don't like this. I don't think I would do this. You're giving up a good tight end for a good quarter. I think I would prefer the McBride side of that trade. I'm playing Bucky over Marv. Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., a decent start. He's a high-end wide receiver 2 in fantasy. A bit of a boom-bust fantasy option, more so than you would have wanted with where you drafted him. He's still a good start, though, guys. He's still been over 15 points in 3 of his last 4 games. He just has a little bit of a lower floor than you would want. He still has 4 touchdowns his last 4 games and gets a good matchup versus the Packers this week as an underdog. So, yeah, I'm fine starting Marvin Harrison Jr. in a lot of spots this week. Some receivers I would start him over: Darnell Mooney, Wan'Dale Robinson, Devontae Smith, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Chris Olave. I'd start him over all those guys this week. Goddard or Kraft? Yeah, I think it's Kraft over Goddard. Goddard's not as good of an option this week, coming back with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith back, and in kind of a difficult matchup versus the Browns. So just to summarize, for the Cardinals, we're starting Kyler, James Conner, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr. Michael Wilson's definitely the next best option on this team, but he's a sleeper. He's not a lock or anything, not a guy you need to start. Jags are up 3-0 in this game. Kind of a slow start to this game. Olave or Evans? I think it's Olave over Evans, even though I'm pretty skeptical about Spencer Rattler. Let's get to this Pats game, man. I haven't even mentioned Drake Maye. We're over an hour into the live now. How have I not mentioned the savior for the Patriots, Drake Maye? All right, let's look at this game here for the Pats. This is, as a Pats fan, easily the most excited, I've been this season to watch a Patriots game. The Patriots are 6.5 point underdogs in this game. Guys, Drake Maye is absolutely going to raise the ceiling for the Patriots offense, and that matters for fantasy. Almost every single wide receiver for the Patriots is on the waiver wire in almost every single league. And this is a game I'm going to be watching super closely for that exact reason. I think one of these receivers could definitely ascend into the go-to guy for Drake Maye and be startable for fantasy. None of these guys are really in the starts at radar this week, other than Antonio Gibson. Let's go to the running back rankings here on the TikTok Live. I already had them up on the YouTube Live. But Antonio Gibson's startable. He is a back-end running back 2 this week. There's no Ramondre Stevenson. Guys, a lot of injuries to be aware of. No Brian Thomas Jr. for the Commanders. No Ramondre Stevenson for the Patriots. That's pretty big news for Antonio Gibson, who's going to be splitting this role with Jamichael Hasty, who's definitely going to be involved, but Gibson should easily lead the backfield in touches. I think he'll get most of the receiving work too. Definitely an intriguing spot for him. Not the best matchup versus the Texans, who have been pretty good versus running backs. We've only seen really 2 good running back games, Aaron Jones and James Cook. James Cook and Aaron Jones, better than Antonio Gibson for sure, especially the offensive line for the Pats. So, and Gibson's really a back-end running back too, not a must start. I would start Tracy over him very easily. I'd start Najee Harris, Dobbins, over him. I would start Eckler and Javonte, and James Coco I don't feel good about. I'd start him, I think, over Gibson as well. Demario Douglas projects as the best receiver for the Pats. I think he's got the best floor, but Polk, I think, has the best ceiling. Still a very murky receiver room, though. Osborne's back this week. He was out last week. Kendrick Bourne's role is still rising as he comes back from the ACL. Hunter Henry, not really a tight end I want to start. Riding Cook and Gibson this week. Yeah, it's rough out there, man. It's rough out there in week 6 with the buys and the injuries. All right, on the other side of this game, we're going to get back to some start sits here in a second. The Texans side of this game. CJ Stroud is not really a quarterback I'm super pumped to start this week. There's a lot of quarterbacks I'd prefer over CJ Stroud. I'd prefer Caleb Williams, who you missed that start sit decision if you're just tuning in. Jordan Love, I'd start over him. Joe Burrow. Josh Allen, who I don't love this week versus the Jets, I'd start him over CJ Stroud. Daniel Jones, I think, is a better fantasy start than CJ Stroud this week. Kirk Cousins, I'd play over him as well. I would play Stroud over Fields. No Nico Collins for Stroud in this game. And there's still 8.5 or 6.5? There's 6.5 point favorites in New England. Steph Diggs is a really high floor start. With Nico out, guys, Diggs is locked into one of the best target shares in the league. I don't think Diggs has been under a 20% target share this season. Every single place Steph Diggs has gone, he's been under a 20% target share twice, but he has not been under a 17% target share once. And he said 3 straight games over a 22% target share. Everywhere Steph Diggs has ever gone in the past decade, basically, really the past 7 years, he's commanded a significant target share. That has not changed this season. The Patriots secondary is the strength of the defense. They still haven't done amazing against fantasy receivers. Metcalf and JSN both were top 8 receivers versus them. Garrett Wilson and Lazard both went over 13 points. Waddle and Tyreek did okay, catching passes from Snoop Huntley last week. Steph Diggs is a high floor PPR option, not the highest ceiling, but a high floor. Joe Mixon, he's startable, guys. He's a back end running back 1. I would start Bucky Irving over Joe Mixon. I would start James Conner over Joe Mixon. I would start Josh Jacobs over Joe Mixon too. I would start Joe Mixon, though, over Tyrone Tracy, over Najee Harris, for example. Do not bench Bucky Irving this week. We're going to get to that Bucs game here in a second, but I'm seeing a lot of Bucky questions. Guys, start Bucky. Good job getting Bucky on your teams. If you're tuned into this live and it's not your first time tuning in, and if you use the Walter Picks app, if either of those things are true, that you've been tuning into these lives or you have the Walter Picks app, like there's a good chance you got Bucky Irving on your team. We wrote up Bucky Irving as a transaction, as an ad before week 1, after week 1, after week 2, after week 3, and after week 4 in the Walter Picks app. Literally 5 consecutive weeks, even starting from before the season started, that Bucky Irving was an ad. So hopefully you guys have Bucky. We talked about it a bunch of the lives as well. But yeah, Tank Dell, a lot of start sits for Tank Dell this week. A lot of tough start sit decisions. Tank Dell has not had a good season. Tank Dell was injured in the preseason, or he was coming back from an injury from last year where he broke his leg blocking at the goal line. He was tremendous his rookie season. Then he also got shot before the season started. And I think that has something to do with the lack of production and efficiency from Tank so far this season. With no Nico Collins, a lot of people are going to want to start Tank Dell. I really don't feel great starting Tank Dell. In one of my leagues, I am starting Jalen Tolbert over Tank Dell, and I feel okay about that. In one of my leagues, I started Adunze over Tank Dell, and that was a little bit of a risky start-sit decision there. Tank Dell can be started in a lot of spots. He can. He ranks as a back-end wide receiver too. But I'm cautiously optimistic about Tank Dell. And then no one else on this team can really be started outside of Dalton Schultz. Xavier Hutchinson is a sleeper, though, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Xavier Hutchinson outscore Tank Dell. That's not what I would project. I just wouldn't be shocked if that ended up happening with Xavier Hutchinson, who's going to be, I think he had clearly the next best snaps. Yeah, 70% snap percentage for Xavier Hutchinson. And not only is Nico Collins out in this game, Robert Woods is also out. Yes, that Robert Woods, who he is still in the NFL, and he was actually seeing real snaps for the Texans before he went down with the injury. Allen or Jones at QB, yes. I actually thought about that exact decision before this live stream. And I went back and forth a couple times between Josh Allen and Daniel Jones. Ultimately, I think you got to go Josh Allen over Daniel Jones. There's a real case to go Daniel Jones over Josh Allen. But if you spent an early pick on Josh Allen in fantasy, I don't know how you could stomach benching him for Daniel Jones. Like I personally can't. And I did take Josh Allen in a few leagues. I think you got to go Josh Allen over Daniel Jones. But I would start Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, Dak, Kyler. I would have started Caleb Williams all over Josh Allen this week. All right, let's get to the next game here. Let's hop to a couple start sits here before I jump to the next game. We've talked through a bunch of the games now. We're going to get to every single game. So we talked through the Browns-Eagles game. We talked through the Texans-Pats game. We talked through the Commanders-Ravens game. Talked through the Cardinals-Packers game. Next up, we'll go to the Bucs-Saints because I know there's a ton of Bucky Irving questions. We got Bucky on the Bucs. All right, let's hop to the tight end ranks here. Do you have wide receiver rankings? I do. We'll go to those next. All right, let's get to some start sits here. Half PPR. We got Scary Terry versus Tolbert. Yeah, so Jalen Tolbert's a guy like I do want to start him, but I'm not starting him over Terry McLaurin. Nope, not going to do it. I want to start Tolbert. They're actually back to back in the rankings here in PPR. Let's switch this to half PPR. I think the half PPR probably bodes better for McLaurin than for Tolbert. Yeah, it does. Both in good matchups. Both these games are going to be the highest scoring games of the week. They're projected to be the highest scoring games of the week at least. So yeah, both McLaurin and Tolbert good starts this week. But yeah, I'm going McLaurin over Jalen Tolbert, even though I want to start Jalen Tolbert. Tolbert or Tracy, that one's really close too. I think there's a good argument for Tracy and Bucky over Tolbert. Let's compare all three of those guys. I just think the running backs, in these start-sit decisions often, especially if it's half PPR or non-PPR, but again, I'm always going to answer in terms of PPR if you don't tell me the scoring settings. And the PPR rank, like the way PPR works, point per reception, it favors the receivers. But I think there's always a good argument that the running backs actually have the higher floors. And so if you get running backs with higher floors and similar ceilings, like there's a reasonable case to just start the running backs. And the reason that the running backs have a higher floor is their volume's locked in, right? They're getting at least 15 carries. Whereas the receivers, even if they get 7 targets, they might not catch any of those. Whereas like the carries, you're getting those. So that just locks you into a higher floor, and they're also more likely to score touchdowns. So Bucky Irving needs to be started over Jalen Tolbert. Bucky Irving, guys, just needs to be started. Like you need to find a spot for Bucky. Jalen Tolbert, I also think needs to be started though this week. I'm willing to go for the ceiling with Tolbert over Tracy. Both in good spots. Both in good spots though. A lot of Braylon Allen questions this week. I am starting Braylon Allen in one of my leagues. I still think that the true ceiling for Braylon Allen is going to need to be a situation like Bucky's in this week where Breece Hall actually misses time. Breece Hall is not dealing with any injuries. He's not going to miss time without injuries. Moss projects better than Braylon Allen. I'm going Braylon Allen over Moss, though. I'm fine going Braylon Allen over Moss. The Bills have been the worst defense versus running backs this season, guys. The Bills have been annihilated on the ground. This is a very good spot for Braylon Allen. The Bills are 2-point favorites in New York in this game. They've allowed so many points to running backs. Last week, 25 combined points to Agumbawale and Cam Akers. The week before that, Derrick Henry and Justice Hill combined for almost 60 fantasy points against the Bills. The week before that, Etienne and Bigsby didn't do great. Only 13 points combined. Achane had 30 points versus them, and Connor had 20 points back in week 1. Breece and Braylon Allen are very good starts this week, but Breece, definitely a better start. The real reason I'm starting Braylon over Moss, despite the Moss projection, and Moss, he's had decent volume at times this season. He's seeing over 60% of the snaps in most games. He's getting targets. He's at least 4 targets in 4 of his 5 games. He only had 9 carries last week, though. The problem for Moss is he's been horribly inefficient. 3.7 yards per carry. For Zach Moss, he's looked worse than Chase Brown. He also is dealing with an injury. He's dealing with a foot injury, and he's playing worse than Chase Brown. I'd prefer to bench Zach Moss. I think Moss is a bench this week. Definitely playing Bucky over Moss for sure. That one's not that close. Deontay or Mooney. Yeah, both guys I do kind of want to start. I do think Deontay will bounce back from last week. These guys are playing against each other. Mooney is a really good option right now. Deontay projects a bit better. The matchup's better for Mooney. This is a really, really close one for me between Mooney and Deontay. Mooney was wide receiver 3 last week, had 9 for 105. He's now got at least 8 points in 4 straight. He had 2 TDs last week. He's not coming off the field. The Falcons have one of the most consolidated wide receiver rooms in the entire NFL, which is so good for fantasy. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of the Eagles, right? With A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. That's Darnell Mooney and Drake London on this offense, where Darnell Mooney is the Devontae Smith of this offense. They're not coming off the field. He had 16 targets last week for a 30% target share. But Deontay Johnson is still the clear wide receiver 1 for the Panthers. He's dealing with all sorts of small injuries. Ankle should be good to go. I think that's a reason to consider Mooney. The matchup is better for Mooney. Honestly, I'm okay going Mooney here. Deontay projects a bit better. I think I'm okay going Darnell Mooney over Deontay Johnson. I think, honestly, that's the way I would lean with that one, despite the projections. I'm willing to go against the projections at times, depending on the trend for these different players in the matchups as well. Terry, Marvin Harrison Jr., Zay Flowers, Wandale, PPR, pick 2. Yeah, so it's Terry and it's Marvin Harrison Jr. over Zay and over Wandale. I definitely am starting Terry. Wandale is a PPR cheat code. He's going to get another 25% plus target share. Good morning, brother. Josh Jacobs and Chuba Hubbard full PPR. Yeah, I'm not benching Jacobs. Man, we got Chuba Hubbard, I think, projected better too. This is such a tough one. I really don't want to bench Josh Jacobs. Chuba Hubbard's in one of the best running back roles in the entire NFL. It's a better matchup for Jacobs, though. This is another one I think I'm going to disagree with the projections and lean towards Josh Jacobs with the matchup. The Cardinals, again, they've been crushed on the ground. Let's get to the Weatherman Sam update. I actually meant to do that when we talked about the Packers-Cardinals game. So let's get to the Weatherman Sam update, because we got some weather to talk through in this game that makes me more confident about Josh Jacobs. So Weatherman Sam, I'm here for you guys all season, guys. I'm here all season. And one of the biggest mistakes in fantasy that I see is people overreacting to weather. And that's my goal here, is to help us not overreact to the weather, to also not be surprised by the weather. There's no worse feeling than grinding and sweating your start-sit decisions just to be shocked by the weather that ends up happening in the game. So there's going to be rain today. We are going to see rain on our TV screens today. And the game with the worst rain today is almost definitely going to be the Packers and Cardinals game. There's going to be heavy rain in the Packers-Cardinals game, at least at the beginning of the game. Maybe not throughout the whole game, but there's a bunch of games with some projected rain, and the Packers-Cardinals game is the game with the most rain. That, to me, doesn't matter. I don't care about heavy rain. I really don't. I do think there's a world where that pushes more volume towards the running backs and towards Josh Jacobs, but I'm still happy to start Jaden Reed, Jordan Love, Tucker Kraft. I'm still happy to start Kyler, Marvin Harrison Jr., James Conner, and Trey McBride. I'm not scared off those guys because of heavy rain. We've no evidence. There's no historical evidence. I've done the research on this, that rain, even heavy rain, has a statistically significant impact on NFL offenses or passing offenses. I do think there's a world where they give a little bit more work to the running backs, makes me like them a little bit more. Does make me kind of want to start Josh Jacobs over Chuba Hubbard, despite Chuba Hubbard projecting better than Josh Jacobs and being in a little bit better of a role. Better matchup for Jacobs. I think more touches likely for Jacobs as well. I'm starting Tolbert over Pittman for sure this week. All right, there's also going to be some slight chance of showers. Slight chance of showers. This means at some point in the game, there's going to be some rain showers, but not throughout the whole game. And this is not going to be as heavy of rain as the Packers-Cardinals game. We're going to see some slight rain in the Texans-Pats game. We're going to see some slight rain in the Browns-Eagles game, some slight rain in the Commanders-Ravens game, and some slight rain in the Bengals-Giants game. A lot of slight rain. Guys, no serious concerns in any game. We're not going to overreact to the weather. A lot of people out there, they're going to overreact to the weather. Don't overreact to any of this. There is no significant wind. Wind is the scariest thing for NFL offenses. No significant wind. That's the Weatherman Sam report of the day. Is there's going to be some rain on our TV screens. Don't overreact to it. If anything, it just makes me a little bit more excited about Josh Jacobs. That's about it. All right, that's the Weatherman Sam update. Tucker or Tolbert? Yeah, I'm going Tolbert. Start Tolbert. All right, let's go to this next game that we haven't gotten to yet. We're going to get back to the start sits here in a second. I don't think Josh Allen and Michael Pittman are good starts. We're about to get to that game here actually momentarily. All right, let's get to the next game here, which is the Bucs versus the Saints. A lot of tough start sit decisions in this game. So yeah, I think to answer that last question finally, I would personally, I think, go Jacobs over Chuba Hubbard. They're both good starts. Chuba Hubbard projects a bit better because he's been better this season and his role has been great. The matchup's better for Jacobs. I think that Jacobs is just a little underrated too, heading into this week with only one touchdown. All right, let's go to this Buccaneers offense. So the two must starts on the Buccaneers offense today are Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving. Guys, you need to start Bucky Irving. In almost all situations, you have to start him. He's been incredibly efficient on the ground this season. He has been better than Rachaad White in terms of his efficiency. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry. Among running backs who had enough carries to qualify, he ranks fifth best in yards per carry. He's been the fifth most efficient running back in the NFL. He only has one game under 4.5 yards per carry. And the even more encouraging thing for Bucky, he's actually had a pretty tough schedule, guys. He's played two top 12 defenses versus running backs. If you guys are watching live on TikTok, by the way, come to the YouTube Live. The link is right in the TikTok bio. I'm telling you, it's a better viewing experience. We're looking at Bucky Irving's game logs and his efficiency right now on the YouTube Live. Right in the TikTok bio is the same info. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button. If you're watching live on TikTok, hit the follow button, come to the YouTube Live. I'm telling you, better viewing experience. Bucky Irving has a great chance at a touchdown in this game. This is the best matchup for Bucky Irving since week 1. The Saints aren't bad versus running backs, but they're worse versus running backs than the last 4 opponents Bucky Irving has had. Rashad White is out this week. Bucky Irving's going to get some of that receiving work from Rashad White too. There's a real chance Bucky plays 75% of the snaps. I do think we see Sean Tucker with a role in this game too, but he might not have any real role. I think at best, he's getting a third of the snaps at best. And we have not seen a game where Bucky Irving had more than half the snaps yet this season. So yeah, really good floor for Bucky in this game, really good ceiling. And I also just don't think people quite realize that Bucky Irving is also a good receiving back. He has not had a game over 3 targets this season yet. Bucky Irving's probably going over three targets today for the first time. He was a good receiving back in college. That was part of the reason. There's a little bit of a curious draft pick by the Bucs, who already had one of the better receiving backs in the NFL. But yeah, Bucky Irving is a smash this week, really a smash. You have to start him. And the other reason he's a must start is you look at the other side of this game against the Saints, and Spencer Rattler, the 5th round rookie draft pick, is getting his first start today. A lot of optimism I've seen out there about Spencer Rattler. I am not optimistic about Spencer Rattler, the 5th round rookie draft pick in this game against a Bucs secondary that's really getting healthy now for the first time really in a few weeks. So the Bucs also could have a big lead in this game. They're only 3.5-point favorites in New Orleans in this game. I think there's a good chance they blow out the Saints with how the Saints offense has looked and with the quarterback starting for the Saints. That's also good for Bucky. Chris Godwin, a much better option than Mike Evans in this game. Evans has historically struggled versus Lattimore and the Saints. Go to the wide receiver ranks here. Pull up the wide receiver ranks here on the YouTube Live as well. So yeah, like in a start sit like this, we're starting Bucky Irving over Jalen Tolbert, who I like a lot this week too. We're starting Bucky Irving over Calvin Ridley. I actually think Calvin Ridley is an interesting sleeper this week too. I actually think Will Levis is actually a really intriguing sleeper this week too. This is by far the best matchup for the Titans passing attack this season. So yeah, I think Ridley and Hopkins are interesting sleepers this week, but I'm still starting Tolbert and Bucky Irving over both of those guys. I'm starting Dobbins over Goddard in my flex pretty easily. I think I'm playing Ford over, Ford versus Chase Brown's actually close. That one's pretty close. K. Dotton is startable this week. He ranks as a top 10 tight end. I'd start K. Dotton over Mark Andrews. I'd start K. Dotton over Isaiah Likely. I would start K. Dotton over Kyle Pitts. I think K. Dotton versus Njoku, I would probably go K. Dotton there. I'm actually in a spot in one of my leagues where I drafted David Njoku, and this is a pretty, competitive league, deep league. And I'm not going to drop Njoku for K. Dotton, even though K. Dotton has a slightly better projection this week. But if I have both of them on my team and I have enough roster spots at both, I would start K. Dotton over Njoku. I think Njoku still has a better ceiling the rest of the season. So I'm willing to go there. Kmet, touchdown. Let's go. We had Kmet as a must start on this live stream earlier. If you were on London time, posted Kmet as a must start in the must start video on TikTok this week too. So love to hear Kmet in the end zone. Caleb Williams also was a good start. Love to see that. The Bears are up 7-3 now in London. We're on London time this morning, guys. We are locked in. Spears versus Tyler Algier. Yeah, I think I lean Tyler Algier. Drake London is a smash start. Yeah, Drake London is, he ranks number 4 in the wide receiver projections this week. Bucky Irving versus David Montgomery. We haven't got to that Lions game yet, but yeah, I think it's Monty. I think I'm with Caleb here about this trade. Let me scroll up to the trade here. ETN and Hawkinson from Montgomery. Yeah, if you could make this trade before the London time game, I definitely would have done that. Tracy or Amari Cooper. Yeah, it's Tracy over Amari Cooper. Fields or Love. Yeah, it's Love. It's definitely Love over Fields. We talked about that Packers game briefly. Even with some projected heavy rain in that game, I think it's Love over Fields. Mixon, Connor, Jacobs, Irving, Zay. So again, we're starting Bucky Irving this week. Happy Bucky Irving every week. Happy Bucky Irving week to everyone. For all those who celebrate, happy Bucky Irving week. I like all 3 of these running backs in the middle here. Connor, Jacobs, Irving. Joe Mixon projects pretty well too. Let's switch over to the running back ranks here again on the TikTok live. I'm nervous about Chris Olave. We're about to get to this Saints offense in a second, but I'm more nervous about Shaheed than I am Olave. We got Mixon actually projected ahead of Jacobs. I personally like Jacobs more than Mixon. I would go Bucky, Connor, and Jacobs here over Zay. I think all these guys over Zay. Man, Zay's in a good spot against the Commanders too, though. I think I would go Connor, Jacobs, Irving. I think the floor ceiling of all those guys is really strong. I would Jacobs for Scary Terry. That one's close too. It's Happy Tank Dell week. I'm going against Bucky, so hating the hype train. Yeah, I'm sorry, Caleb, for saying Happy Bucky week. If you're playing against Bucky, I apologize for that. But you got to overcome the tough matchups sometimes. Like I'm in too many leagues. People ask me all the time, how many fantasy leagues is too many leagues? And the honest and true answer, there is a right answer to how many leagues is too many leagues. The answer is 2. More than 2 leagues is too many leagues. I'm in 8 high stakes fantasy leagues. It's too many leagues. And what leads when you're in more than 2 leagues, that you end up playing against players that you also have in other leagues. And so I'm at a point, in my life with fantasy football, I don't even look who I'm playing against. I honestly don't look. I do not look until the Sunday night game at the earliest at who I am playing against. I just root for the guys that I have. It's a much more fun experience for all of you guys in more than 2 leagues. Josh Jacobs or Scary Terry is a really tough one. Let's get to this one really quick before I get to the Saints side of that game between the Buccaneers and the Saints. Yeah, man, this is close. I think I lean Jacobs over Scary Terry, though. Again, I think the running backs just have a slightly safer floor than the receivers in a lot of these starts hit. So just to recap the Buccaneers side of the ball, we're starting Chris Godwin. We're starting Bucky Irving. Cade Otton's a decent start also, not a must start. Mike Evans, I'd prefer to bench if I can, really, against the Saints. He's startable, though, still. He's a back-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. He does have over 23 points in back-to-back games, but he's historically really struggled against the Saints. And I also think there's a good chance the Bucs blow out the Saints in this game. I think that the 3.5 point spread there is actually pretty good. Baker Mayfield, not a guy I really want to start this week either. And then on the Saints side of the ball, Alvin Kamara obviously needs to be started. Chris Olave is startable and is a decent start. The Buccaneers secondary has struggled this season, but the Buccaneers secondary has also been injured this season. And they're back this week. They have 2 of their starting safeties returning, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I said it earlier in the live. I think understanding injuries and how that impacts the rest of the offense is like a massive part of fantasy as the season goes on. It's also true on the defensive side of the ball, though. And the Buccaneers defense, I think, is better than what the numbers show because they've had a lot of injuries that are now coming back. Chris Olave coming off his worst game of the season, only 2 catches, 10 yards. I think he's still a decent start in PPR. There's a bunch of receivers I would start him over. If I hop back over to the wide receiver ranks here, I would start Chris Olave over Pickens, over Amari Cooper. I'd start him over Mike Evans in the same game. I would start him over Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. I'd start him over Trey Tucker. I'd start him over Ridley. I'd start him over Slayton, Darius Slayton, and Cortland Sutton. So there's a bunch of guys that you can start Olave over, but I'm nervous about Spencer Rattler. I think that Rattler, though, he already came out and praised Chris Olave. I think Olave is almost definitely going to lead these receivers in targets in this game. Shaheed, I think, is a must bench. I think you've got to bench Shaheed with Spencer Rattler starting. And it does lower the floor and ceiling, I think, for Olave, too, with Spencer Rattler starting. There's a real floor outcome here for Rattler where he really struggles. Eckler or Tracy? Yes, Tracy over Eckler. So the only must start for the Saints really is Alvin Kamara. Then Olave is a good start, not a must start. Rattler, do not start. And honestly, again, like I've seen a lot of optimism out there about Rattler. They came out and said they're kind of designing the offense around him. His coach is coming out saying he rises to the moment. His college coach. I will believe it when I see it with Spencer Rattler. He's a 5th round rookie draft pick, playing on a Saints offense that has struggled the last couple of games. Kendre Miller is back this week. That's definitely notable. Intriguing to see how he does. He's been an intriguing IR stash really all season. All right, that's the Saints-Bucs game. Let's move. We're going to go to the Colts-Titans game next. ETN fumble. I knew not to start him. Yeah, we talked about ETN on London time this morning. ETN fumbles. It's probably good for our Tank Bigsby prop. So that's good. But yeah, ETN versus Bigsby. And that was a tough start-sit decision here on London time. I think we did see at least the start of this game. It seems like to me, I've been locked in on the live, so I haven't seen every play. But it did seem like ETN is staying very involved. So I think the ETN over Bigsby decision in a vacuum made sense. But yeah, hopefully you guys benched ETN. And I think we did tell a lot of people to bench ETN before this game started. Sam, I've been using the Walter Picks app. Thanks, man. Yeah, the best possible way you could possibly support me, the whole Walter Picks brand, is check out the Walter Picks app. It's free. It's in the YouTube description. It's in the TikTok bio. Guys, you are 2 presses of your finger away from having the Walter Picks app and being able to use the power of all the tools in the app. There's so much free things you get in the app, like infinite start-sit comparisons, for example, like I'm doing on the YouTube live right now. You can do those for free in the Walter Picks app. And the premium subscriptions are also just so worth the price. Running back rankings, please. Yeah, I got you with the running back rankings. Switch to those on both lives. Evans or Tolbert? Yeah, it's Tolbert over Evans this week. Mooney, Tolbert, or Najee at flex? Oh, it's got to be Mooney. In PPR, you got to go Mooney here. I like Tolbert. Tolbert might even project a bit better than Mooney. With how Mooney's been playing, it's Mooney, man. I think you got to go Mooney over Tolbert. Yeah, Tolbert projects a bit better. Najee maybe even projects decent against the Raiders. It's got to be Mooney. I'm going Mooney over Tolbert like pretty easily, no matter what my rankings or the projections say. It's super close, but Mooney's been incredibly consistent. Guys, Jalen Tolbert, he can't get to 16 targets in a game, and we just saw that from Darnell Mooney. We've seen at least 6 targets now in 4 straight. He's not coming off the field. It's a decent matchup for Mooney. Again, I actually really like Tolbert this week. I'm going to tell a ton of people to start him, but not over Darnell Mooney. Even Mooney versus Deontay, I got that one earlier too. Like Deontay projects better. I'm going Mooney in that one too. I think Mooney's a better play than Deontay. Laporta or Kraft? Yeah, so I think you got to go Laporta. Laporta has not had a good game yet this season. Man, we actually have Kraft 1.5 ahead of Laporta. But this game environment here, we have not seen Laporta go over 10 points yet this whole season. This whole season, no games over 10. We've seen multiple games this year that would have been his worst game of the season last year. He didn't have back-to-back games under 6 points once last year. We saw that in week 2 and week 3. He's coming out of the bye, high-scoring game versus the Cowboys. They have been good against tight ends this season. Kraft is definitely a good option still. I think I lean Laporta just slightly over Kraft, though. I'm going Darnell Mooney over Deontay. Yep. All right, let's go to this Titans-Colts game. Kind of one of the uglier games of the week. Let's start with the Colts side of the ball. So, I mean, so much in flux here for the Colts. So many things in flux that has a lot of implications for the whole offense. So, first of all, Flacco clearly is better for fantasy, for downs, and for Pittman. I think there's a bigger question there. Is he actually better for the offense or not? I think there's a good argument there that he is, but he's clearly better for downs and Pittman for fantasy. And Flacco's not going to be playing this week. It's going to be Anthony Richardson. So immediately downgrade Downs and Pittman. The other reason to downgrade Downs and Pittman is the injuries. They're both dealing with injuries. Josh Downs, they're both going to play, it seems like, this week. Josh Downs dealing with a toe injury. Those are never great for receivers. I still feel better, though, about Downs than I do Michael Pittman. There was a report that came out this week that Michael Pittman was a candidate for IR, which to me, instantly when I saw that, okay, Pittman's out this week. Talked about it on the Thursday Night Live. You couldn't bank on Thursday starts the decisions that Pittman was going to play. Pittman's going to try to play through this back injury. Super risky start. Who knows how healthy he truly is if he was an IR candidate. Plus Anthony Richardson is back. Plus this matchup for these receivers, guys, it's about as bad as it gets. There's not been a single secondary that's allowed fewer points to receivers than the Tennessee Titans. Like you can't play these Colts receivers today. And I prefer Downs again over Pittman. I think there's a bit better of a floor for Downs. His injury seems a little less serious. And his role is just a little bit of a higher floor with the underneath role rather than a little bit more of the deep targets that Pittman gets. And Anthony Richardson has not been consistently accurate at any stretch during this season. And then again, you look at the matchup. There's been no big game for receivers. DJ Moore did nothing. Keenan Allen did nothing. Garrett Wilson did nothing. Jaden Reed did nothing. Christian Watson did nothing. Tyreek Hill did nothing. Jalen Waddle did nothing. These are good receivers that all did nothing. All of these guys went under 11 PPR points versus the Titans. The Titans secondary is the real deal this season. You add in the context of Anthony Richardson, you add in the context of these injuries, and you got to bench Pittman and Downs this week. You really have to. So yeah, I'm benching both those guys if I can. And then Trey Sermon, I also want to bench. This Anthony Richardson starting is also bad for Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon is a trap this week, I think. He's going to be startable in certain spots. He was running back 6 last week with 18 points, but he barely passed 50 total yards. He barely had more than 50 yards last week versus the Jaguars, the bad Jaguars defense that we're watching on our TV screens right now, as we watch them, stop Swift a little bit in this game so far. Trey Sermon, though, he scored a touchdown and he had 6 catches on 6 targets. Anthony Richardson throws to the running backs way less than Joe Flacco. I think Sermon's a bench if you can bench him. And the Titans have also been good against running backs. They've been even better versus receivers. They've been one of the better defenses this season. So yeah, I'm looking to bench a lot of the Colts offense. Now on the Titans side of the ball, I think the Titans are a really underrated offense heading into this game. One of the most underrated offenses of the week, I think, are the Tennessee Titans. Like if I was in a lot of tournaments on DraftKings this week, I got the DK lineup for us coming up here momentarily. I would strongly consider mixing in some Levis, Hopkins, Ridley double stacks in this game. I think all of these guys are sleepers this week. Tony Pollard's definitely a good option. He ranks as a running back 10. Tony Pollard's a good start. I'm starting Bucky Irving, definitely over James Cook. Seeing that one on the TikTok live. Yeah, Tony Pollard's a good start. There's very, very few running backs I'm starting over Pollard. Hubbard, Montgomery, Brees, Gibbs, Bijan, Kamara, Henry, Saquon. I think Josh Jacobs and Bucky, maybe you could start over Pollard. Pollard's really in a good spot versus the Colts. The Colts defense has been bad this season, guys. This is the best matchup of the season for the Titans offense. They've actually had pretty difficult matchups this season. The Dolphins hadn't been good versus running backs, and Pollard did good versus them. He had coming off his best game of the season with almost 19 points. He's had at least 15 points in 3 of his 4 games. And then you look at the passing matchups, though, and this is the best matchup of the season by far, for Will Levis. Guys, I think one of the things getting lost with Will Levis in his Titans passing offense is the matchups they've played. They played all 3 of the top 3 secondaries in terms of fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. The Jets ranked number 1. The Dolphins ranked number 2, and the Bears ranked number 3. They played all 3 of those defenses. They played the Packers, who ranked middle of the pack as well. The Colts are by far the best matchup for this passing offense this season, coming out of the bye for Will Levis. I think at least one of Ridley or Hopkins has a good game. They're both very intriguing sleepers to me this week. Levis is not a guy I really want to start, but I think he's a sleeper heading this week for sure. Yvonne, thanks for doing the TikTok live subscription, man. At the end of every single live, before the live ends on TikTok, I get to every single TikTok live subscriber question. Yeah, Chuba Hubbard versus Tony Pollard. We have them back to back, pretty much in the running back ranks. I think that one's really close. I think I lean towards Chuba Hubbard over Tony Pollard with the role we've seen for Chuba. It's a better matchup for Pollard, though. Colts defense, again, has really struggled. I think it's a super close one. With the role for Pollard, though, I think it's got to be Pollard. He's back-to-back weeks as a top 8 running back. Again, those were all good matchups, though. He only had 11 points in a tougher matchup back in week 2. Really close one. Yeah, I think I lean Hubbard, but it's close between him and Pollard. Better matchup for Pollard for sure. I don't think you can go wrong in either way there. I'm playing Freiermuth over Pitts. Yep. All right, so that's that Colts-Titans game. A lot of underrated players, I think, for the Titans, and a lot of overrated players, I think, for the Colts. All right, we're into the late window now. We're going to talk about the Steelers-Raiders game, Chargers-Broncos, Falcons-Panthers, Lions-Cowboys, and then we'll get to the 2 primetime games as well. Let me hop to the DraftKings lineup here really quick. I see some people asking for that in the YouTube live. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. The link is in the TikTok bio. I'm telling you, it is a better viewing experience on YouTube. It's all the same info, but I can share my screen on YouTube. I can pull up comments on YouTube as well. I got you with the DraftKings lineup, guys. We actually, so we're in week 6. These are tournament lineups here on DraftKings. So you got to understand the context of the game that you're playing. If you're playing in these tournaments with hundreds of thousands of other lineups, you got to try to differentiate your lineup and have some correlated upside. That's exactly what I'm doing this week here on DraftKings. So I'm double stacking here with Dak. I'm going Dak, Lamb, and Tolbert in this lineup. So I'm paying up for Lamb. I am very in on CeeDee Lamb this week. I think he's the clear wide receiver 1. I think Lamb smashes this week. I think we see his first really big game of the season, over 30 points today for CeeDee Lamb. I think that's well within his range of outcomes. Maybe even a higher ceiling there for Lamb in this game versus the Lions. I'm running it back without either of the running backs. I do think if I were to tweak this lineup a little bit, it'd be trying to find a spot for Monty or Gibbs. They're both pretty expensive, though, so I'm running it back with Waymo Jamo in wide receiver 3. And then I'm going for the differentiation here with Jeremy McNichols. Again, risk here. I don't think he's going to be very highly owned, but how big of a role does Austin Eckler really have in this game without Brian Robinson Jr.? McNichols has been over 10 points each of the last 2 games. He has 30 points his last 2. He's going to have a receiving role. He's had a bit of a red zone role. I just don't think we see this massive workload for Eckler. He's almost min-priced. Jeremy McNichols is the real dart throw in this lineup. Bucky Irving, he's going to be owned a lot on DraftKings this week, I think for good reason. I'm also very suspect of Rattler. I think Spencer Rattler is probably going to struggle this week versus the Bucs in their healthy secondary. That's going to be good for Bucky. No Rashad White. I think Bucky Irving's an underrated receiving back too for PPR. I'm going with Tucker Kraft versus the Cardinals. If I were to tweak things in this lineup, it would be playing around with McNichols, Waymo Jamo, Tucker Kraft, and the Pats defense too. Pass defense is the min price defense. I think that's actually a pretty good value with the Pats defense with their price. I also don't hate trying to get the Bucs defense though into this lineup against Spencer Rattler for that correlation with Bucky Irving, playing around with Kraft, Waymo Jamo, Jeremy McNichols, and trying to maybe find a way to get David Montgomery or Gibbs in there instead of Waymo Jamo. That's the DraftKings lineup of the week, though, that I'm running with the double stack with Dak, Tolbert, Lamb, and that shootout potential versus the Lions. Eckler or Olave? Yeah, I'm leaning Olave over Eckler. I'm going Deontay over Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm going Jalen Hurts over Baker for sure. J.K. Dobbins versus Tracy is close. I do have Tracy over Dobbins. Tough matchup for the Chargers today. Let's get to that Chargers game, actually. Let's jump there. Chargers versus the Broncos, another kind of ugly game. Chargers coming off the bye this week. There's no Gus Edwards in this game. That is obviously big for J.K. Dobbins. It's also big for Kamani Vidal. Guys, if you're in a 12-plus team league, there's at least 12 teams in your league, go add Kamani Vidal. Stash Kamani Vidal. He has extremely high ceiling. Kamani Vidal, suddenly, he's in this. Tyler Algier, Braylon Allen, Blake Corum also should be rostered in all leagues at this point. Tyrone Tracy, like he's in this tier with all these guys that they're an injury away from being really good fantasy options. Kamani Vidal is a name to know for sure. This is going to be his first game active. He is now the direct backup to J.K. Dobbins. He was a very efficient college running back out of a small school, but definitely potential for Kamani Vidal in this offense that runs through the running backs. Intrigued about him being active for the first time. Not a start, but definitely an add and a stash if you have a spot on your bench. For example, I'd be fine dropping Wicks, I think, already to stash Kamani Vidal. All right, Justin Herbert, this whole passing offense. Dobbins is the only guy you can start on this team. NFL says he's inactive. Kamani Vidal inactive. Let me refresh here. I don't think we got the actives inactives yet. This will be the first game that Kamani Vidal is active, if he is active. I haven't seen anything saying he's inactive. We haven't got the actives inactives yet for the later window games. Nick Chubb expected to play week 7. I still think, even if he's not active, Kamani Vidal is an interesting stash. All right, Eckler versus Tracy. Yeah, it's Tracy. Jacobs or Bucky? It's Bucky. We're starting Bucky this week. All right, Dobbins is the only Chargers player you can really start against this Broncos defense that's been very good. On the Broncos side of the ball, Bo Nix, not startable. Javonte Williams, I've seen a bunch of start sits with him. Definitely startable in this game. It's notable, though, here as well. Audric Estime is back this week. Estime is back. He was out on IR for 4 weeks. He's back now. And that is definitely a concern for Javonte. But Javonte's coming off his biggest role, really, of the season. He had 6 targets, 13 carries, 19 opportunities, the tied a season high from the week before. Back-to-back games with 19 opportunities for Javonte. Back-to-back games, over 60 rushing yards. He had 110 total yards last week. No TDs yet for Javonte this season. I think he's a back-end running back too. Joe Mixon's a good start this week. Yep, guys. Sutton, Olave, or Ridley. Yeah, so I don't feel good about Sutton in this game versus the Chargers. The Chargers ranked number 2 versus receivers this season, and I think the Broncos ranked number 1 versus receivers this season. Actually, it was the Titans, so the Broncos must rank like number 3 or number 4. The Titans ranked number 1 versus receivers. We're just looking at that for the Colts, who are not good starts. Sam, what player props do we like? Yeah, so let me hop over to the free player props here in a second. We already are riding one. I don't know what Bigsby's at, but I did take the Bigsby over 40 rushing yards as the first official free player prop of the live. Bigsby's got 13 yards in the first half so far. Not great. Not terrible either. On pace, at least, for the floor. He's only got 4 carries, though, and ETN did fumble, so he should get more work moving forward. But I got 2 more free player props for us on this live as well. But yeah, the only Bronco you can really consider starting is Javonte. The only Charger you can really consider starting is Dobbins. Courtland Sutton, I've seen some starts for him. I think starts its questions for him. I really don't think you can start Sutton. Guys, there's no real ceiling for Courtland Sutton. This is why he was on the do not draft list. There's just not a ceiling. The volume's been there. He's got the 6th most air yards in the NFL. But he only has 1 game over 14 points. No games over 15 PPR points. Tight end and defense rankings. Javonte or Moss? Yeah, I'd lean Javonte over Moss. I really want to bench Moss. I got the defense rankings up. I'll pull the defense rankings up here on the YouTube Live as well. The defense rankings, I think the Colts, the Eagles, the Texans, the Steelers, the Bengals, and the Bucs. Those are the 6 defenses I really want to start this week. The Colts, the Eagles. The Eagles versus the Browns, they really might be the best defense. They're coming off the bye. They're playing the Browns. The Browns have been the worst offense in the NFL. Guys, Deshaun's numbers are worse than Bryce Young's numbers. Think about that for a second. And the offensive line for the Browns is also bottom 3 in almost every single statistical category. The Texans, I like against the Pats. I'm a little bit more optimistic about Drake Maye maybe than the baseline. I'm also a Pats fan, so I'm a little biased there. I think the Pats, though, they do have a ceiling now with Drake Maye that they didn't have before. Steelers defense, definitely in play versus the Raiders and Aiden O'Connell. The Bengals defense, also in play versus the Giants. I think the Bucs also versus Spencer Rattler is a very good one. I'm very sus of Spencer Rattler actually being able to do something. I think there's a better chance Spencer Rattler completely tanks than that he does well, which is why I think Javonte versus Shaheed, I really think you got to bench Shaheed with Spencer Rattler starting. I think that we're going to see more targets funneled towards Olave than Shaheed now with Rattler in the lineup. Yeah, I know the Bengals defense has struggled, and I know the Giants offense has done okay, but another week without Neighbors, the Bengals defense is definitely startable. Broncos or Falcons defense? Yeah, I would go the Broncos defense over the Falcons defense. The Broncos defense versus the Chargers. I think the Chargers defense versus the Broncos as well is in play. Tracy or Eckler? Yeah, it's Tracy over Eckler. Go to the tight ends here for a second. Does not seem like Swift has gotten much going. Really, neither offense has gotten much going in this game. Kind of a boring London time game so far. I think the game kind of started that way last London time game, though. These games end up ending kind of crazy. Go to the tight end ranks here. All right, so the Chargers-Broncos game, there's not very many must-starts, really. No must-starts, honestly, in that game, which also bodes well for both defenses there. All right, let's move to a little bit more exciting game here. The Falcons and the Panthers now. Definitely a decent amount of must-starts in the Falcons game. So Bijan Robinson, he's got to be started, guys. I think Bijan and Brees bounce back this week. Smash spot against the Panthers defense. The only defense that's been worse versus running backs this season is the Jags, who actually are having a decent game right now in London against the Bears. We're on London time this morning, guys. Hope you guys were on London time with us early this morning. But yeah, Bijan's a smash start. Drake London is also a top 5 option. Start Drake London in all situations. Drake London's in my DraftKings lineup this week. Feel very good about Drake London this week. Kirk Cousins is startable. Kirk Cousins coming off a 500-yard passing game. Obviously, don't expect that from him again. But this is another good spot for Kirk Cousins against a bad Panthers defense. We just saw Caleb Williams have his best game of the season versus the Carolina Panthers. So Kirk Cousins definitely in play. Like Kirk Cousins versus Josh Allen, I think is super, super close. I think it's really close. I think I lean Josh Allen, but I don't think you're crazy for going Kirk over Josh Allen this week versus the Jets. Darnell Mooney is a must start. He's really in must start territory. Ranks as wide receiver 16. I actually think he should be ranked a little bit ahead of that in a lot of spots. Like I'm starting Mooney over Deontay Johnson, for example. I'm starting Mooney over Chris Olave, for example. I'm starting Mooney over Wan'Dale, for example. Seeing that starts a question in the TikTok live. Tank, Olave, Evans need 2. Yeah, it's the first 2 here. I think bench Mike Evans versus the Saints if you can. Kraft or Laporta. Yeah, we got to that one earlier. Kraft ranks a little bit better in my rankings. I think if I drafted Laporta, though, I'm going Laporta over Kraft. I think we see probably the best game of the season for Laporta, which isn't saying much. Laporta hasn't been over 10 points once this season. On the other side of this Falcons game, so again, just to recap the Falcons, you want to start Drake London, you want to start Bijan Robinson, you really need to start both those guys. And I think you need to start Darnell Mooney in almost all spots too. He had 16 targets last week, guys. Tyler Algier is also startable. Tyler Algier is startable for sure, and I think he's going to get over 10 carries in this game. I don't think he's had 10 carries in a game yet this season. No, he hasn't. He's maxed out at 9. No games over 9 carries yet this season. Probably over 10 this week. Bijan did pick up an injury, hammy injury, cleared to play the Panthers. He had a shoulder injury on the injury report a couple weeks ago. Now he's got a hammy injury. He's going to be active in this game, but all the reason to expect at least 10 carries from Algier. I think both Bijan and Algier are pretty decent starts. Obviously starting Bijan over Algier. Kittle's not on here. None of the players that aren't playing today or tomorrow are on here. This is rankings for today and tomorrow because we're grinding at the start sits for everyone. I got you guys with some of the more difficult start sits. All right, Ray McLeod really not on the radar. Kyle Pitts, I don't think you can start still. He's coming off his best game of the season. His best game of the season. 7 catches, 88 yards. Played a second best, 85% of the snaps for Pitts last week. Still only a 15% target share, though, for Pitts. Like, really just not in must-start territory. Another good spot for him, but I think we got to see Pitts string some together. I still think the floor is really low for Pitts. All right, so on the other side of this game against the Falcons, we got the Carolina Panthers, who also have some pretty good starts in this game. Chuba Hubbard remains in one of the best roles in the NFL. Chuba Hubbard, he's seen back-to-back games ranking as a top 8 running back, over 15 PPR points. He's got the 9th most rushing yards in the NFL, and he ranks 10th in receptions. He's over a 60% rush share in 3 straight games. He's got at least 4 targets in 4 straight games. So just a really good role. Not the best matchup for Hubbard, but still a very, very good role for Chuba Hubbard. I think there's some really difficult running back start sits this week with Chuba Hubbard. We were just talking about some of them. For example, Chuba Hubbard versus Tony Pollard. We were just talking about that one. I think I lean towards Hubbard slightly, but it's a better matchup for Pollard. It's a really close one. Bucky Irving versus Chuba Hubbard. I think I'd go Bucky over Hubbard. I think Pollard over Hubbard's really close. I think Josh Jacobs, James Conner over Hubbard, also really close. But Hubbard projects better, and he's been in a really good role behind an underrated offensive line as well. So I think it's okay to go Hubbard over all those guys. All right, let's get to the rest of this offense. Deontay Johnson, also a good start. I would start Darnell Mooney over Deontay Johnson. There's not that many other receivers I'm starting over Deontay Johnson still, though. I know he had a down game last week. He's still locked in for a really good target share in this offense. Switch over to the receivers quick. Deontay Johnson ahead of Garrett Wilson, for example. I know a lot of people aren't going to be brave enough to do that one. I actually think that makes sense. Deontay Johnson ahead of Steph Diggs. That one's really close, but I think that makes sense too. Ahead of McLaurin and Diggs, I think, and Garrett Wilson, all arguably have a better ceiling than Deontay, but there's not many PPR receivers with a better floor than Deontay Johnson. I'm starting over Tolbert, who I like a lot this week. I'd start him over Marvin Harrison Jr. Again, I don't think I'd start him over Mooney. I think Mooney deserves to be a bit higher. Slayton or Wicks? Yeah, it's Slayton over Wicks. Got to be Slayton over Wicks. All right, so on the Panthers, Chuba Hubbard and Deontay really like near must-start territory. And then none of these other guys can really be started. Xavier Legette's going to be back this week after getting injured a couple weeks ago, right? He was out last week, or did he get hurt last week? He got hurt last week versus the Bears. Only played 36% of the snaps. Should be back close to the 80% of the snaps range this week. But Legette's not startable, really. Wandale or Darnell Mooney? Yeah, it's got to be Mooney over Wandale. Got to be Mooney over Wandale. All right, so to recap, Falcons, bunch of guys you need to start on the Falcons. Kirk Cousins is a good start. London and Bijan must starts. Mooney's a must start. Allgeier's an okay start as well. And then on the Panthers, there's just two must starts. It's Chuba Hubbard, Deontay. They're really in must start territory. I would start Olave versus Wandale's close, man. We just talked about Olave and the Saints. Wandale's going to project better than Olave. I've been a known Wandale hater for a while. I think it's Wandale over Olave, though. I'm very skeptical about Spencer Rattler. I think he's going to really funnel targets to Olave, but I still think Wandale is the safer play over Olave. Kraft or Pitts? Yeah, it's Kraft over Pitts. Just talked about that Falcons game. All right, the next game to talk through. We got only a few more to talk through. We talked through almost every game already. Lions, Cowboys, Bengals, Giants. Let's go through the Lions-Cowboys game. Probably the most exciting game, if not for the Commanders-Ravens game. Probably the most exciting game of the week between the Lions and the Cowboys. I already talked about it a little bit, but CeeDee Lamb's going to smash this week, guys, versus the Lions. Amazing game environment in a dome. CeeDee Lamb has not had a huge game yet this season. He had 23 points back in week 4 versus the Giants, but he doesn't have a game over 25 points yet this season. I do think we see a game over 25. Thanks for the gift, Graham. I'll go to the wide receiver ranks here on the YouTube live. Yep, I got you. Seen that in the comments. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb's wide receiver 1 this week. He's in my DraftKings lineup. I'm stacking Lamb, Tolbert, and Dak in the DK lineup this week. The floor is there, obviously, for Lamb. He's going to get at least 10 points almost every single week, no matter what. We have not seen the ceiling that we're going to see, though, from Lamb. And he's got an amazing schedule down the stretch this season. And I think it starts this week. We got him projected over 20 points in the Walter Picks app. That's wide receiver 1. Dak is a smash start this week, too. Got to start Dak Prescott. Jake Ferguson, also a really good start. The only tight end that projects better than Jake Ferguson this week is Brock Bowers. And, there's a few tight ends that I think you could consider over Jake Ferguson, but there's really not that many. Like Trey McBride, for example. Let's go to the tight ends for a second. Trey McBride, for example. I think you could consider him over Ferguson. That's pretty much it, though. It's Ferguson, it's Bowers, and Trey McBride. These are the tier 1 tight ends this week. Obviously, after Kittle. Hopefully, you start Kittle on Thursday night. But yeah, I'm ranking them as Bowers, then Ferg, then McBride. I think all of those guys are in tier 1. The Lions have been good against tight ends this season, but then you look at the tight ends they played. They played Colby Parkinson, Cade Otton. They played Trey McBride. McBride didn't do much versus them. Did McBride get hurt in that game? No, he didn't. And then Noah Fant and AJ Barner, they did pretty well last week. Or in their last game, not last week. But yeah, Jake Ferguson's just had an incredible floor this season. He still doesn't have a touchdown either. Jake Ferguson ranks as tight end 4 in points per game. He does not have a touchdown. I mean, that's exactly what we're looking for at tight end. That's almost impossible to find at tight end this season. Jalen Tolbert, also a really good start. So CeeDee Lamb, obviously must start. Dak's a must start. There's only 4 quarterbacks I prefer over Dak. And honestly, I think I'd play Dak over Kyler. Dak and Kyler projects a little bit better than Dak. I'm playing Dak over Kyler, I think, if I had to choose there. I'm playing Hurts, Lamar, and Daniels over Dak. That's it. Dak is a very good option. Dak could get to 40-plus pass attempts in this game. And Kmet scores his 2nd touchdown of the week. 2 TDs for Kmet. Kmet on pace now to be tight end 1, up there with George Kittle. Glad we had Kmet where we did in the rankings this week. We had Kmet ahead of Goddard, ahead of Otton, ahead of Njoku, ahead of Pitts, ahead of Evan Ingram, ahead of Mark Andrews. Not very many tight ends we were recommending ahead of Cole Kmet. If you were with us on London time this morning, 2nd TD of the game here for Kmet. Dak now has over 350 yards in 2 of his last 3 games, 3 straight games with 2 passing touchdowns. No quarterbacks over 1 passing touchdown versus the Lions this season. I think that changes this week. So yeah, I'm very in on Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. Jake Ferguson's a must start. Jalen Tolbert is a must start. Rico Dowdle, not a must start in this game. The Lions have been very good versus running backs. Dowdle's coming off his best game of the season, best usage of the season too. By far a season high rush share for Rico Dowdle this past week. 65% rush share. He's startable, just not a must start. He's an okay start. The Lions have been, again, good versus running backs. Really in all but I think 1 game, the Lions have been good versus running backs. Yep. And it was their last game against the Seahawks where Kenneth Walker, that was a Monday night game. If you guys remember that one, 80 yards and 3 TDs for Kenneth. Rico Dowdle's not on the same level as Kenneth Walker. No other running back has had over 15 points versus the Lions. Rashad White didn't. James Conner didn't. Bucky Irving didn't. Kyron Williams didn't in week 1. Kenneth is the only guy. So Dowdle's definitely not a high ceiling guy this week, even in a high scoring projected game. So yeah, start Tolbert, Ferguson, Dak, Lamb. Start this passing offense. Look to bench Dowdle if you can. Conklin's actually right at the bottom of this list. I have Conklin below Mark Andrews. And Njoku or Ertz. Yeah, it's Njoku over Ertz for me. All right, the other side of this game, the Lions side of this game. We're going to get back to the start sits. I know we're right at halftime now of the London time game. We're going to get back to the start sits here momentarily as I wrap up these final thoughts of these last games. All right, so the Lions, a ton of must starts on the Lions too. Again, this game's projected to be the highest scoring game of the week. If it's not the Commanders, Ravens, it's this game. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Gibbs, obviously must starts. Don't even need to talk much about them. Jared Goff is a decent start, but I actually think he's a little bit overrated for fantasy because I think the running backs are going to dominate in this game for the Lions. The Cowboys have really struggled against the run. This is arguably the best offensive line in the NFL and the best rushing attack in the NFL with Gibbs and David Montgomery. We saw Alvin Kamara go for 44 points versus the Cowboys. We saw Derrick Henry go for 30 points versus the Cowboys. The Steelers struggled last week. Najee Harris is just a lock for almost exactly 10 points every week. That's just like what Najee Harris is. The Giants struggled, but that's the Giants. Every good running back we've seen play against the Cowboys has smashed. Absolutely smashed. Both of them went over 30 points. And that's what we're seeing for Gibbs and Monty this week. They both project as top 8 running backs this week. So you got to start Montgomery and Gibbs. You got to start Amon-Ra. Waymo Jamo is startable this week too. He's like a high-end wide receiver 3. That's what he's starting to look like for fantasy. After a really hot start to the season, he had back-to-back games over 14 points to start the season. Then he had 1 catch for 9 yards in week 3. Back to a good game in week 4. Only 2 catches, though. He only had 2 catches. Jameson Williams now under a 15% target share in back-to-back games. So he's got a ceiling, but the floor is low. He's a boom-bust wide receiver 3. That is what Jameson Williams is. He could be a wide receiver 1. He finishes wide receiver 5 back in week 1. But he's not going to be this like huge volume guy, which gives him a kind of a low floor. That's what Jameson Williams is. And then Sam Laporta, I want to start Sam Laporta this week, guys. I do. He hasn't had a game over 10 PPR points. You got to think the breakout game's coming sooner rather than later for Laporta, who is fully healthy, coming out of the bye, high scoring game potential versus the Cowboys. It's actually his toughest matchup, technically on paper, of the season. The Cowboys have been good versus tight ends. Who have they played, though, guys? That's what you got to look at, especially with the tight ends. I mean, they played nobody. They played the Ravens. The Ravens tight ends didn't do anything versus the Cowboys, which is notable. They've had some good games this season. Freiermuth, though, last week, and Cam Hayward last week combined for 20 points versus the Cowboys. So, yeah, I think I'm in on Sam Laporta this week. I think him versus Kraft is super, super close. Kraft projects a bit better than Laporta. I think I'd lean Laporta over Kraft. The only other tight ends I'm playing over Laporta are McBride, Ferguson, Bowers. End of list. End of list. All right, that's it for the Cowboys and Lions game. I do think that game is going to go to the Lions, ultimately. I think that the Lions are 3.5-point favorites in Dallas. I just think the Lions are built to beat the Cowboys. Their offensive line and the running backs were exactly the Cowboys have struggled. All right, then the Bengals-Giants game, last late window game before we get to the primetime games. Jamar Chase, obviously a must start. Both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they're must starts. Let's switch over to the wide receiver ranks here on both lives. Let's switch to the wide receiver. I got the wide receiver ranks up actually on the YouTube live already. The Bengals are 3.5-point favorites versus the Giants. The Giants offense has been good this season. No way around it. They've been good. And the Bengals defense has been bad. There's no Malik Neighbors and Singletary again this week. We're on this live last week wondering, is this the least talented offensive roster that we've seen in the NFL heading into last week without Neighbors and Singletary? And no, it's not, because the Patriots are also a team in the NFL right now with one of the least talented offensive rosters I've ever seen. A little bit more talented now with Drake Maye. But anyways, I digress. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins must starts. Both top 10 wide receivers this week have to start both these guys. Joe Burrow is a good start. Joe Burrow's been cooking, guys. This passing attack's really been cooking. Joe Burrow's now been a top 12 quarterback in 4 straight games. He's coming off a 35-point game versus the Ravens. I do not know how the Bengals lost that game. And when you think about it, it's because of the defense. I mean, ultimately, just the defense for the Bengals isn't good enough. And that's going to be huge for this passing offense. If the Bengals defense sucks and the offense is cooking, we're going to see some massive fantasy point totals from all of these guys. Joe Burrow included, like we saw last week. He had 392 and 5 TDs. Did Joe Burrow. 30 for 39. 77% completion percentage, a season-high 10.1 yards per attempt. This is a little bit of a tougher defense than the Ravens have been. But yeah, Burrow's startable for sure. I'd start Dak over him. I would start Jalen Hurts over him, Kyler over him, Lamar and Jaden Daniels over him. I think I'd go Jordan Love over Burrow, but honestly, with the heavy rain in that game, I don't think that's the worst thing to go Joe Burrow over Jordan Love. I would start both those guys over Josh Allen, who we're going to get to in a second. But yeah, you got to start Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Have to. Yeah, we're going Kraft over Goddard today. Chase Brown, I prefer a lot more than Zach Moss. They project really close together. We'll go back to the running back rankings here. But Chase Brown played better last week. Let's compare these two guys quick. Moss has gotten more work than Chase Brown this season. If we compare these workloads quick, Moss is averaging more points per game this season. The snap percentages aren't close, though. And you look at the volume, he's gotten way more carries per game, 11.4 to 8.2. I think he's even got more receiving work, up 11% target share to 7. I think that flips this week, though. Chase Brown, he was dealing with a quad injury. He's good to go. Chase Brown's coming off back-to-back good games. He's got 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games now. He's over 15 points in back-to-back games. I think Chase Brown has earned a bigger role. And then you also think about the context of Zach Moss's injury. He's got a foot injury, a late foot injury in the week. Like this was an injury that happened this week. I think that Brown is more likely to outtouch Moss in this game than the other way around, which is what we've seen all season, which is why I like Brown more than Moss. And I think Moss is honestly really in must-bench territory in this game. If Chase Brown outtouches him, Chase Brown's been more efficient than him on fewer touches, but the yards per carry, Chase Brown's 5.6 to 3.7. The yards per reception, Zach Moss has actually been a little bit more efficient, but on really low volume here for both guys. See, I like Chase Brown a little bit more. Hey, Sam, Eckler or Tracy at flex, and Zay or Devontae at wide receiver 2. Happy PR, by the way. Yeah, it's Tracy over Eckler for sure this week. And then Zay versus Devontae, I think it's Zay over Devontae. I'm a little bit nervous about Devontae Smith in this game versus the Browns. I think that the Eagles, they're 8.5-point favorites. A.J. Brown's back. I think the Eagles run a lot in this game. I don't see the Browns offense turning it around in this game. I don't know how they could turn it around with what we've seen in the first 5 weeks of the season. And you ultimately need the Browns offense to keep this game somewhat close for, I think, Devontae Smith to smash. If this is a really run-heavy game and A.J. Brown's also back, there's a good chance we see a floor game from Devontae Smith. He's not a must-bench, but I prefer to bench him for a guy like Zay Flowers in that matchup versus the Commanders. All right, so the must-starts for the Bengals are the three biggest pieces of the passing offense: Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins. I like Brown over Moss. Brown is an okay/good start. Moss is a must-bench in my mind this week. On the other side of this game for the Giants, guys, Darius Slayton is startable. Daniel Jones is also startable. I think Daniel Jones versus Josh Allen, like a very reasonable question to be asking this week. I was asking myself this same question earlier this morning, 5 hours or so ago when I was waking up thinking through the most common start sits I'm going to see. I don't think I've seen a Daniel Jones or Josh Allen question. You got to be really brave to be even thinking about starting Daniel Jones over Josh Allen. You were probably the first person in your league to draft a quarterback if you have Josh Allen. Meanwhile, Daniel Jones arguably is in a better spot this week than Josh Allen. Josh Allen gets the Jets. We're about to go to that game next. And then we're going to get to tons of start sits following that for the rest of the live. But yeah, Daniel Jones is startable, top 10 QB this week. Let's switch over to the QB ranks here quick. Switch over to the QB ranks in both lives. Daniel Jones ranks ahead of Kirk Cousins. I think that one's super close. I like Kirk Cousins versus the Panthers too. I would play Daniel Jones over Stroud and over Fields and over Baker and over Goff and over Anthony Richardson. I mean, Anthony Richardson really can't be started against the Titans. I'd play Daniel Jones over Baker and Goff. I would play Goff. Goff versus Baker's close too. I honestly think I would go Goff then Baker. I think Deontay Johnson over Tracy's fine. Tracy's a little bit safer. Tracy's a good start, borderline must start though, with Devin Singletary out. So Tracy last week, 129 yards on 18 carries. Eric Gray was good in the pass game, but then Eric Gray fumbled and he barely saw the field again. So Tracy's locked into this workhorse role in a good matchup here versus the Bengals. He didn't score a touchdown last week, but had 129 rushing yards. Extremely efficient day behind a bad offensive line. We got him projected for 75 rushing yards. Tracy versus Deontay is honestly super close. I would argue Deontay and PPR still makes sense over Tracy, but it's close. Wandale is startable for sure too. In PPR, I mean, he's just locked in over a 20% target share. He's been over a 25% target share now in back-to-back games, averaging over a 30% target share in his last two. Again, good matchup here for the Giants offense. The Bengals defense has really struggled. We've seen two different games over 30% target share for Wandale. There's no Malik Neighbors again. Wandale is like a PPR cheat code, guys. He has at least 6 catches in 3 straight games. That is a good floor in PPR. So Wandale startable. Darius Slayton also startable. I actually would start Wandale over Slayton. I would start Wandale over Slayton. I'll switch back to the receivers here on the TikTok live. That's a little tough to see, but I'm trying to fit a lot of names on this list. But yeah, I'm going Wandale over Slayton. I think Slayton has a higher ceiling. Slayton was in the Malik Neighbors role last week. He had 8 catches for 122 and a touchdown versus a Seahawks secondary that's better than the Bengals secondary. He had 11 targets, a 35% target share, 121 air yards. 70% of the Giants' air yards last week went to Darius Slayton. Guys, Jalen Hyatt was running wind sprints last week. I mean, if you were to tell me before the season, Malik Neighbors is going to miss some time, how is Jalen Hyatt getting 0 targets, man? I mean, just pretty shocking stuff. Theo Johnson also kind of in a big role last week. Underrated sleeper tight end this week is Theo Johnson versus the Bengals. Again, the Bengals defense has not been good. Theo Johnson was in kind of a featured role last week too. 5 catches, 48 yards. He's playing almost every single snap. He had a season high, career high, 16% target share last week. Very athletic tight end, rookie tight end, Theo Johnson. He's a deep sleeper this week for sure. So Wandale, good start. Tracy, borderline must start. Darius Slayton, also a good start. Daniel Jones, also a good start in this game. All good starts. Tracy is the closest one to a must start, though, of all these guys with Devin Singletary out. Again, Malik Neighbors also out. I would start Jameson Williams over James Cook. I think James Cook is in the must bench list. Let me go back to the high level takes here. But yeah, some guys I really want to bench this week. James Cook's on that list. Zach Moss is on that list as well. James Cook dealing with a foot injury and kind of a difficult matchup versus the Jets also. I typically think I would go James Cook, but with the injury concerns, it does seem like James Cook's going to play. But to what extent, I'm not so sure. All right, so that's the Giants-Bengals game. Only 2 more games to get through the 2 primetime games here. That is the Bills-Jets. Sorry, I own 1 more game to get to. That was one of the primetime games. That's the night game tonight. So let's go to the Bills here. So I'm getting some James Cook questions. James Cook is outside the top 20 running backs this week, dealing with a foot injury. Don't feel great about James Cook in this game versus the Jets. This is going to be an ugly game versus the Jets. The Bills are only 2-point favorites in this game, one of the lower over-unders of the week. James Cook, let me read the latest on James Cook here. A toe, plans to play versus Jets. He was limited in practice Saturday, didn't practice in any of the games before that. Questionable, seems like he's going to play. I think he's pretty risky heading into this game versus the Jets. He's had only good games except for 1 in week 4. He's a guy at full health that he just can't get game scripted out of games because he's a really good receiving back, underrated receiving back, honestly, I think. one of the better receiving backs in the NFL. And then he also is getting a bunch of carries on a run-first Bills team. The Jets have definitely been worse against the run than the pass. Khalil Shakir's out again this week. That should mean more targets for everyone. He had a 71% rush share last week, James Cook. The toe injury has me a little freaked out, though. The fact that he didn't practice at all has me a little bit nervous. That's why he's on the do not start list. And I would start Tracy over him. I would start Chase Brown, I think, over him too. Bucky Irving, definitely starting him over James Cook. Dalton Kincaid, he's been a massive disappointment this season. He only has one game over 10 points. Last week, without Khalil Shakir in the lineup, he goes for 5 points in fantasy. And now he gets the Jets, a top 4 defense versus tight ends. Not really a great start this week. None of these receivers can be started against the Jets either. And Josh Allen, guys, he is not a must start this week. He really isn't. Again, we were just saying Josh Allen versus Daniel Jones, very reasonable question to be asking this week. We've seen 3 bad games now from Josh Allen in 5 weeks. 3 games under 15 points for Josh Allen. 2 of those came in decent matchups against the Ravens and the Texans in the last 2 weeks. And now he gets the Jets. The Jets have not allowed a single good quarterback performance this season. Granted, they haven't played the best QBs, but there's been no sign of life for any quarterbacks that have played this team. Charlie, thanks for doing the TikTok Live subscription, man. I appreciate you. We'll get to all the TikTok Live subscriber comments always. All right, Brock Purdy, he only had 10 points. Will Levis, he had the most points versus the Jets this season. He had 12. Jacoby Brissett and Drake Maye, they combined under 6 points. Bo Nix, under 7 points. Sam Darnold had his worst game of the season by far. Barely scored 5 points versus the Jets. I don't know how you feel great about Josh Allen. I know you kind of have to start him in a lot of spots. You spent a early pick on him, but yeah, rough stuff here against the Jets. Josh Allen, not a must start. I would easily start Burrow. I would start Love. I would have started Caleb Williams over him. I was saying that earlier if you were on London time with us this morning. Dak Prescott, I'm starting over him. Kyler. I think Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins are all startable over Josh Allen. I would go Josh Allen over Daniel Jones because I just don't have it in me to make that start sit decision. But I think there's a good faith argument that is a good start sit choice. Yeah, Rashid Shaheed can't be started, guys, with Spencer Rattler starting. Allen or Fields, again, that's it's a reasonable start sit question. I think I'd go Allen personally. Fields projects just a little bit worse. These guys are in pretty comparable tiers. Gibson or Najee. So glad I benched AR week 5. You were right. Yeah, I got you, man. This is why I'm up grinding on these lives for all of you. I hope I help you guys make the best start sit decisions. This is worth calling out. You guys are the ones making your own decisions. I'm here to give you as much info as possible. I'll tell you what I would do in my league, but ultimately my goal in these lives is to try to give you all the information you could possibly need to think through a start sit decision so you make your own decision. Because ultimately making your own decisions, honestly, is the fun part of fantasy. Yeah, I hope you started Komet too. He was on my must start video on my TikTok post. So far, all 3 guys that have played on that must start video, Debo Samuel, Brock Purdy, and now Cole Komet all have smashed. Hurts or Cousins? Yeah, I'm leaning Hurts over Cousins this week. All right, that's the last game. That was the Jets. Bills. Oh, let's get to the Jets. We didn't get to the Jets. We talked about the Bills. There's no must starts on the Bills. There's not a single must start. I actually have a must bench of James Cook. I want to bench James Cook if I can. And then Kincaid's startable in a bunch of spots. He's not a must bench or anything. But there's 5 tight ends I feel much better about than Dalton Kincaid and Komet. I would have urged people to start Komet over Kincaid earlier in the live too, even though he projects it a little bit better. All right, so then on the Jets side of the ball, obviously you're not going to feel great starting Aaron Rodgers in this one, but Breece Hall, guys, you've got to start Breece Hall. The Jets haven't done anything versus running backs. Yeah, so James Cook picked up a toe injury this week. Didn't practice until a limited practice on Saturday. That's really what has me spooked the most about James Cook. It's just, is he going to be at his full role battling through an injury that caused him to miss most of practice this week? Just not a great sign in a game that's probably going to be low scoring. So yeah, Breece Hall is a must start, guys. Breece Hall is still tier 1 running back in my mind. Everyone's fully panicked on Breece. I've been buying Breece as much as I can in my leagues. I did complete 1 trade for Breece in one of my high stakes leagues. It's just so clear to me that people are fully panicked on Breece Hall just based on the comments I see on the videos I'm making in the live streams. Breece Hall's back-to-back games under 7 points, but guys, he had 3 straight games over 18 PPR points in weeks 1 through 3, and now he gets by far his best matchup of the season. And the reason that Breece Hall was a first-round draft pick, the reason that Breece Hall is still a buy and a must-start in fantasy, it's the receiving role, guys. The receiving role has not gone anywhere. He has at least 4 targets in every game. He's the 3rd most targets in the NFL at running back. Guys, he has run the most routes among all running backs in the NFL. That's Breece Hall. He's run a route on almost 80% of the Jets' dropbacks. And Braylon Allen's a good receiving back, but he's not eating into the Breece Hall receiving role. Against the Bills, you got to start Breece Hall. The Bills ranked dead last versus running backs this season. They've allowed some massive running back performances. Braylon Allen's also a good start. He's a good sleeper this week, but Breece Hall is a must start. Braylon Allen's a good start. Definitely a big difference there. And then Garrett Wilson, you kind of have to start him coming off of last week. He had, 23 targets last week. Not a huge game considering the target total, but still finished as wide receiver 5 with 29 fantasy points, 13 catches, 101 yards, and a TD. We were on his reception and receiving yards prop on that London time game last week. About to get back to the free player props for this week as well, but he's a good start. Really probably must start in almost all spots. He's Garrett Wilson. I would start Deontay Johnson and Darnell Mooney, I think, over him, though. Tracy or Mooney, yeah, I like both those guys a lot. I think it's probably Darnell Mooney over Tracy. I must drop one. Juju, Worthy, Khalil Shakir. Yeah, I'm not dropping Juju. I'm not dropping Worthy instead of Juju. Khalil Shakir is borderline. He's probably going to come back. It's probably Juju that you got to drop. Mooney or Deontay. Yeah, Mooney ranks ahead of Deontay in my rankings. I'm actually going Mooney. Deontay ranks ahead of Mooney, but I'm going Mooney over Deontay. All right, we're at halftime of this London time game, I think still. Oh, no, just started. Second half just started. We are into the back half of the live. Man, live flying. If you guys are just tuning into the YouTube live, guys, smash the like button. Hit the subscribe button. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, smash the follow button and come to the YouTube live. It's a better viewing experience. I'm telling you, it's a better viewing experience. All right, we're going to go rapid fire with the start sits here coming up. Let me just run through the free player props again really quick. And then we're going to go rapid fire for the comments for like at least the next 30 minutes or so, as we've already gone through every single game now. So I did like Tank Bigsby over 40.5 rushing yards in this London time game. That one's not off to a great start. He had like 15 yards, I think, in the first half. But ETN did fumble. They're behind in that game now, though, so we'll see what ends up happening on that. We're going to need a big run from Bigsby. The other two props I really like, though, rest of the day. CeeDee Lamb, over 83.5 receiving yards. I really think this line should be in the 90s. I think Lamb goes over 100 yards today. He's wide receiver 1 today. CeeDee Lamb in this dome game versus the Lions, high-scoring game environment. The Lions secondary really has not been great this season. I like CeeDee Lamb to have his biggest game of the season today. I'm liking that receiving yards line a lot. I think he could hit this in the first half in this game. Bo Nix, over 18.5 completions. He had 9 completions to the running backs last week. This is what we thought the Broncos offense was going to be. A lot of targets to the running backs. They led the NFL in running back targets each of the last 2 seasons. Seems like they were trending back towards that last week. That's very good for this completions prop. The Broncos are also underdogs in this game. I think the way Bo Nix plays is great for this prop. He's been over 18.5 completions in 4 of his last 5 games. 4 of his 5 career games. He's been over this line. So I like this completions prop for Bo Nix as well. All right, let's get back to some of these start sits. We're going to go rapid fire here in both the TikTok and the YouTube live, get to as many start sits as I can. DJ selling right now. Yeah, DJ Moore not having a huge game so far. Let's get to these start sits here. We did have Komet as a must start. That's looking very good. Chase Brown or Josh Downs. Yeah, so I want to bench Downs and Pittman if I can, especially Pittman. I like Downs more than Pittman, but I'm going Chase Brown over Downs. Yeah, Bucky Irving or Deontay. Yeah, I like both these guys. I'm not benching Bucky. I really don't want to bench Bucky at all. Go Rodgers. Opinions on Olave with Rattler at QB. Go Dodgers. Sorry, I read that as go Rodgers. I'm on the NFL mind. I honestly, it's just crazy to me the MLB season's like still going. The MLB season's like all year round. Opinions on Olave with Rattler at QB. So I think Olave's the guy I'm least concerned about with Rattler, but I'm really concerned just about Rattler in general. Like I'm not convinced Rattler's going to sustain a good NFL offense. It seems like a lot of people are very optimistic about Rattler. I'm not. He's a 5th-round rookie draft pick. Starting his first game, he wasn't even active for most of the games earlier this season. He's been like the emergency QB. It does seem like he likes Olave a lot. He came out and said very positive things about Olave already. I think Olave leads this team in targets. Still a good start for fantasy. I'm out on Shaheed, though, and I think this whole offense could crater, like a lot of risk with the Saints offense today. I also think the Bucs crushed them just in general with the spread. Only 3.5-point spread. I like the Bucs in that game by more than that because I'm very cautious about Spencer Rattler. I'm suspect that the offense will actually be anything decent. Good morning, Sam. Braylon Allen, Moss, or Trey Tucker in PPR. Yeah, so did we talk about the Raiders? I don't think we talked about the Raiders Steelers. I think I might have glossed over that game. I think I did. Thank you for asking a Trey Tucker question. Yeah, Trey Tucker startable. He's definitely startable this week with Jacoby Myers out and Devontae Adams also not playing. Both these guys are definitely startable this week. Big catch for DeAndre Swift in the red zone there. Trey Tucker is not a must start though. Braylon Allen versus I don't want to start Moss. Moss is on my do not start list this week. Braylon Allen versus Trey Tucker. Let's do this comparison quick. I think Moss actually projects the best here, but again, I think that Chase Brown out touches Moss this week. Chase Brown's been more efficient than Moss this season, and Moss is dealing with a more significant injury than they're both dealing with injuries. Chase Brown too, but I think a more significant injury for Moss. He almost wasn't going to play in this game this week. Yeah, it's Tucker. It's Tucker over Braylon Allen. I think that does make sense. Trey Tucker is the wide receiver 1 after Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers ranks as tight end 1 this week, guys, with all these guys out, all these receivers out. You got to start Brock Bowers. There's not a tight end I think you start over Brock Bowers this week. Maybe Jake Ferguson, maybe Jake McBride. I have them all in the same tier, but Bowers, man, has to be started. Yeah, I got a question, McBride or Bowers here. Tough start sits. Lamar or Daniels going forward. What do you do? Yeah, Xander, I would try to trade one of them because it's really not good. Not great to have 2 good tight ends in a single QB league. Sorry, 2 good quarterbacks in a single QB league. You can't start both, right? Like, and both these guys are QB1 and QB2 this week, and I think they're actually the top 2 QBs rest of season as well. I'm playing Bucky over Cook. I'm playing Eckler over Cook as well. I want to bench James Cook if I can. Let's go to the wide receiver ranks here. I'll go to the wide receiver ranks in the YouTube live also. But yeah, I'm playing Daniels this week over Lamar. It's close, man. I think there's a good argument both sides here. We got Daniels projected ahead of Lamar though, and McBride and Bowers. So like, you should trade both. Like, try to trade one of Lamar, one of Daniels, and try to trade one of these tight ends too. Honestly, it's really close to who I prefer. McBride and Bowers, I think, are also top 3 tight ends the rest of the season. This week, I think it is Bowers over McBride. Hey, Sam, happy football Sunday. Kate Otten, Tyler Conklin, or Kyle Pitts this week, full PPR. Happy Sunday to you too, Joey. Happy week 6. We got a great start this week in the London time game. This game's honestly starting to heat up a little bit. Seems like the Bears are going to dismantle the Jags, despite the Jags being slight favorites in this game. I was really surprised about that on London time this morning, talking about that one earlier. But yeah, Conklin, I don't think you can start Conklin over either of these guys. I would start Pitts over Conklin. I don't like Conklin very much in that game versus the Bills. Otten is a safer start than Kyle Pitts, like absolutely a safer start. I think the answer here is Cade Otten. I'm a little nervous that the Saints get blown out of this game with Spencer Rattler and they just aren't forced to throw as much as they usually do. Kyle Pitts, I would argue, has a higher ceiling than Otten. If you really want to optimize for ceiling, like I do think it's Kyle Pitts. He's coming off his best game of the season by far with 7 catches, 88 yards. First game over 15 points this season. He's now been a top 6 tight end twice this season. Week 1 was kind of a joke, though. Anyone who scored a touchdown, really any week, is like a top 6 tight end this season. But yeah, I think I'd lean on for the floor. And a touchdown to Keenan Allen from Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is cooking, guys. 3 touchdowns in this game. Glad I told a lot of people to start him in the early morning part of this live stream, the London time part of this live stream. Thought you were doing wide receivers. Yeah, let's go to the receivers here. I got the receivers up on the TikTok live as well, guys. We're live on TikTok and YouTube. And on the TikTok live, guys, I'm telling you, come to the YouTube live. It's a better viewing experience. I can share my screen like I can pull up the game logs that we're talking about, the players comparisons we're talking about on the YouTube live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. As always, guys, if you haven't checked out the Walter Picks app yet, you got to download the Walter Picks app. It is a free app, and there's some premium subscriptions in the app that are well worth the price. Use code SAM when you sign up. That does help me out a lot. The best way you could possibly support me is downloading the Walter Picks app. I've literally spent the last 4 years of my life helping build this app. It's the best way you could support the whole Walter Picks brand. The link is in the YouTube description, in the TikTok bio. It's going to help you with every fantasy decision you have. It's going to help you with all the player prop decisions you have too. Downs or Moss today, I'm lost here. Yeah, I don't want to start either of those guys. Let's do that comparison here on the YouTube live real quick. For Downs versus Moss. Moss is, I think, might project a bit better than Downs. Downs projects a tiny bit better in PPR. I think in PPR, I would go Downs. Irving or Hubbard? Yeah, so Chuba Hubbard's a really interesting one because he projects well. Chuba Hubbard projects ahead of a couple of guys that I think I would prefer to start over Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard projects over Bucky Irving, over Josh Jacobs. I think I'd prefer Bucky and Jacobs over Chuba. I really want to start Bucky Irving this week. I think you've got to find a slot for Bucky Irving. I'm playing Tyrone Tracy over Javonte. I'm going Downs in PPR over Moss. I don't feel great about Moss this week with the injury he's dealing with and with Chase Brown playing better than him. Player prop of the day. Yes, we got 3 player props. One of them's already live and not looking amazing, but still has some hope. The other 2, CeeDee Lamb over 83.5 receiving yards. I think he goes over 100 yards today and has his biggest game of the season in a dome game, high-scoring game versus the Lions. The secondary for the Lions has not been amazing this season. Bo Nix over 18.5 completions. He's been over this 4 of his 5 games. Threw a ton to the running backs last week like we expected heading into this season. These are my 2 free player props of the day. We are still positive on the season, 12-9 on the free player props so far this season. Feeling pretty good about both of these. I was feeling very good about the Bigsby one before the game started. That one still has at least some hope, but is looking a little bit bleak, at least at the moment. Sermon or Pittman? Oh, man. I mean, again, Pittman is so rough. Wan'Dale versus Deontay. Yeah, I think I lean Deontay over Wan'Dale. It's close. Definitely close. But yeah, Sermon versus Pittman is a tough one. I think the context, we talked about this game earlier. We talked about every single game. I think I got to get to the Steelers actually still. We talked about the Raiders now. I actually got to talk about some more of those Raiders players. I haven't seen too many Raiders questions. I'm playing Slayton over Downs easily. I'm playing Slayton over Pittman easily too. I like Downs more than Pittman. Let's go to the wide receiver ranks here on the TikTok Live. It's Sermon over Pittman. So Pittman this week, it came out, Pittman was a candidate for the IR with a back injury. And now he's playing through that. I'm shocked he's playing. And then on top of that, the Titans have been the number 1 defense versus receivers this season. Not a single defense has been better. There's been no big games from receivers versus the Titans. And then on top of that, Anthony Richardson is back, who is worse for fantasy than Joe Flacco is for both Pittman and Downs. So you got an injury, you got a bad matchup, you got a worse quarterback, bench Michael Pittman, play Trey Sermon. And Pittman, all those reasons are also kind of bad for Trey Sermon. Like A-Rich is not going to throw as much to Sermon as he got last week. He had 6 catches last week. Trey Sermon barely over 50 yards last week, scored a TD, had 6 catches, finished as a top 10 running back in PPR. Because of that, I think he's a bit of a trap this week too, but I would play him over Pittman. I want nothing to do with Pittman this week. Higgins or Deontay, I'm not benching T. Higgins this week. You have to play T. Higgins. He's had more targets than Chase over the last 2 games. I'm playing Bucky over James Cook very easily. Sutton or Downs, oh gosh. I think that one is Sutton, but it's close. Mixon or Hubbard, half PPR. Yeah, this one's close too. I think this one's probably Hubbard, just with a little bit of uncertainty around Mixon. Come on, Bigsby. Get some yards, man. Yeah, it's Hubbard over Mixon for me. Dobbs versus Dowdle in the flex. That one's pretty close too. I don't love Dowdle, but he did see his best workload of the season last week. He is looking decent. ETN's on the sideline without his helmet on. Yeah, let me hop over to the tight ends. Your lives are so helpful. Najee or Dowdle. I got you, man. I appreciate that, Emily. I would Najee versus Dowdle. Let's actually go to that one in a second here. Najee versus Dowdle. I think we just got another Dowdle question before that too. Let me hop over to the tight ends. All right, let's go to Najee Harris versus Dowdle. Najee Harris, you just got to understand what you're getting with Najee Harris in fantasy. Like Najee Harris, he's just like a lock for basically exactly 10 points every week. Like one of the least exciting starts every week. But he has a better floor than he gets credit for. Najee Harris has not had a game under 8 fantasy points this whole season. He also hasn't had a game over 14 points this whole season. He's between 8 and 10.5 points in 4 of his 5 games. He has not scored a touchdown this season. I mean, the whole case for Najee, man, was workload and touchdown related this season. And the workload's been there. The touchdowns haven't. Another good matchup for Najee. This is actually the best matchup of the season for Najee Harris. I would gladly play him over Dowdle. I would go Najee over Dowdle. I think Dowdle arguably has a higher ceiling just because almost everyone has a higher ceiling than Najee Harris. But the floor is like, it is notable. Like floor does matter, guys. Like 10 points isn't nothing for fantasy with some of the other running back options out there. He does actually have a pretty high floor. You don't feel great ever starting Najee Harris, but yeah, I think he's a start over Dowdle. I'd start him over, I think, James Cook this week also. All right, let's get to Sermon or Braylon Allen. Gosh, I do think Sermon's a trap this week. I really think Sermon is a trap. But he's going to get more volume almost definitely than Braylon Allen. In a worse matchup, though. This one's close, man. Really close. Yeah, DFS lineup. Let me pull this up. I did already talk through it, so I'm going to keep going with the start sits, but I'll keep the DraftKings lineup up here for a second. Start Zamir White? No. We are never starting Zamir White. I mean, Zamir White's one of the most obvious like benches almost every single week. Zamir White's back this week, but he's going to get out-touched by Alexander Mattison almost definitely. Let me actually just jump to the Raiders quick. So the only must-start on the Raiders is Brock Bowers. Trey Tucker is startable for sure as well, with Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams out. But Brock Bowers is the real wide receiver 1 in this offense. He's the tight end 1 this week, guys. That's Brock Bowers. Let's jump over to the QBs again on the TikTok live. Alexander Mattison is projected well ahead of Zamir White. Zamir White is likely going to... Actually, I saw he wasn't likely to play. They flip-flopped on that, I think, this morning. We haven't got the actives and inactives yet. But I actually think there's a decent chance that Zamir White doesn't even play. You can't start Zamir White. And Madison's not really a great start either, though at least he should have some volume. So Trey Tucker is the only really good start outside of Brock Bowers. He's an okay start. I wouldn't even necessarily say good. And no one else on this team could be started. Honestly, Amir Abdullah looked like the best running back on this offense the last week. I cannot believe Dylan Lobb hasn't got a chance to be active yet. And then on the Steelers side of the ball, Fields is like an interesting high floor start, but I'm not starting him over Josh Allen. I think there's a reasonable case to make there to do that. I'm not starting him over Kirk Cousins. I'm not starting Justin Fields over Daniel Jones. But Justin Fields is a floor start at QB with the rushing that he has, and a good matchup here versus the Raiders. I think the Steelers crushed the Raiders in this game, by the way. The Steelers are only 3-point favorites in this game. Don't really get that. Just like I didn't get why the Bears were 1.5-point underdogs in the game going on right now in London. Happy London time to everyone on the live. We've been going now for 3 hours. We were on London time this morning, locked in. Cole Kmet to our lineups if you were with us earlier this morning. We need Bigsby to get some rushing yards here for the first free player prop of the day. So hopefully the Jags can get some offense going. George Pickens, he's an okay start. Najee, an okay start. I'd say actually Najee like a good start. He ranks the top 20 running back. Pickens is an okay start. Weird stuff going on with Pickens, but he's still clearly the best receiver on the Steelers. Definitely still has a real ceiling. Just kind of a low floor. Darnell Mooney or Wandale, yeah, I really do like Darnell Mooney a lot. He had 16 targets last week. I kind of think you got to go with Mooney. Jalen Warren's back this week, which is a little concerning for Najee, but I still think Najee is a decent start with a decent floor. Not a super exciting ceiling, but he's going to score a touchdown eventually. And why not in this matchup versus the Raiders, who rank 3rd worst against running backs this season? All right, that's the Raiders and Steelers. I missed that game by accident. All right, let's get back to the rapid fire start sit segment. You're playing Montgomery. You got start Dave Montgomery in all spots. I'm starting him over Deontay for sure. AJ Brown, Olave, Diggs. Yeah, I'm playing Diggs over Olave. I'm playing AJ Brown over basically everyone. Don't bench AJ Brown. Don't bench your first round pick. Now that he's healthy, don't bench him. Caleb, thanks for what I do every Sunday. Thanks, man. Ridley, Eckler, Moss in the flex. I have Monty and Sermon starting. 5 rush yards per point. Wow. We have a teen as the commissioner. Oh, yeah. Okay. Caleb, I got you here. Yeah. So Ridley, Eckler, the rushing per point is massive here. I mean, massive. Like, I don't know. You can't start the receivers in a scoring setting like this. I actually like Ridley as a sleeper, but yeah, I think I'd just go Eckler. I'd go Eckler over Ridley and Moss. I think Sermon's a decent start in the setting too. Tracy or Najee Harris. Yeah, so I personally think I lean Tracy over Najee with Jalen Warren playing. I actually don't know if the rankings agree with me there. Yeah, we have them back to back. I think Tracy's just got a much more exciting ceiling. I'd go Tracy over Najee. JK or Troop Hubbard. Yeah, it's Hubbard. Mike Evans or James Cook. I think I'd go Evans there. I'm definitely concerned about Evans in this matchup. He's historically struggled against Lattimore and the Saints. Start 2, Cooper, Slayton, or Sermon. Yeah, I think I'd go Cooper over Sermon. Pick one I should trade for. I need a running back, and someone has Montgomery, Bijan, and Hubbard. Yeah, those first two. If you need a running back in a short term, it's Hubbard, but Jonathan Brooks is going to come back by the time the fantasy playoffs are going on, and Hubbard's not going to be startable then. Hey, Sam, Wicks, Tolbert, or Dowdle? Yeah, it's Tolbert. It's got to be Tolbert. It would be classic for Wicks to flop last week and then smash this week once Dobbs comes back and nobody's starting him. But yeah, Tolbert versus Lions is a smash. Laporta or Slayton at flex? Yeah, Slayton. Don't play 2 tight ends if you don't need to. How you doing, Sam? So excited for the rest of the day. I'm pumped for the rest of the day too, man. We're here in week 6. Tons of great games on our TV screens in not that long now. We're 3 hours in. We got an hour and a half. So we got some great games on our TV screens. Man, these lives always fly, especially the London time games. These lives always fly by. And I'm pumped too, man. We've already talked through every single game. So Marv or Mooney is a really tough one. I actually think I'm going to argue for Mooney here. The projections are going to argue, I think, for Marv here. I think both Marv and Mooney are good options for fantasy. I think Marvin Harrison Jr., like people are frustrated with Marvin Harrison Jr. and they're feeling great about Mooney. You know, people have much different sentiments towards both these guys. By the way, guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, we're also live on YouTube. And the link to the YouTube live is right in the TikTok bio. You're like two presses your finger away from the YouTube live. It's just a little bit better reviewing experience because I can share my screen on YouTube live. Like we're looking at a player comparison of Mooney and Marv on the YouTube live right now. I just can't show that on the TikTok live because I can't share my screen as easily. But yeah, Marv projects slightly better. They're both projected 13.9 points though. CD going off today. Yep, he is. Why Kraft over Pitts? Because Pitts has a floor of 0 points. Kraft does not. That's ultimately why. And I think they have similar ceilings too. Kraft looked great last week. And also Musgrave's out. All right, sorry. Going back to the start sit from you, Nick. I'm going Mooney here over Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it's super close, really comparable matchups. I think Mooney's floor is just a little bit better with the target volume he saw really over the last few games. He's not been under a 15% target share since week 1. And Marvin Harrison Jr. seeing pretty consistent targets too. I think the ceiling is similar. The floor is just a little bit better for Mooney, in my opinion. And that's kind of what the Walter Picks app is saying here too. The ceiling is arguably a little bit higher for Marv. We have seen a high ceiling game from Marv back in week 2. He was the wide receiver 1 with 29 points. He could have had an even bigger game back in that game. But down game for him last week, I think Marv's just a little bit more boom bust. I lean Mooney slightly, but super tough one. Really close. Can you put up your line predictions? Yes, I don't have predictions for every single spread, but I can't talk through them super quick. I've already touched on every game and some of my thoughts on the games, but I think that the Eagles 8.5 point favorites, I think that's like a pretty good line. I wouldn't really touch that game. If anything, I'm on the Eagles there, though. I don't have much faith in the Browns. Against the Eagles coming off the bye, that's going to be a rough spot for them. The Pats are 6.5 point underdogs. I think that they are probably the side to take there with the points. I think the offense does have just way more of a ceiling now with Drake Maye, but obviously a really low floor still. Texans should win that game. Ravens versus Commanders. The Commanders are 6.5 point underdogs. Definitely the better team to take with the spread there, in my opinion. I think there's a good chance the Commanders can win that game versus the Ravens. The Commanders offense should cook versus the Ravens. Jaden Daniels ranks as QB1 this week, and Lamar ranks as QB2 this week. That's going to be a super fun one coming up in just about an hour now. The Cardinals versus the Packers. Packers are 5.5 point favorites in that game. I like the underdog there too with the points. Cardinals plus 5.5. Definitely have a chance to win that one in Green Bay. Probably my favorite spread of the week, though, is the Buccaneers versus the Saints. Bucs only 3.5 point favorites in New Orleans. I think there's a very good chance that Rattler just completely crumbles in this game. There's been a lot of, surprisingly, a lot of optimism out there, it seems like, about Spencer Rattler, the 5th round rookie quarterback. I really think there's a better chance than not that Rattler just completely implodes and is not able to sustain a good offense. Guys, Derek Carr was already kind of imploding. Like, Derek Carr was kind of struggling before his injury. His offense started so hot this season. And Derek Carr, he was down to 5.9 yards per attempt in his last game. He's been under 6.5 yards per attempt, basically 3 straight games. The Bucs look like a good matchup on paper too, but they're actually getting their starting safeties back. I think the Bucs crush the Saints, or at least have a good chance to crush the Saints in this one. Part of the reason I really like Bucky Irving this week. So that's probably my favorite play in terms of the games this week. Switch the rankings up here to the running backs on both lives as I talk through this a little bit more. Colts versus Titans. Titans are 2.5 point favorites. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. I actually think the Titans offense is like a bunch of different sleepers on the Titans offense this week for fantasy. Pollard's obviously a good start, really a must start. Tony Pollard. I think him versus Chuba Hubbard is a close one. I lean toward Chuba earlier in the live. I think it's super close, though. I think you can make a good case for Pollard. He does have a better matchup. Flacco starting. Is that true? Did I miss? Oh, wow. This is just coming out here. Massive, massive news on the live. We had some massive news drop on the live this whole season. Shout out to everyone in the live who's on the news. Literally, the news drops in this live stream faster than you find it from Adam Schefter. Flacco is starting, and Anthony Richardson is serving as the number 3 quarterback. Not expected. And definitely changes my opinion a lot on some of these guys for fantasy. This is a huge news here. Christian Watson's active too. That's pretty big, and bad news a little bit for Jaden Reed. Definitely bad news as well for Dontavian Wicks, who's no longer startable. But yeah, so Flacco is starting. I've been telling people all live, I feel horrible about Pittman. I feel a little bit better about Pittman. I feel a decent bit better about Downs now. But yeah, Trey Sermon is back. Matt, I think this is Downs is up. Definitely, this is a big win for Downs. Trey Sermon is also back as like a decent start now. Like you can feel better about Trey Sermon. Let's go back to the running back ranks here. So we had Trey Sermon rankings running back 25. Trey Sermon, again, the reason that he did well last week, despite being horribly inefficient and just like not that good of a running back, didn't matter. Running back 6, because he had 6 catches and a touchdown. Definitely possible we see something similar this week against a team. Again, be careful still a little bit with Pittman and Downs. I still like Downs more than Pittman. I still like Downs and Pittman more now that Joe Flacco's starting. Part of my whole case to bench these guys was Richardson starting, but also part of it was the matchup. Again, the Titans have ranked number 1 versus receivers this season. Number 1 versus receivers this season are the Tennessee Titans. We'll look at that again closely in a second. But yeah, we had Sermon. He had 6 targets last week. Decent role in the receiving game. Given this matchup, you got to think a lot of dump offs coming to Sermon again. Definitely a big up arrow for Sermon with the news that Joe Flacco is now starting. A very surprising news that Flacco is starting. I wonder how much of this is the injury versus how much Colts realize that they actually maybe just have a better chance with Flacco, especially in this matchup, specifically versus the Titans, who have been pretty good in the secondary. And then Downs and Pittman, they definitely deserve to be upgraded as well with Flacco. I mean, we've clearly seen so clearly over the last 2 weeks that Flacco is better for fantasy for both these guys. Downs, I think, is this much safer option, though, in this matchup. And then the other reason I was off of Pittman this week, not only with this matchup and Richardson, or again, the Richardson thing is no longer a thing. Flacco started. Just breaking news right from the live stream here. But also the back injury. I mean, they said he was an IR candidate this week. They said he was an IR candidate. And he's playing through a back injury that could have sent him to IR. It just seems also very risky in this matchup. So yeah, Pittman, I still think I lean towards benching, but he's still much more startable now for sure. And then Downs, I think, is a better start too. I still would go Downs. I would still go Tolbert over Downs for sure. I still think it's more of a floor play. Like Downs is more of a floor play than a ceiling play still. Tolbert or Sermon? Yeah, I'm still going Tolbert over Sermon. Man, breaking news on this live frequently on these Sunday mornings. Jair Alexander is active. Christian Watson is active. Definitely some pretty surprising news there. Kyle Pitts a start. Nope. I would prefer to bench Kyle Pitts. Let's go to the tight end ranks here again. Yeah, no, this has absolutely nothing to do with performance. It's 100% injury. Yeah. I'm not so sure, honestly. I think that's a reasonable take. I don't know, obviously. It's just tough to speculate on the injury, but Flacco has done a bit better, honestly, than what we saw from Richardson. Joe Flacco or Daniel Jones? Yes, Daniel Jones. Flacco's not a good start. This Titan secondary has been good. Again, they ranked number 1 versus receivers this season. They ranked top 5, I think, versus quarterbacks this season too. Premium sub here. Yeah, shout out to everyone who's done the premium subscriptions in the Walter Picks app. Seriously, appreciate the support from all of you guys. The best way you could possibly support the whole Walter Picks brand and support me is downloading the Walter Picks app, and then also doing one of the subscriptions is the best possible thing you could do. Doing the TikTok live subscription, appreciate that as well. Pittman, Wicks are forward for flex PPR, and Pitts are Goddard for tight end. Yeah, it's Goddard over Pitts. Pittman, Wicks, and Ford. This is actually really close now, I feel like. And Wicks, with Christian Watson active, you can't start Wicks. You cannot start Wicks. Wicks has a close to 0-point floor now with all these guys back, with Dobbs and Watson back. Pittman versus Ford, I think, is really close. I think it's Ford. Still, I still kind of want to bench Pittman in the matchup. Again, this is the worst possible matchup for receivers so far this season. I'd go Najee over Eckler. I'm going Tolbert over Tucker. Kittle, best fantasy tight end. Yes, so this is rankings for tight ends that haven't played yet this week. But yeah, Kittle ranks number 1 in points per game this season. He's been the tight end 1, another 2 touchdowns on Thursday night. This is the projection, by the way, with Pittman before the news. I think I can probably refresh real quick to get after the news. We probably already updated it. Conklin ranks as my tight end 19. Let me go to wide receivers here. I played Bucky over Downs still pretty easily. I still think it's Ford over Pittman. It's super close now, though. Let me refresh here, see if we updated for this already. Javonte or Sermon? Oh man, I still think it's Javonte, but it's definitely closer now. Let's see if we've updated for this already. Doesn't look like we quite have updated yet. Let's do Sermon versus Javonte. Yeah, it was super close even before this news, which kind of makes me want to lean towards Sermon now. This was before the Flacco news. It's honestly an even worse matchup for Javonte. Yeah, I'm going Sermon. I'm going Sermon over Javonte now. I think that makes a ton of sense. Reed or McLaurin? Yeah, so Reed ranked really high too with Christian Watson playing and Dobbs playing. I'm a little less excited about Reed. I still think he's a good start. Him versus McLaurin is close. I think I'd probably still lean Reed there, but super close. Let me go to the defense ranks. Yeah, Browns defense, you cannot start. The Colts, the Eagles, the Texans, the Steelers, the Bucs. I honestly think the Bucs ahead of the Bengals makes sense. Danny Dimes or Fields today. Thanks for what you do, Sam. I got you, Eric. Shout out to everyone in this live, man. I love getting to do this every single Sunday morning. I'm thinking about this live all week. I'm dialed in, man. At London time, we're dialed in, starting this live an extra hour early. We're going 4 hours on Sundays when we're on London time. I love it. I love every aspect of it. So shout out to everyone that's tuned in right now. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the follow button on TikTok. But yeah, it's Danny Dimes, I think, over Justin Fields. Daniel Jones has been good this season. I mean, he's really proved a lot of people wrong this season. And he was good last week without Malik Neighbors. He had his best game of the season last week without Neighbors. It almost felt like in this game, like the Giants were almost a little harder to game plan against when you didn't know where the ball was going. Where like when Neighbors plays, you just know where the ball's going. I'm not saying they're better without Neighbors. I just think it felt like they were harder to game plan against without Neighbors, which is interesting. But yeah, Daniel Jones has now been a top 10, top 11 quarterback 3 of his 4 last games, over 18 points in 3 of those games. And now he gets the Bengals' best matchup of the season. So yeah, I think I'd go Daniel Jones over Fields. Fields is definitely startable as well, similar tier to Daniel Jones. Saints defense or Browns defense? Yeah, it's the Saints, I think, over the Browns. You can't start the Browns versus you really can't start the Browns versus the Eagles. Kirk, when my opponent has Atlanta wide receiver, yeah, Kirk Cousins versus Daniel Jones. I think go Daniel Jones. I like both those guys. They're really close. They're really similar. Flacco QB1 per ESPN. Yeah, Flacco's starting. Flacco is starting over Anthony Richardson. And I think that moves Josh Downs out of must-bench territory and into like a decent start territory. Like Downs versus Trey Tucker, man, that one's super close to me. Super, super close. I think I would go Downs over Trey Tucker. I think I would do that. I still don't really want to start Pittman, though. I honestly still think Pittman's like in the bench if you can category. Maybe not the must bench category in more spots now, but he's in the bench if you can still. Again, the part of the reason, there was 3 reasons I didn't want to start Pittman or Downs. Reason number 1 was Anthony Richardson starting instead of Flacco, where Flacco's clearly better for them for fantasy. That's no longer a reason. Flacco starting. But reason number 2 was this was a really bad matchup for them. The Titans have been the best possible matchup, best possible defense versus receivers. The worst possible matchup for receivers this season has been the Tennessee Titans. There's not been a single big game versus the Titans other than, I think it was Nico Collins. Let me pull this up again. Was that the right defense I'm thinking of? I don't even think it was. I think that might have been the Jets, one of the other better secondaries. Yeah, not a single receiver, guys, has been over 12 fantasy points versus the Titans. DJ Moore didn't do it. Keenan Allen didn't do it. Garrett Wilson didn't do it. Jaden Reed didn't do it. Christian Watson didn't do it. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle didn't do it. Like, this is still a really tough matchup. I still think there's a better floor now for Downs specifically. And reason number 3, not even just the matchup, was the injuries. And Pittman's injury does seem more serious. They said Pittman was a candidate for IR this week, and he's playing through that injury. Tyler Goodson's just a deep sleeper, man. Just a deep sleeper. I still think Sermon's better than him and is going to be ahead of him. And Sermon had 6 catches last week. Not even like Goodson's like just in that receiving role either. So yeah, I think I lean Downs versus Trey Tucker, but it's definitely really close. Tyrone Tracy, Tank Dell, or Jameson Williams at the flex. Yeah, it's Tracy, man. It's Tracy. Amari or Downs. That's Amari. It's Tracy over Eckler. Moss, Leggett, McConkey. Yeah, that one's close. Moss, Leggett, McConkey. McConkey's not a guy you can really trust. Moss projects well. I've told so many people to bench Moss this week because Chase Brown's playing better than him, and he's dealing with an injury of his own. But in this one, you might want to start Moss. I would start Moss, I think, over McConkey. And then Leggett's an intriguing sleeper against the Falcons. Yeah, it's Moss. I think you got to go Moss in this one. I'm playing Chase Brown over Moss. Yep. I think Chase Brown out-touches Moss for the first time this season. Pittman or Tolbert now. Yeah, it's still Tolbert over. I still think Pittman's a decent bench. Tracy or Sermon at flex. Yeah, it's Tracy still over Sermon. Way better matchup for Tracy. And honestly, a better role for Tracy too. Sermon is still like a little bit of a trap. Just a little less. Like all these guys are just a little less of a little better now with Flacco starting. Sermon's maybe he's out of trap territory now if he can get six catches. He was definitely a trap with Richardson, maybe less of a trap, but I still think Tracy's a better play for sure. Fields or Mayfield? Yeah, I think I lean Fields over Mayfield. I think there's a good chance the Bucs crush the Saints and are able to go really run heavy. I'm nervous about that in the Eagles game too. Part of the reason I'm a little nervous about Devontae Smith. Sam, how are we doing? I'm loving my Bears in London. Also, Keon Coleman or Bucky Yardsman. How are we doing, man? I am loving this London game. Also, need a little bit more from Tank Bigsby, but love to see Cole Kmet smashing. Bigsby's now at 24 yards. He just needs 120-yard carry to get there at his prop. Swift having a good game too. Love to see that from Swift. 4 catches, 14 carries, over 100 total yards now. But I am very excited about Bucky Irving this week. You need to start Bucky Irving over Keon Coleman. This one's honestly not that close. Yardsman, Bucky Irving's about to smash with Rachaad White out. Really high floor and ceiling. I wake up and Cole Kmet dropped 20 points on me. Yep, wake up. It's time for football. And you're late. You're late for the football if you're just waking up. We were on London time this morning. We've been up for 6 hours now on London time. We are 3 hours into the live. And yeah, wake up. Cole Kmet's dropping a 20 piece on you. 2 TDs. He was on my must-start list, so I apologize if I convinced someone to start Cole Kmet against you. A.J. Brown or Marv? Yeah, I'm not benching A.J. Brown. There's some guys that even rank ahead of A.J. Brown in the projections. I'm not benching A.J. Brown, my first-round pick, in his first game back after being fully healthy now. Like, nope, I'm not benching him. You kind of have to start A.J. Brown, in my opinion. And then Bucky versus James Conner, it's Bucky, man. That one's pretty close. I actually have Bucky at the end of tier 2, though, and James Conner at the start of tier 3. So I would go Bucky over James Conner. Caleb Williams is popping off for his 4th touchdown here in London. Instead, when we were on London time this morning, I didn't get the spread in this game, man. There were 1.5 point underdogs, the Bears versus the Jags. Clearly, the Bears are a better team than the Jags this season. Sermon or Pittman? Flacco playing, yet Sermon over Pittman still. Flacco playing is definitely good for both of them. It's good for both of them. Honestly, it might even be better for Sermon than it is for Pittman. It's just a tough matchup for Pittman, who's also dealing with a back injury. Madison or Gibson PPR? Yeah, I'd lean Gibson over Madison. Tracy or Ray McLeod? Yeah, Tracy's a good start, guys. Where's the defense ranks? Yeah, I got you with the defense ranks. Najee or Amari Cooper? Yeah, what do you want? Do you want floor or ceiling? This is one of those that, like, I'll tell you what I would do in my league, but ultimately it comes down to how much risk do you want to take for a potential ceiling game versus just locking in 10 points. Najee Harris is like the quintessential just lock in 10 points. And he's a pretty good matchup this week. His best matchup of the season against the Raiders. They ranked 3rd worst against running backs this season. Jalen Warren's back. That does put a little bit of a dent in the Najee projection. And then the other side of the game of this decision, Amari Cooper has a massive ceiling. Amari Cooper, guys, he is the 6th most air yards in the NFL? Sorry, 2nd most air yards in the NFL, the 8th most targets. There's a real ceiling for Amari Cooper in this game with the Browns 8.5 point underdogs against the pass funnel Eagles defense. But yeah, the ceiling is definitely higher for Amari, and the floor is definitely better for Najee. I personally, in a start set like this, I'm just going to go Amari Cooper and lock in and shoot for the ceiling rather than just locking in the 10 points. Thoughts on Likely or Gesicki? Oh, man. Yeah, this is a close one. I think I'd probably go Likely over Gesicki. Eric All's been getting a lot of run, too. Joe Mixon or David Montgomery? Yeah, I'm not benching Monty this week. Start David Montgomery. Pollard or Tracy? I'd lean towards Pollard over Tracy. Pollard in a good spot this week versus the Colts. I think the whole Titans offense is a little bit underrated in this game versus the Colts, coming off their bye week. Good matchup. The best matchup of the season, really, for the Titans offense, especially the passing attack. But Pollard should do well versus the Colts also. He's had a great role this season. He really only had 1 bad game this season from Tony Pollard in his 5 games this season. Guys, if you're just tuning in, smash the like button. Hit the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. If I don't get to your start sit decision, I've gotten to hundreds already on the live. We're going to get to probably like close to 100 more on this live stream. But if I don't get to your start sit decision, even if I do, you guys got to download the Walter Picks app. The link is in the TikTok bio. It's in the YouTube description. It is a free app. There's some premium subscriptions in the Walter Picks app too that are like way underpriced, well worth the value there. The best way you could possibly support me, though, is just trying out the app. It's going to help you with every decision you have in fantasy, start sits, trades, ad drops, waiver recommendations. It's also going to help you a ton with player props and game analysis. It's the best place for NFL research. I've spent the last 4 years of my life helping build the Walter Picks app. Again, it's like the best way you could possibly support me is downloading the app. Again, it's free. Is Chase Brown playing today? Yeah, he is playing today. And I like him more this week than I like Zach Moss. They're both actually like a little banged up. Both going to play. Zach Moss's injury seems a little bit more serious, though. Ford or Dowdle, full PPR. Yeah, I haven't seen too many Dowdle questions. Dowdle's a really tough start sit this week because he gets the line. They've ranked number 1 versus running backs this season. Dowdle's coming off his best usage game of the season. Ford's coming off his second worst usage game of the season. Super close projection here. Man, look at these curves. They're basically exactly the same. Ford has had a better role in 3 of his 5 games than what we've seen from Dowdle. We haven't seen back-to-back games with a bad role from Ford. And I mean, this matchup versus the Eagles is not good, but this is not a good matchup for Dowdle against the Lions. Oh man, Bigsby fumbles the returning kickoff. Not great for our Bigsby bags. I think I lean Ford over Dowdle, but definitely a close one. And that game, at least the Cowboys, I think, will do well in that game. Yeah, we saw Joe Flacco starting, massive for Pittman, massive for Downs, and honestly massive for Trey Sermon as well. Let me refresh the news here, make sure we got all the actives and inactives. Joe Mixon is active. Kendre Miller is inactive, not going to play this week. Kendre Miller. Mondre inactive. Josh Downs active. Brian Robinson inactive. Rashad White inactive. Michael Pittman active. All these were expected. Notable that Robert Woods is inactive, with Nico Collins also inactive. Xavier Hutchinson definitely a sleeper this week, as Tank Dell gets a boost as well there. Dak or Baker, yeah, you got to start Dak this week, guys. You got to start Tolbert over Moss too. You got to start Tolbert and Dak. CeeDee Lamb's wide receiver 1. Tolbert ranks as top 15 receiver this week. Start Javonte Williams or Antonio Gibson. Yeah, that one's a close one, man. Tough matchup for Javonte. I honestly think I lean towards Gibson there. Josh Downs, Trey McBride, or James Conner. Man, let's refresh the app here again really quick to get the projections in with Anthony Richardson out. I think the answer here is James Conner, though. I really don't like starting multiple tight ends if I don't need to. But McBride, Bowers, and Ferguson, these are the 3 tight ends that you can realistically consider starting. I definitely like Conner still more than Downs this week, even with Flacco starting. Again, part of the reason I was out on Downs and Pittman before the Flacco news wasn't just that Flacco was better for them than Richardson was, and I thought Richardson was going to start, but also this matchup, they ranked number 1 versus receivers, the Titans do, who Josh Downs is going against. All right, we yeah, it's James Conner. It's close between Conner and McBride, but I would go Conner. Conner's got a better floor than McBride. Let me pull this up here. Wando Robinson or Marvin Harrison Jr. in the flex, PPR. Yeah, I'd still go Marv over Wandale. Cousins or Flacco. Yeah, it's Cousins. Flacco's not a good start versus the Titans. He's not. Walter Picks app is goated. Appreciate that. Yeah, guys, check out the Walter Picks app if you haven't yet. Link is in the TikTok bio and the YouTube description. It's going to help you with any question you have for fantasy and for props. Start one with flex. Pittman, Sermon, Tracy. Yeah, it's Tracy. Start Tracy over Pitts. Start Tracy over Sermon still. Start Tracy over Leggett as well. Tracy's in a workhorse role, guys. With Flacco, Sermon, or Najee, yeah, it's still Najee over Sermon for me. 28-10, Bears versus Jags. Bears absolutely stomping the Jags. Lawrence just threw a pick. Ottener and Njoku or Schultz. Yeah, Otten versus Njoku, I think, is close. I think I'd start both these guys over Schultz. Let's switch over to the tight ends here. Mets having a massive, massive game. Wow, these guys are actually back-to-back-to-back in the rankings here. Otten, Schultz, and Njoku are back-to-back-to-back in my rankings, in the Walter Picks app rankings, I think, as well. I think it's Njoku. Otten actually projects better than Njoku. I was just saying earlier in the live, like in one of my leagues, Otten's on the waiver wire. I'm starting Njoku. I'm not willing to drop Njoku for Otten, but I do think it's reasonable to start Otten over Njoku if you have them both on your team. They both project for 8.9. I think the floor is just much better for Otten with the usage he's seen, and Njoku back for the first time in a little bit. I think just a little bit of a riskier play. I'd start both these guys over Schultz, though. But yeah, I think I'd rank them as Otten, then Njoku, then Schultz. That's how I would play it. Again, I'm still not willing to drop Njoku, though, for Otten. I think Njoku still has a higher ceiling rest of the season. Goff or Flacco? Yeah, I still lean Goff over Flacco. Najee, McConkey, Downs, Kraft. I think this one's still Najee. Downs is definitely in the consideration. Let me update here. Josh Downs now projects as wide receiver 30, 12 points. Najee's at 13. Yeah, I'm going Najee still over Downs. Deontay or Higgins, I'm not benching T. Higgins. Do not bench T. Higgins, guys. He has more targets than Chase over the last couple of games. Starting mornings with early show, then church, then back to WP. That's how long we are live. You're able to join the early morning live, go to church, come back at the end of the live. Man, I appreciate you. I know Walter picks his Ferguson slightly over McBride, but Packers give up more tight end than Detroit. Yeah, it's a toss-up for sure. These guys are in the same tier in my tight end ranks. I think it's super, super close. I think it's very close. I'm okay going McBride over Ferg. I think that's like a very reasonable decision. They project really close. I think they're in the same tier. Definitely a better matchup for McBride. Absolutely, it's a better matchup. I mean, the Lions have been good versus tight ends. A lot of, though, like the tight end matchups, like it does ultimately a lot of the tight end defense stuff this early in the season. It's just like what tight ends have they played? Right? The Packers played Goddard. That's kind of it, actually. They haven't even played very good tight ends. That makes me even more bullish on McBride. But you look at who the Lions have played. I think they played one good tight end in McBride. Yeah, they played just McBride. And last week they allowed over 15 points to the Seahawks tight ends. But yeah, I think I'm fine going McBride over Ferguson. It's not that crazy that Ferguson projects ahead of him in what should be a high-scoring game, but I think it's a toss-up. I would go. I don't think there's a bad decision there. They're both tier 1, top 3 tight ends. Chase Brown or Javonte? Yeah, I think I lean Chase Brown over Javonte. Bucky over Chuba Hubbard for me. Chuba projects better. I'm playing Bucky and Josh Jacobs over Chuba Hubbard. Start 3: Tracy, Mike Evans, Bucky, Pollard, Devonta. Yeah, this is a really tough one, I think. I'm starting Bucky Irving off the rip here. Evans and Devonta Smith, I have some concerns about. Honestly, I think I'd just start the 3 running backs. So I have concerns about Devonta Smith. Let me go to the receiver ranks here on the TikTok live. I'll pull them up on the YouTube live also. I have concerns about Devonta Smith, who for me, Devonta Smith ranks all the way down at wide receiver 18, which is much lower. He's behind Wandale, for example. And Mike Evans ranks all the way down at wide receiver 25. He's historically struggled versus the Saints. And I think the Bucs might crush the Saints and not need to throw that much. Part of the reason I like Bucky Irving a lot. I have similar concerns for the Eagles passing attack, specifically Devonta Smith, who I think is a very good number 2 wide receiver and a good start for fantasy almost every week. But they're playing the Browns, who have done decent against receivers this season. Let me pull up this comparison here. We'll compare Devonta, Evans, and the Bears just scored again. They are absolutely crushing the Jags in London. We'll compare these guys versus Tracy. Yeah, Devonta Smith actually has the best projection here. Wow. I think just a bit better floor for Tracy than Devonta Smith. Let's look at how the Browns have done versus receivers. My fear is the Eagles get really run heavy in this game because it's not close. They haven't been great versus receivers, but they also haven't allowed like 2 big receiver games in any given game. Neighbors is the only guy with a huge game. No game where 2 receivers went over 15 points versus the Browns. And part of that has been the Browns offense being so bad. All these Browns games have just been ugly on like both sides of the ball because the Browns defense is decent and the offense is atrocious. So I think Tracy over Devonta Smith is fine. I think Tracy has a better floor and arguably a better ceiling. PPR, maybe Smith's ceiling is a little bit higher. I think that's what, arguably Evans' ceiling is higher too. We've seen a really high ceiling from Evans this season. But I think the floor is really low for Evans in this game against Lattimore and the Saints. So yeah, I would go with 3 running backs here. I think I'd go Pollard, Tracy, and Bucky over Evans and Devonta. Downs with Flacco in or JMO? Yeah, that's close too. Let me pull up the ranks here again. I think I would go Downs. Yeah, I'd go Downs over Jameson Williams. Better floor for Downs for sure. Chase Brown or Spears? Yeah, I'd go Chase Brown there. Goddard or Moss for flex PPR? Oh, gosh, I don't like Moss. I really don't like Moss. I don't love Goddard, though, against the Browns either. I think you got to go Moss over Goddard. I don't like starting 2 tight ends. Tolbert or Judy? I'd go Tolbert over Judy. I'd go Tolbert over Amari, too, this week. Tyrone Tracy or Josh Downs? Yeah, I think it's Tracy over Downs still. Sermon over Chase Brown? That one's super close. I think we might have actually already had Sermon ahead of Chase Brown. Yeah, we did by 1. So, yeah, I think Sermon over Chase Brown's reasonable. I think it's really close, Teddy. Chase Brown, to me, is a slightly better option. I think I would personally lean Chase Brown over Sermon, but definitely close. And Joe Flacco definitely boosts Trey Sermon a decent bit. I'm playing Laporta over Kraft. Kraft projects a bit better than Laporta. I think we see Laporta's best game of the season today, though, in a high-scoring game versus the Cowboys. I'm happy to take a slightly worse projection for what I think is a little bit better of a ceiling. But Kraft is a good start, too. If I go to the tight ends here again, both these guys are top 5 options, excuse me. I'm fine going Laporta or Kraft. It's similar to the McBride Ferguson decision. I think you can go either way and feel decent about the decision. Burrow or Mayfield? Definitely Burrow over Mayfield. Javonte, Gibson, Shakir. Shakir's not playing. Javonte versus Gibson, I think, is close. I think Javonte projects a tiny bit better. I'm nervous about this whole rushing attack with estimate back. I think it's Javonte still by a smidge, though. Javonte had a really good receiving role last week. Gibson's in the starting role again for the Pats. I think a bit of a higher ceiling for the Pats with Drake Maye now active in starting. But he had 6 targets, 5 catches. Similar role, honestly, to what we saw from Sermon. And Gibson could be in a pretty good receiving role in this game, too. Best game of the season last week for Javonte, but it was against the Raiders. Maybe some optimism here for all the Najee people out there as well. Looking at this game for Javonte, his best game of the season. Close call here. Both these guys are in similar matchups. I lean Javonte just a little bit. Tank Dell or Evans? Yeah, I think I lean Tank over Evans. Tolbert or Tracy? I'm going Tolbert still over Tracy, but I would argue Tracy has a little bit better of a floor, better ceiling, though, for Tolbert. Man, that 2nd and 18 handoff, really, we wanted that to go to Tank Bigsby. Love starting my Sunday with the live. Thanks, man. I love starting the Sundays with the live, too, guys. If you're just tuning in, smash the like button. If you're watching live on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, too. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button, then come over to the YouTube Live. The link is right in the TikTok bio on the YouTube Live. For the YouTube Live, it's a better viewing experience. You can see my screen shared on the YouTube Live. Let's get to the start sit here. We got Braylon Allen. A lot of people wondering about Braylon Allen this week. We got Trey Sermon. Yeah, it's Sermon over Allen. Braylon Allen, I would argue, honestly, is a higher ceiling, but you got to go Sermon. Got to go Sermon, I think. Do I drop Sermon for Dobbs and start him? And I think it's still Sermon over Dobbs, especially with Christian Watson active now. Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Deontay Johnson. Yeah, this one's Deontay, then Marv, then... Oh, is this Garrett Wilson, actually? My mind went to Michael Wilson for some reason. Let's compare these guys. Garrett Wilson. I think Deontay is going to be the answer here still, which feels like a little gross over Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr., where those guys got drafted this season and the type of receivers they are. Deontay's got the best floor of the group, though. Deontay's only got a 28% chance to go under 10 points. Garrett Wilson's close to that. Game versus the Bills. Best matchup here is actually Marv. This one's super, super close. I mean, all these guys rank and project, within like half a point of each other, 1 point of each other. But yeah, I'd lean Deontay in this one. Bucky or Chuba? I'm leaning Bucky over Chuba. Chuba projects better, has been in the better role, but I don't want to bench Bucky Irving this week with Rachaad White out. Is Keenan a must start now after 2 tutties? I didn't start him. I don't think he's going to be a must start every game now. This is a good matchup versus a bad Jags defense. Jags defense is ranked dead last against quarterbacks this season. Amon-Ra for Jamar. Yeah, I think I'd slightly lean towards Jamar here with what we've seen from them, but I mean, it's a fair deal. Tolbert, Pittman, Laporta, start one for flex. So let's do Tolbert versus Laporta. I'm still starting both these guys. I'm definitely starting Tolbert over Pittman. Let's actually just compare all three of these guys. Tolbert, Pittman, and Laporta. It's Tolbert. It's got to be Tolbert. Laporta projects better than Pittman too. This is still not refreshed for the Flacco news, which let me see if we can refresh that again. Evan Ingram at 100 yards and Brian Thomas at 20. Pain. Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, another catch there for Evan Ingram. He's having a huge game. He's going to be a must start moving forward. Good to see for Evan Ingram. Rough to see for Brian Thomas Jr. We knew this was going to be a tough matchup for the Jags offense. Again, did not understand the spread in that game like at all. How the Jags were favored. The London thing was just getting overrated. It's barely even a true home game. Flacco news still not updated in here. Yeah, I'm still going Tolbert over Pittman and Laporta. Ferguson or Bowers this week? Yeah, it's Bowers over Ferguson for me, but they're both in the same tier. Really, really close. Super close. All right, let's go to the high-level takes here. Kraft or McBride? Yeah, I'm going McBride over Kraft. Man, Gabe Davis drops a touchdown. Devontae or Pickens? This one's close too. I think the answer here is Devontae. I've told a bunch of people to bench Devontae. I'm nervous about Devontae versus the Browns in this game that might be really run heavy from the Eagles. It's Devontae over Pickens. Dell or McLaurin? Yeah, I lean McLaurin over Dell. Downs or Evans? I actually think it is probably Downs over Evans. Oh man, it's close. We actually them back to back now with the new projections. I'm looking at them on my screen. It's not in the app yet. It should be in the app momentarily. But it's actually Evans over Downs still by 0.1 points. I think Downs is a little bit better of a floor. Evans does have a slightly higher ceiling. Guys, start Bucky Irving this week. Ridley, Ladd, or Leggett? I think this one's Ridley. I've been waiting for a start sit where I can say Ridley. Yeah, it's Ridley. Ridley's a good sleeper this week. He really is. Good matchup, good role. Best matchup of the season for these receivers. And for Will Levis. Marv or Mooney? I lean Mooney over Marv. I do. Please answer. Been in for hours. Appreciate you sticking around for multiple hours during this long live on Sunday morning. Michael Wilson, Kyler Stack, Slayton, Ford, Warren, or Leggett. Yeah, it's between the first two here. And I think it's Slayton. Let's take a look here in the comparison. But I think you got to go Slayton instead of the Stack over Michael Wilson. Again, Slayton was in the Malik Neighbors role last week. A pretty valuable role to be in. He's clearly the top receiver alongside Wandale. Yeah, it's Slayton. Good call on Ingram. Yeah, I got you. Dobbins or Pollard? Yeah, I lean Pollard. No Gus Edwards this week. No Ramondre Stevenson this week. No Rashad White this week. Bunch of injuries to be aware of. No Devin Singletary either. Brian Robinson Jr. drops a touchdown. Just a rough game from these Jags receivers. But yeah, I still lean Pollard. Good matchup for Pollard. Been here since 10 a.m. Shout out to you, man. Goddard, Dobbs, or Shaheed? Yeah, so Shaheed's on my do not start list. This is actually close, though. I actually wonder if Shaheed is a start here in this one. With Christian Watson active, I'm a little bit nervous about all these Packers receivers. I don't love Goddard versus the Browns. I don't love starting two tight ends. And then Dobbs. It's probably Dobbs. Yeah, it's Dobbs. It's Dobbs over Shaheed. Shaheed with Spencer Rattler, super, super risky. Robbie, I got you the QB rankings. I'll pull up the QB rankings on the TikTok Live too. Got the QB rankings up. Hard to believe that ETN gets knocked out of this game like early in the second half at the latest, and Bigsby still doesn't hit that rushing prop because they're down by so much. Dearness Johnson getting a lot of run after Bigsby fumbled the kickoff too. Starting to think benching Ingram was a bad idea. Yeah, Kylo, I think it probably was a bad idea. Sam, good afternoon. Ladd or Rashid PPR? Also, do we have DFS? Yeah, I'm out on Rashid Shaheed this week with Spencer Rattler starting. I'm fine going Ladd, even though I don't love him versus the Broncos either. And yeah, I do have a DFS lineup for you. I'll pull this up right now. Waymo Jamo or Tolbert. Yeah, I lean Tolbert over Waymo Jamo. Tolbert's in a good spot, guys. Flowers or Mooney. That one's close. I think it's Mooney. Flowers is in a good matchup versus the Commanders. The game should be high scoring. Very excited for that game. The two best games of the week. Clearly, I think the Ravens, Commanders, and the Cowboys, Lions. Flowers should benefit from that game script, but I still think I prefer Mooney over Flowers. Mooney had 16 targets last game. The Falcons are just a more trustworthy passing offense. One wide receiver spot open and need to flex. Mixon, Diggs, or Harrison. Yeah, it's Harrison. Go Harrison. Mixon is a bit risky. He's not a bad start, though. Let's actually compare these three guys. I like Diggs, too, with Nico out. Diggs has like a pretty strong target floor. He ranks his wide receiver floor. He actually ranks ahead of Marv. I think I'm going to change my answer in this one. Then Mixon projects well, just a little bit uncertain because we haven't really seen him play since week 1 where he had a massive role. Yeah, the answer here is Diggs. I think Diggs versus Marv is really close. Marv has a really high ceiling. Still seeing some Bucky questions. Guys, start Bucky. Find a spot for Bucky Irving. You got to find a spot for Bucky Irving. He's in a workhorse role. Kylo, enjoy your Sunday as well. Amari versus Pickens. It's a close one here too. Debo for Jacobs. I have wide receivers and need a running back. Yeah, fair trade. I think Jacobs is a pretty good buy low right now. He only scored 1 touchdown. He's on a really good offense in a pretty good role. I'm down to buy Josh Jacobs. I think Debo for him is a fair trade. Amari, Pickens. Yeah, it's Pickens over Amari. Both these guys, honestly, similar. Pickens and Amari. Let's go switch over to the wide receiver ranks again. Tracy or Dell for the flex. I lean Tracy over Dell. I'm still a little bit nervous about Dell. Both these guys are boom-bust receivers with high ceilings. And a touchdown for Gabe Davis from Trevor Lawrence. Garbage time at this point. Jags still down multiple scores. Maybe we'll get some garbage time Tank Bigsby carries, but probably not. That one's probably toast at this point. Hope you're having a great Sunday morning. It's been a fantastic Sunday morning. We're watching the Bears crush the Jags, kind of like we expected when we were talking about this game on London time earlier this morning. Komet smashed. Love to see that. Got some great games ahead of us. Fun. It's been a fun live. Sermon or Pittman for flex. I still lean Sermon over Pittman. Downs, Dobbs, Shakir. Half PPR. I think I lean Dobbs on this one over Downs, and I don't think Shakir is playing. You can't start Shakir. Evans or Tracy. I do lean Tyrone Tracy over Mike Evans. Chuba or Bucky. I lean Bucky over Chuba. Chuba projects better. I lean Bucky and Jacobs over Chuba Hubbard. Kraft or Trey Sermon in the flex for full PPR. Flacco starting. Yeah, I don't like starting 2 tight ends. I'm fine going Sermon here. Drop forward for Braylon. Have Brees. Yes. Drop forward for Braylon Allen. I'm fine with that. If you have Brees and you're not starting forward. Yeah, I prefer Braylon easily over Vidal and over Warren. Daniel Jones over Flacco for sure. Not a good matchup, guys, for the passing attack still for the Colts. The Titans have ranked number 1 versus receivers this season. You really need help with this one. I got you, Ronnie. Need 1 wide receiver, 1 flex. Jamo, Downs, Dobbins, Sermon, full PPR. I think this one's Dobbins. I think you got to go Dobbins. There's no Gus Edwards this week. It's not a great matchup. None of these guys have great matchups. Jameson Williams probably has the best matchup of all of these guys. Let's just Sermon versus Dobbins. I think has to be Dobbins. Yeah, it is. We're going to refresh the app again really quick. I think we got the Flacco update in here now. Wandale Downs or Cook for flex. Yeah, it's Wandale over Downs still. Wandale over Cook as well. I don't want to start Cook. Let's go to the high-level takes here. Can we get QB ranks? Yeah, I got you the QB ranks. Then we'll go to my high-level takeaways. We're going to do this comparison quick. Let's just make sure Flacco. Yeah, Flacco's in there now. He's QB 19 with Richardson not getting the start. All right, so let's do Downs, Jameson Williams, Dobbins. It's got to be Dobbins, I think. Yeah, it's Dobbins. And I think it's actually really close between Downs and Dobbins in PPR. But you said, yeah, it is full PPR. But if we just compare Dobbins and Sermon real quick, now that we're updated for the Flacco news, it's close, but it's still Dobbins without Gus. Like Sermon's still not in this workhorse role. Dobbins really could be in a workhorse role today with Gus Edwards out. He kind of already was in a workhorse role. Ridley, Ladd, or Leggett. Yeah, it's Ridley. It's Ridley over Ladd and Leggett. Chase Brown or Dobbins, it's Dobbins. Slayton over Downs still not a good matchup. How do I get the projections page like this on Walter Picks? Yeah, so go to the Start Sit tool, and you'll see all of the ranks for every position custom to your league settings. Again, the Walter Picks app is in the TikTok bio, in the YouTube description. Tank, Dell, Wicks, or Pittman? Yeah, it's Dell. Dell over Wicks, Dell over Pittman for sure. Oh, pick 2. Wicks versus Pittman is close. I think it's Pittman now over Wicks. Wicks is really tough to trust. Wicks, I think, is still projected ahead here. I think I would go Pittman in this one. With Joe Flacco starting, I don't think Wicks gets over 10 points. Christian Watson's back and Romeo Doubs is back. Look at the role Wicks had before those guys were out. I mean, he had multiple 0-point games, under like around 50% of the snaps. He only ran 6 routes in this game in week 2. I know these were Malik Willis games. To be fair, he did have 7 targets last week, but that was without Doubs and Watson in the lineup. I do think Downs is a slightly safer start than Waymo. I think Waymo JMO has a better ceiling than Downs, though. I think Downs is a better floor in PPR and a better raw projection, like better start. If I have to choose between the two, he's going to be the guy I lean towards. But I do think Jameson Williams has a higher ceiling in that game. Can you go over the new trade feature in the app? Yeah, Connie, I'm going to make a video about that, actually. I can show it really quick, though, for those of you guys in the YouTube live. We did just launch a trade finder in the Walter Picks app, where you got to have a league sync. Let me sync my league here. Go to this one real quick. The trade finder, I can select up to 5 players on each team. So if you have some guys in mind you're trying to trade, or you know a team that you're trying to trade with some players you want, then you can select up to 5 players on each team. I think I picked a quarterback. Yeah, let me pick the quarterback here too. And it will find trades that are good for you. I'll hit find here. Just picked a bunch of players at random. We'll see if we find any actually good trades here on the YouTube live. But this is what the trade finder is capable of. This is just the first version of the trade finder too, where there's more coming to the trade finder, where you'll be able to select what position you're trying to trade away, or specific players, what position you're trying to trade for across all teams. This is really just the very first iteration of it, trying to get some early feedback. See if we're able to find some trades here. Actually, I haven't tried this on the computer version of the app yet. Might struggle. What's your code? My creator code is Sam. Use code Sam. Do appreciate that. Let's hop over to, here we go. We found some trades. You can see it's going to find trades with comparable trade value. Like, I don't know if this trade is super realistic. This one might be a little bit more realistic. You can also, in the filters, you can lock players into the trades. I'm going to make a video outlining exactly how to use this. Again, this is also on my computer. It's not the full functionality here, but it's going to find trades that increase my starting lineup projection and maybe lose me trade value, but I care more about the starting lineup projection. This is an interesting one. But yeah, that's the trade finder. Video definitely coming soon about that. Man, Swift just fumbled. They recovered that, though. All right, let's get back to some of these start sits here in the final stretch of the live. We've got like maybe 5-ish minutes left on the YouTube live, like 15-ish minutes left on the TikTok live to get to the TikTok live subscriber comments. Why no running backs? Oh, I got you with the running back ranks. Kincaid or Otten. Yeah, I think I lean towards Kincaid still. Let me know in the comments on the TikTok and YouTube live which rankings you want to see next. Good morning. I asked Walter, I just want your personal opinion. I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone that goes and asks Walter in the Walter Picks app what the start sit decision is and get the analysis there. Then come get my opinion. Sometimes my opinion is different. Amari versus Tank, happy PR. Walter says Amari, but I'm scared of Deshaun. Yeah, I understand that. I think you should be scared of Deshaun. I think Amari Cooper is, about as boom bust as it gets. The boom is there, though. The boom potential is there. Amari ranks second best in the NFL in air yards. Crazy role. He's ranks top 10 in targets, top 10 in air yards. He's got over 50% of the Browns' air yards this season. He's playing the pass funnel. Eagles defense. So yeah, I think it's all reasonable to be scared of Deshaun and definitely risky. But I think Amari's got a ceiling. And then Tank Dell, definitely a bit of a better floor with Nico out. But I'm also still a little skeptical about Tank. We've seen really no explosiveness, no big plays from Tank this season. He should be in a bigger role with Nico out. But yeah, I think I agree. I think I'd go Amari over Tank. I think Amari's got a higher ceiling than Tank. Better role than Tank still. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Xavier Hutchinson outscore Tank in fantasy. It just wouldn't be that shocking. I do have a couple free player props for us in the latter half of the day. Take this Tank Bigsby one out. That's going to end up being an L almost definitely. But I like the Lamb over receiving yards and Bo Nix over completions. Let me talk through both of these. So Lamb's our wide receiver 1 this week. I think pretty clearly wide receiver 1 on the week. I would go Downs over Wicks, seeing that one in the TikTok live. CeeDee Lamb has not had a huge game yet. He doesn't have a game over 100 yards yet this season. I think we see him go over 100 yards for the first time this season. Today in this game versus the Lions, going to be a high-scoring game in the Dome in Detroit. I think the Lions offense will have a lot of success running the ball versus the Cowboys defense. Cowboys will have to throw a lot versus the Lions secondary and won't have a ton of success running the ball. CeeDee Lamb, again, no games over 100 yards yet this season. If we go back to last season, guys, CeeDee Lamb averaged over 100 yards per game last season. So I think we see a 100-yard game from CeeDee Lamb sooner rather than later, and I think it's going to happen this week before the bye for the Cowboys. I also think we see his first game over 10 targets of the season in this one with the game script I expect. I think this prop line really should be in the 90s. I've seen it as high as 88.5, but it's available at 83.5, at least before this live, in many places. And then Bo Nix. Bo Nix has been over this line in 4 of his 5 games this season. He had 9 receptions to the running backs last week. That's kind of what we expect heading into the season for a team that led in running back targets back-to-back seasons the previous 2 years. That's obviously very good for the completions. But yeah, I like this one a lot. I think that the Broncos are likely to be playing from behind in this game as well. He's had at least 19 completions in 4 of his 5 games. He had 19 completions last week, only 27 pass attempts. I think he goes over 30 pass attempts in this game as a 3.5-point underdog versus the Chargers. So yeah, I like Bo Nix completions. I like CeeDee Lamb receiving yards. All right, let's get to a couple more starts on this YouTube live. Then we're going to wrap up. Stroud or Love? Yeah, I lean Love over Stroud this week. I've already looked in the app, but I'm still torn. Dobbs, Chase Brown, or Sermon. Want high upside. Yeah, the first 2 guys I think are the upside guys. I'd argue Dobbs actually has the highest upside if it's PPR. Then it's Brown, then it's Sermon. Sermon's really the floor play, in my opinion. Half PPR, Tucker Kraft, Deontay Johnson, Josh Downs, or Tank down the flex. Had Kittle Thursday night. Nice. Yeah, it's Deontay. It's Deontay here for sure. Even in half PPR, it's Deontay. Is Keenan Allen a valid pickup? Yep, valid pickup. Dropping Ridley, yeah, I think that's valid after this game. I think it's valid. I think Ridley's going to have a good game too. I think he's a sleeper this week, but if you can pick him up now, I don't think that's a bad move. Tolbert or Flowers? Yeah, I do think this one's close. I like Tolbert a lot this week for a lot of the same reasons I like CeeDee Lamb. Flowers, you got to like too this week in a matchup versus the Commanders. Tolbert projects a bit better. I would argue Flowers is a bit safer, though. He's coming off his best yard and reception total of the season. Eckler or Dowdle? Yeah, that one's close too. I think that one's probably Eckler over Dowdle. This one's really close. I would not knock you for going Flowers in this one. He's got a higher ceiling. He does, which makes sense in this matchup. I honestly think I would go Flowers in this one over Tolbert. Should I start Baker or Burrow? Yeah, it's Burrow for sure. I'm playing Goff over Baker also. I think the Bucs are going to be able to run successfully against the Saints. I also have a lot of concerns about the Saints offense with Spencer Rattler under center. Baker or Kirk? I have Mike Evans. Yeah, it's Kirk. It's Kirk. I'm nervous about Mike Evans too this week in a tough matchup versus the Saints. He's historically played tough, not very good against Marshawn Lattimore. All right, guys, that is my time on the YouTube live. Thank you so much for tuning in. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Thanks so much for tuning in and spending some time with me today. I'll be back live as always Thursday night, Tuesday night to recap all the games as well, and then every Sunday morning. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. I'm very nervous about Shaheed this week. I would start Slayton over him. I think this Harrison over Mixon and PPR, I'd be fine with this. Keenan Allen, huge game. I mean, really massive game from Caleb Williams. We'll recap it on the Tuesday night live, though, so I have a chance to rewatch this whole game because I've been dialed in to the live. Thanks for the time, guys. I'll be back live super soon. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And I got a tiny bit more time for the TikTok live subscribers over on the TikTok live. Have a great Sunday, everyone, guys. Good luck, and thanks so much for tuning in.